This kid was seen as a loser by everything at school, but one day, everything changed. He couldn't believe all this power he had now. His body was so strong, he was scared of going bald. He broke the record in the running test and did the same thing in the push-up exam. For the weightlifting test, there just wasn't enough weight for him to use. All the students were watching, completely terrified. That was the kid they used to bully. He wasn't that strong. If I'd known, I never would have messed with him before. But the truth is, things used to be different. This kid was the only one who failed the passer exam. While the whole class celebrated passing, Kanagi Minato felt an inexplicable emptiness. It was the third time he'd failed. He was the student who stayed behind to clean the classroom. This moment alone almost made him cry, realizing how useless he felt. One of his classmates told him all the students had to go to the school entrance. The reason was this guy, Hizaki Kaisei, an A-rank hunter. He was a student at this school before becoming a famous hunter. He was there to film a documentary about how he was such a great student before becoming famous. But the truth not being shown to the cameras was this. Hizaki Kaisei was a horrible dude and used to beat up Minato every day for no reason. Remembering that guy made our protagonist tremble. But what Hizaki Kaisei told the cameras was that Minato was a great friend and always helped him when they studied together, even with money, because Minato's family was poor. These lies were just to make Hizaki Kaisei look even nicer for the cameras, and since Minato didn't have the guts, he simply agreed with Hizaki's words. As the reporters took photos, Minato felt those memories burn in his mind. He really didn't like this guy. After the filming wrapped up, our protagonist felt the emptiness of being weak, of not having the power to do anything. When he was younger, Minato loved reading books that told the stories of the legendary founders who saved the world. When the Tower of Malevolence appeared and almost destroyed humanity with the monsters that came out of it, incredible people emerged and saved the world. They were all amazing. One guy defeated 10,000 soldiers using a wooden stick. It could have easily been just a pencil. A mage so powerful she could cast spells without saying a single word. This was over a century ago, and now they are legends. When this mark appears on your body, you have the potential to be an awakened and become powerful and famous. But unfortunately, Minato failed the test 3 times. His dream was over. However, before leaving, Hizaki Kaisei went back to his classmate and said he'd convinced the association to let Minato retake the test. He needed to go to the founder's sanctuary later to meet him. This left the protagonist confused. This guy was bad, but if he did this to improve his image even more, it didn't matter. As long as Minato got a second chance, he was going to take it. Later, at the founder's mausoleum, the cameras are rolling for the final scene. The shot focuses on Hizaki standing before the historic tomb, making some grand speech. After the interview wraps up, the reporters thank him, happy with the footage they got. Hizaki plays the polite celebrity, saying he can't wait to see the article, but as soon as they're gone, he heads deeper into the mausoleum, where his men are busy digging. "Did you find the entrance?" he asks. They eagerly point to a hidden passage, asking if this is what they've been looking for. Suddenly, a voice calls out from behind. When Minato arrived, expecting to retake the exam, the kid saw what they were doing. For him, this was a sacred place. The memory of the people he admired most was there. When he tried to stop the darn looters, Hizaki Kaisei hit him with all the force an A-rank awakened could muster. The punch was brutal. Minato felt many things inside him shatter. The guys shouted that they had taken everything valuable. All those things were inside. Minato felt like he was about to die, and even then, he only thought about how wrong this was. They couldn't steal this. Hizaki Kaisei then grabbed Minato and said he knew everything about the kid, the weakest student, obsessed with the ancestors, who lived in the library reading books. His perfect plan was to throw the protagonist into the river behind the sanctuary and make him take the blame for opening the founder's tomb. The hit Minato took earlier was really meant to kill him. When he was thrown into the water, he had no strength left. As he sank, he remembered how he had trained every day, studied his hardest to achieve his dream, and it was all in vain. Then, at the bottom of the lake, lights lit up around him. Despite the cold water, a comfortable warmth came from them. Minato heard them say something about him being the vessel for this generation. The heroic spirits were sealed in this place. In Minato's hand was the crest of nothingness. It gave no power to its bearer. However, whoever possessed it could possess the spirit of any founder. Minato had to choose now which of the heroes he would make a contract with. Magic, endurance, swordsmanship, spear art, any of them. The protagonist then shouted that he chose all of them. He wanted all the powers. The heroes said it didn't work like that, but they were all sucked into the mark. All the souls went inside the seal. Hizaki and his thief friends were still near the lake when they heard the sound of an explosion in the water. By some miracle, one of the guys had an umbrella with him. The 3 couldn't believe that the guy floating in front of them was Minato, the loser who had just died. When the protagonist landed in front of them, his expression was completely different, but they still insulted him again, saying not even cockroaches were that resilient. A stick seemed interesting to the protagonist. The 2 guys laughed at him. "You're gonna try to fight with a stick? You think you're John Wick?" Minato wasn't fazed and kept testing his moves. Then Hizaki said in a serious tone, "You guys need to make sure he doesn't leave the bottom of the lake again." One of the guys then drew his sword and promised to throw Minato back into the lake. When the guy made a real sword attack, several cuts in 1 second. The guy couldn't even see, only felt it when his body started to fall apart. Hizaki and the chubby guy couldn't believe the scene before them. This guy couldn't be the same loser from before. The chubby guy cast his most powerful magic. Minato was known for not having mana, so he'd be destroyed by this. The protagonist then pointed his finger, and without saying anything, a lightning bolt struck the spot. It wasn't hard to hit since the target was so big. Even so, Hizaki was shocked. That was definitely spellcasting without an incantation. That sword movement was as if the saint of swordsmanship himself was standing in front of him. This magic was like what the legendary mage used to do. What Hizaki couldn't understand was that all 106 founders were now inside Minato. The protagonist declared that a new name would be written in history, and Hizaki would also be remembered, but as the first evil to be eliminated by the great Kanagi Minato. As he approaches, Hizaki can only stare in horror, finally accepting the impossible truth. The boy he threw away just absorbed the souls of the founders through the crest of nothingness. Inside Kanagi's mind, the founders are going wild. After centuries of being sealed away, they're reveling in their newfound freedom, and already arguing over who gets to control their new body first. Amidst the chaos, the legendary swordsman Hinoki Raichiru speaks to Kanagi, casually remarking that he's not surprised the boy remembers his name. He asks Kanagi what his plan is, brushing off Hizaki as a complete nobody, and pointing his attention to a much bigger threat right behind him. Focused, Kanagi turns to face Hizaki, who's stammering in fear, trying to bluster about being an A-rank hunter. Kanagi doesn't even waste a word, he just throws a single punch that sends Hizaki flying. Kanagi then shifts his focus to the mysterious bag, which is practically radiating a dark aura. As he stares at it, a massive surge of power erupts from inside, catching him by surprise. Hinoki, however, just watches calmly, a slight smile on his face. Meanwhile, back in the city, a monstrous three-headed wolf is on a rampage. A man shouts for someone named Kisaragi to handle it. Wasting no time, Kisaragi leaps into action. With incredible grace, he gets above the beast and brings his sword down in a waterfall impact attack, defeating the A-rank monster in a single blow. The crowd goes wild, cheering for the S-rank hunter. Kisaragi humbly thanks them before asking where Hizaki is. One of the men says Hizaki is probably busy with an interview, remarking how nice it must be to be called the Young Hope. Kisaragi just shrugs it off, noting that Hizaki's fame is good for their guild's reputation. But just as they're about to leave, a terrifying pressure wave washes over the entire city. Panic erupts as civilians and even low-rank hunters collapse. Kisaragi sees his own teammates struggling, realizing that even A and B-rank hunters can't withstand it. He knows instantly, an S-rank monster has appeared. The immense pressure is flowing from the founder's mausoleum. Back in the forest, a terrified Hizaki struggles to his feet, staring in horror as a colossal monster crawls out of the bag. He stammers, Is that a demon? What is that thing? Kanagi explains that by stealing the relics, Hizaki broke the seal that was holding back one of the tower's original boss monsters. Inside Kanagi's mind, Hinoki analyzes the beast with an expert's eye. He recognizes it immediately as the embodiment of emptiness, a creature far beyond S rank. According to him, its poisonous aura alone can kill thousands, and monsters like this were all too common back in his day. This is too much for Hizaki. He completely loses it and bolts, convinced that staying for one more second means certain death. But Kanagi knows a predator's instincts. He warns that running will only get him killed faster, but it's too late. The second Hizaki moves, the monster strikes with terrifying speed, shooting a massive tentacle right at him. He barely gets his sword up before the tentacle impales him, piercing straight through his chest. The same sword that once killed a dragon is completely useless now. The creature's tendrils spread across Hizaki's body, draining his life force as his screams echo through the forest. Kanagi, however, just watches, having known this was inevitable. As the former hero dies, Hinoki's spirit places a hand on Kanagi's shoulder. Want to see my one-handed sword style? He proposes, making a bid for complete control of the body. Before Kanagi can even answer, the other founders intervene, grabbing Hinoki by the hair and accusing him of trying to hog their powerful new vessel. But it's Kanagi himself who stops the bickering. He lays down his own terms. No single founder gets control. His body is to be shared among all of them. He declares that one day, he will surpass every single one of them, and he'll prove his worth through strength. If they want to use his body, they'll have to show him what real power looks like. Stunned by his sheer audacity, Hinoki just grins and readies his blade. Seizing the moment, Hinoki takes the first step, merging his consciousness with Kanagi's and urging the others to follow. As Hinoki's spirit lifts his sword, Kanagi's body mirrors the movement, targeting the monster's limbs. Guided by one founder's expertise, the blade severs a massive arm in a single, clean strike. The beast retaliates with a furious swing, but Kanagi's body, now infused with another founder's agility, dodges with inhuman speed. Power layers upon power as the spirits take turns, one granting him the strength to catch the creature's own tentacles and slam it violently into the ground. The monster is sent reeling as Kanagi snatches a bow, piercing its hide with arrows. He then unleashes a barrage of skills, whirlwinds, fire breath, ice attacks. As the beast tries a sneak attack from below, Kanagi's eyes flash yellow. The great wizard inside him takes over, zapping the creature with lightning. Then, with a final powerful leap, Kanagi soars above the monster. Hinoki takes control, grabs Hizaki's broken sword, and executes his signature one-handed technique, the Gekiru Tachi wave-cutting blade. The sword slices the demon clean in half, ending its rampage. As the two halves fall, a victorious smile finally spreads across Kanagi's face. Watching the entire battle from a nearby tree is a single raven. Elsewhere in the city, a man standing atop a skyscraper answers a call, shocked to hear the monster was defeated before he even got there. He asks if any strong hunters were on the scene, but the voice on the other end says their footage from the raven shows it was an academy student who took it down. The man, Chihara Midori, the world's strongest awakened, says he wants to meet this student. The next morning, Midori is sitting on a pile of monster corpses when he calls the academy's director. He tells him about the S-rank monster, clarifying that he wasn't the one who beat it. According to the raven's footage, it was Kanagi Minato. Midori finds this hard to believe, especially since Kanagi is known for failing the hunter exam 3 years in a row. He then asks the director for a special favor. Back at the academy, the students are are all talking about what happened. The terrifying aura from the day before left most of them paralyzed, and now they're all guessing who could have possibly defeated such a monster. Meanwhile, Kanagi stumbles through the campus, leaning on a stick, his whole body trembling. He overhears their chatter, amazed that the incident has already become the talk of the school. Suddenly, a guy bumps right into him, knocking him down and scoffing at the idea that a weakling like him could be the S-rank slayer. Kanagi knows the truth. He did beat the demon, but only by letting the founders use his body. Now he's paying the price. The recoil from their power is agonizing. As he struggles to get up, a voice mocks him in his mind. It's Hinoki, reminding him of his bold promise to surpass them. With a challenging but encouraging tone, Hinoki pushes him to get it together. Kanagi remembers his vow and, ignoring the pain, forces himself back to his feet, quietly reaffirming his goal. Hinoki chuckles inside him, urging him to show some resolve. The spirit then scans the students nearby with a sigh of disappointment. The awakeners of this era seem no stronger than regular humans, a far cry from the warriors of his time. He muses that if the tower reappeared now, the world would be doomed. But his thoughts are cut short when he senses an incredibly powerful aura nearby. Kanagi feels Hinoki's sudden tension, but the spirit just brushes it off. Just then, a professor shouts for Kanagi to come over. Assuming it's about his expulsion letter, he approaches cautiously. After all, he's failed 3 times and there are no more chances. But to his utter shock, the professor tells him to head to the field for a re-examination. The news leaves Kanagi stunned. The other students crowd the windows, whispering excitedly. No one has ever been given a hunter re-examination before. On the field, Kanagi gets into a sprinter's stance. He's not fully recovered, but he's determined. The first test is a 100-meter sprint. The student who knocked him down earlier starts trash-talking again, calling him a failure. But as the test begins, everyone watches in stunned silence as Kanagi crosses the finish line in just 1.2 seconds, smashing the old record of 2.7. Next is the 3,000-meter run. He finishes in 1 minute and 17 seconds, obliterating the previous record. It's the same story for every other test. Push-ups, bench press, you name it. He doesn't just break the records, he more than doubles them. The students are left completely speechless. Kanagi himself wonders if the founders are secretly helping, but Hinoki assures him this is all him. Meanwhile, in the headmaster's office, Midori is looking over Kanagi's file. The headmaster admits that while Kanagi's new physical scores are unbelievable, the real issue has always been his magic. For 3 years, every single assessment has shown his mana levels to be 0, undetectable. It's the reason he was always considered a hopeless case. Midori's secretary just smirks, hinting that things might be about to get interesting. Out on the field, Kanagi stands before the final test, magic measurement. The professor explains he needs to channel his mana into a large fan and make it spin for 30 seconds. The record is 4,022 rotations. As Kanagi prepares, the memories of failing this exact test year after year come flooding back. No matter how much effort he has previously exerted, the fan has never so much as trembled beneath his attempts. His inability to sense mana has always held him back, but this time is different. For the first time, he can perceive it coursing through him, originating from his right foot, spiraling through his body, and returning once more. He recognizes that his breathing can regulate and accelerate the flow, allowing him to expel the energy through his right palm. As the professor signals the start of the test, Kanagi releases his mana. Instantly, the fan spins into motion at an astonishing pace. The counting machine struggles to register the rapid increase in speed, while the sheer force of the wind makes it difficult for the observers to even see the numbers. The velocity escalates beyond expectation, and before anyone can react, the machine blasts. The fan, now completely detached, shoots across the field like a cutter. Students cry out in alarm as it hurtles toward the main building, crashing directly into the headmaster's office with a deafening impact. Inside, the headmaster barely evades the incoming debris, collapsing from the sheer shock of the event. Midori's secretary, stunned by the spectacle, can hardly process what has transpired. Meanwhile, Midori, unshaken by the chaos, merely chuckles. To him, the resemblance between Kanagi's abilities and his own is undeniable. According to Midori, there has only ever been one individual before Kanagi who has produced an immeasurable score, and that is himself. The professor, still trying to make sense of what he has just witnessed, declares that Kanagi has passed the hunter examination. A wave of excitement ripples through the students as they erupt in cheers. Not only has Kanagi shattered every record, but he has surpassed all expectations. Staring at his own hands, Kanagi trembles with disbelief. He has spent years believing himself incapable of wielding magic, yet the power has been within him all along. From the sidelines, Hinoki observes the scene with quiet satisfaction, having anticipated such an outcome. Meanwhile, Kanagi knows that everything has changed. By surrendering his body to the founders, he has unlocked the dormant potential that has been hidden within him all this time. Hinoki can't help but laugh, remarking internally that the one before him is far from ordinary. With the crest of nothingness marking his fate, it's as if he has been waiting for this very moment for over a century. Before he can dwell further on the thought, an overwhelming presence descends upon them, sending a shockwave through the air. The sheer force of it leaves him momentarily speechless. His mind scrambles to make sense of the explosion, but Hinoki instantly recognizes the tremendous aura as it's the same one he had sensed earlier that morning. Standing before him, seemingly materializing from the very pressure itself, is the legendary Midori. Kanagi, seeing him, is shocked, as he is the strongest hunter in existence. Midori Landing starts addressing him directly. Midori acknowledges his achievements in the hunter examination, offering words of recognition, but Kanagi can barely utter a response. Midori then puts up a new challenge before him, which is an additional test. Midori Midori wants Kanagi to land a single hit on him, the world's strongest hunter. Hearing that, Kanagi is left frozen in shock for a moment. Midori, 23 years old, a man who has earned the title of a full-fledged hunter at the mere age of 9, now stands before him. His feats are legendary, unmatched in all of history. He has turned thousands of demons to ashes in mere moments, his power so overwhelming that even other hunters dare not stand against him. 10 years ago, he single-handedly eradicated the pandemonium outbreak, and 5 years prior, he subdued the outbreak of Kyushu. He is a living singularity. As Midori explains his challenge, Kanagi is left in disbelief. However, Hinoki is excited, urging Kanagi to surrender his body to him immediately. Yet Midori explained the conditions in the simplest terms. Kanagi had 1 minute to strike him. Whether he succeeded or failed, no consequences would follow. Midori himself would only attack once every 10 seconds, ensuring that the challenge remained fair. There was no need for hesitation, no need for doubt. Any skill, any weapon was at Kanagi's disposal, while Midori would refrain from using any of his own. To prove his sincerity, Midori summoned a vast arsenal of weapons, giving Kanagi the choice of anything he desired. The sight of so many legendary weapons appearing in an instant only added to the surreal nature of the challenge. Confusion clouded Kanagi's thoughts. Realizing that he was going to fight the famous Midori in a one-on-one fight, still unsure, he hesitated before finally asking if he was truly free to use any weapon. In response, Midori casually picked up a katana, his grip light but assured. With effortless ease, he sliced the blade clean in half, as if it were nothing more than a brittle twig. He stated, without the slightest hint of arrogance, that his body surpassed the sharpness of any blade. Kanagi barely had time to process this display before Hinoki's impatience flared. Frustration seethed in his voice as he demanded to take over, unable to tolerate Midori's overwhelming confidence. His anger boiled over as he declared that such words from Midori were unforgivable. Kanagi could feel Hinoki's energy surging, his presence amplifying as though he was ready to unleash his full strength. It dawned on him in that moment that Midori's power was comparable to that of the founders themselves. Against that level of strength, he had no real chance of victory. Yet even as realization settled in that there was no time to hesitate, meanwhile all the students gather around for the fight. Without warning, Midori initiated the countdown. A slight smile tugged at his lips as he signaled the start of the test. Kanagi grabs his sword and charges at Midori, determined to attack. Hinoki questions whether he intends to fight alone, insisting it isn't fair, but Kanagi ignores him and continues his assault. Despite knowing his efforts are futile, he believes that to become a legend, he must rely on his own strength, rather than borrowing power from the founders. He swings his sword at Midori, but Midori effortlessly dodges with minimal movement. Even as Kanagi relentlessly attacks, he remains on his phone, casually asking which social media he uses, and remarking that the incident will surely be recorded and go viral. The students watch in disbelief, astounded that Midori can dodge every strike without taking the fight seriously. Though Kanagi continues his relentless assault, one student notices something unusual about his movements. As they watch closely, Kanagi lifts his sword, feinting a vertical slash before swiftly switching to a horizontal one aimed at Midori's feet and throat. The execution is flawless, and Kanagi is amazed at how naturally his body moves. Realizing he isn't tiring, he wonders if this is the effect of lending himself to the founder's power. His thoughts are abruptly cut off when Midori places a finger on his head, preparing to flick him, and casually mentions that 10 seconds have already passed. Kanagi narrowly dodges, but the power Midori releases obliterates the field. Seeing the destruction, Kanagi realizes that if the attack had connected, his head would have been gone. Midori glances at his hand in confusion, sensing no malice from Kanagi, and wondering if he had miscalculated his own strength. Panic grips Kanagi as he understands that he will die at this rate. Desperately, he tries to recall the sensation of his stronger self. As he focuses, a powerful aura surges from him, catching Midori off guard. Kanagi launches another attack, his speed increasing rapidly. The students are in awe, shouting that the camera can't keep up with their movements. Midori notices the shift in Kanagi's presence, and wonders if there is a specific condition to activate this power, or if Kanagi is deliberately keeping it a secret. Realizing another 10 seconds had passed, Midori decides to strike Kanagi lightly this time. He bends down, positioning his finger to flick again, but instead he hits Kanagi in the chest, sending him crashing hard into the wall. Kanagi coughs up blood, yet he finds the experience incredible, marveling at the fact that he is fighting the world's strongest awakened. He understands that if his body were the same as it was yesterday, he would already be dead from that blow. This realization makes him smile, knowing it means he is growing stronger. However, he also acknowledges that his current skill is not enough to pass Midori's test. Determined, he chooses to push forward with brute force and charges at Midori once more. Suddenly, Midori appears beside him with unbelievable speed, causing Kanagi to stop in his tracks. Apologizing, Midori tells him he has seen enough. He then states that the 30 seconds are up before striking Kanagi at the nape, making him slowly lose consciousness. As Kanagi collapses, Midori observes that he is indeed a genius, but not on the same level as his comrades. In the end, Kanagi is unable to fully unleash the power Midori had sensed. Calling his secretary, he informs her that they should head back, expressing his disappointment in the outcome. Just then, Kanagi grabs his sword, and Midori immediately senses an intense aura from behind him. Midori glances back and sees Kanagi's body radiating with power. Hinoki, now speaking through Kanagi, remarks that the stubborn brat is already asleep, allowing him to finally take over. Stepping forward, Hinoki suggests they extend their fight a little longer longer. Meanwhile, Kanagi's spirit, separated from his body, panics at the sight of Hinoki controlling it, yet Midori merely smiles, recognizing the presence he had sensed earlier. He wonders if this is an entirely different person, or merely a skill at play. Regardless, he understands one thing: Kanagi is now a monster. Kanagi, under Hinoki's control, suddenly launches an attack, shouting at Midori not to space out. Midori notices immediately that his movements have changed. His speed and strength have reached another level. Suddenly, a sword nears Midori's face, and he ducks just in time to avoid it. Kanagi swings again, forcing Midori to leap away to create distance. Still in shock, Midori watches as Kanagi swiftly positions his sword for another strike. He swings once more, but Midori bends down just in time, causing the attack to land on the building behind him instead. The students inside scramble in panic, realizing the danger. Midori notices that Kanagi's slashes have become unpredictable, yet he can still anticipate the flow of his movements. It reminds him of ancient swordsmanship, like a relentless torrent of water. Raising his palm, Midori laughs and remarks that such skill is necessary to defeat an S-rank like him. He then lifts his hand again, intending to put Kanagi to sleep once more, noting that only 40 seconds have passed. However, Kanagi suddenly moves forward at an incredible speed, swinging his sword and shouting that Midori won't be able to hit him. Midori swiftly jumps back to evade the attack, laughing as he acknowledges Kanagi's impressive skill. The students can hardly believe what they are witnessing as Midori is on the defensive. Kanagi shouts that Midori is boring and insists that he shouldn't hold back. He warns Midori that if he looks down on him, he will beat him up. Without hesitation, Kanagi leaps forward to attack, but Midori only laughs and responds with confirmation. With a swift kick, Midori sends a stone flying toward the weapons behind him. Instantly, the weapons float into the air. He jumps, catching Kanagi off guard, and grabs one of the weapons hovering above them. Excitedly, Kanagi exclaims that Midori is finally going all out. They then engage in an intense mid-air battle, clashing foot against foot, stunning the students who watch in awe. They seize every weapon within reach, shattering them into pieces with their sheer strength. Meanwhile, inside Kanagi's body, the founders observe Hinoki unleashing his full power. They are impressed that Midori is able to keep up. Old Man Spirit suggests joining the fight, but another founder scolds him, calling him tactless. The Great Wizard, watching in silence, suddenly realizes that Kanagi has been studying Hinoki's movements, trying to learn from them. He notices Hinoki shifting his center of gravity as he pounces from below, but the sword in his hands shatters once again. Frustrated by the poor quality of the weapon, Hinoki feels a surge of anger. Midori, on the other hand, finds the battle exhilarating and fun. However, he soon realizes that there are no swords left and wonders if Kanagi will resort to firearms. With a taunting smirk, Midori shouts that only 10 seconds remain and teasingly asks what Hinoki plans to do now. Hinoki glances toward the building behind him before leaping toward it. He heads straight for the man who had pushed Kanagi earlier and snatches his sword. Just then, Midori jumps closer, launching his fist at Hinoki. The impact causes a loud explosion against the building. Fortunately, Hinoki dodges in time and reappears in front of Midori. They resume their mid-air clash, exchanging blows. Midori shouts that the fight is fun and suggests they continue a bit longer. Meanwhile, the students notice that the building is on the verge of collapsing. As the battle reaches the rooftop, Midori's secretary watches nonchalantly. Midori then places his hand on a massive fan and grabs it, causing cracks to form on its surface. He retrieves the fan from the building and aims it at Hinoki. With a powerful throw, he sends it hurtling toward him. However, he is taken by surprise when Hinoki, wielding his one-handed sword, slashes through the fan like dice with his dice-style sword art. The fan shatters into tiny fragments, and Midori reacts with excitement, praising Hinoki's skill. However, Hinoki wastes no time and launches his sword at Midori. To his shock, the sword shatters upon impact. Midori raises his hand, aims at him, and calmly acknowledges that 60 seconds have passed before striking Hinoki with his palm, sending him crashing down. Hinoki curses under his breath, but before he can react, Kanagi suddenly leaps onto his back and pushes him back toward the other founders. As Midori's attack nears, Kanagi manages to deflect it aside with a gentle motion, successfully dodging the strike. The unexpected maneuver leaves both Hinoki and Midori stunned. However, the impact breaks one of Kanagi's hands. Despite that, he remains focused on his goal and delivers a punch to Midori's face with his remaining good hand. From the inside, the battle between the singularities feels endless. A fierce clash over a seemingly small outcome, much like a chess match where both players are equally skilled. Despite its intensity, Hinoki knows it has lasted only a brief moment. Watching with quiet pride, he realizes that Kanagi has carved open a new path to victory. Kanagi, however, is left in shock when he sees Midori halt his fist just in time. Frustration fills him as he realizes he has failed to land a clean hit. But then, to his surprise, Midori smiles and deliberately pulls Kanagi's fist toward his own face, acknowledging the effort. Without hesitation, he confirms that Kanagi has passed. Before either can react further, both collapse onto the ground. The students observing the battle murmur in confusion, struggling to comprehend what has just happened. Midori, still holding Kanagi's unconscious body, calls for his secretary Rin and informs her that they should leave. Rin arrives beside him and inquires about the outcome. Midori confirms that Kanagi has passed and admits finding him interesting. However, he acknowledges that he has accidentally broken Kanagi's arm and requests Rin to heal him. She agrees without hesitation. The students, overhearing the conversation, struggle to believe that Kanagi has succeeded. The realization soon sets in, and cheers erupt throughout the area that Kanagi managed to land a punch on Midori. The noise stirs Kanagi awake, and as Rin works on healing him, she cautions him not to move. He complies, thanking her, and she congratulates him on passing the test. Kanagi, still in disbelief, sits up abruptly, questioning whether he has truly managed to land a hit on Midori. Before he can process the thought further, Midori suddenly appears beside him, amused by his reaction. Without dwelling on the moment, Midori affirms that a pass is a pass. He acknowledges having taken the battle seriously midway through his consecutive attack. Midori goes on to praise Kanagi's skill, commending his ability to dodge his strongest attack and his impressive movements. He encourages Kanagi to take pride in the achievement. Kanagi, regaining his composure, accepts the praise. Without hesitation, he turns his attention to the next step, eager to know what comes after passing. His question leaves Rin momentarily puzzled as she turns toward Midori, equally uncertain, searches for an answer. Later that night, Kanagi was home, helping his mom clean up while she cooked in the kitchen. She casually asked how many guests were coming. Kanagi wasn't sure, so he just guessed one. His mom then thought back on the day, saying it had been a really big deal. Not only had Kanagi passed the hunter's exam, but he'd also gotten Midori's attention. She told him she was confident in his abilities, believing he'd always been able to achieve anything just by trying hard. Kanagi listened, quietly appreciating what she said. But then, his mom's face changed. She worried about such a famous person visiting their home, joking that people might mistake it for a doghouse. Kanagi, exasperated, quickly brushed off the idea. He insisted Midori wasn't the type to judge things like that. Once he finished his chores and helped his mom, he finally collapsed onto his bed, but his mind was still stuck on the day's events. His eyes went to the card Midori had given him, and he felt a wave of uncertainty. He wondered why Midori hadn't thought the situation through more carefully. His mind went back to the battlefield from earlier that day, remembering when Rin had taken Midori down and twisted his leg. He clearly remembered Midori's pained scream when Rin had confronted him. Right then, Midori had reminded Kanagi of something he'd said earlier, suggesting Kanagi had agreed to be one of his comrades if they won. Kanagi, confused, denied ever saying anything like that. Rin, getting more agitated, had tightened her grip on Midori's leg. Midori told Kanagi there were too many people watching, and suggested he come to his home that night to talk about everything properly. He promised he'd explain the choices they had and reveal their real enemies. Kanagi wondered who these enemies could be. He knew the founders had already destroyed the tower, and that current hunters were supposed to eliminate monsters that escaped the dimensional crack. He wondered if there was another reason, but soon drifted off to sleep. Suddenly, Hinoki's shouting jolted him awake. He saw Hinoki and the founders gathered in his room. Confused, he asked why they were there and what was wrong, but Hinoki just said they'd been discussing something and had just finished. Still puzzled, Kanagi instinctively covered himself and worriedly asked if they'd decided who would take his body. Before Hinoki could answer, the doorbell rang. Apologizing, Kanagi figured it was Midori and suggested they talk later. He walked to the door. It was dark, and he felt uneasy. Then, to his shock, he saw his mom collapsed on the floor. Panic hit him. He called out to her, rushing over, but stopped short when he noticed someone sitting in the kitchen. The stranger was just eating the food his mom had made, even complimenting it, all while ignoring the huge mess around him. With a mocking tone, the man told Kanagi he should discipline his mom. He even insisted that if Kanagi wanted to impress customers, they'd need to get better quality food. Kanagi immediately demanded to know who he was and what he'd done to his mom. The man didn't even flinch. He just yelled at Kanagi to watch his tone, then introduced himself as Haitani Goru, an S-rank hunter and a comrade of Midori's. Haitani then ordered Kanagi to grab his luggage, saying they were moving to their base. Rage boiled in Kanagi. Without a second thought, he launched a punch at Haitani, but Haitani easily dodged and suddenly appeared behind him, asking if Kanagi was challenging him. Kanagi stayed silent, remembering his mom's words. She'd promised to raise him alone, with pride, after his dad passed away. He remembered the worn-out shoes she still insisted on wearing, always telling him to buy new sneakers instead. He also remembered her congratulating him earlier, and promising to make his favorite tonkatsu for dinner. With new determination, Kanagi glared at Haitani and demanded to know what he'd done to his mom. Watching all this, Hinoki realized Haitani was an S-rank hunter from the previous era. Hinoki was annoyed by this guy, who he thought was just a ripoff of Emidori, and decided it was time to act. The founders who'd seen Kanagi fight Midori now understood how they should treat him from now on. Haitani, amused, just taunted Kanagi, saying his angry expression was pretty cute. He raised his hand to slap Kanagi, but Kanagi stayed perfectly still, completely unfazed. As the strike came closer, Kanagi effortlessly caught Haitani's hand and, with surprising ease, just swung him around. The grandpa founder was stunned. He recognized that technique from their old battles against monsters. Suddenly, Haitani was hurled right out the window, crashing through the backyard wall. But Haitani landed on his feet before he even hit the ground. Haitani regained his stance and walked back, trying to figure out what just happened. He wondered if what he'd just seen was Aikido. He remembered Kanagi's fight with Midori that afternoon. He'd noticed Kanagi's huge aura and swordsmanship, but also a strange, peculiar power. Haitani acknowledges his resilience, saying he's tougher than his Saki. Kanagi's patience is running out, so he demands an answer. He pushes Haitani to tell him what he did to his mother, who's still inside, twisting in pain as poison spreads through her body. Haitani just laughs. He mockingly points out that Kanagi doesn't seem to know what's going on. Then, with a grin, he finally tells him the truth. His mother was in the way, so he put her to sleep with poison. Haitani smirks, adding that if she might only suffer minor side effects. He stays calm, saying he doesn't understand, which makes Haitani look at him confused. Then he asks why they'd hurt the family of someone who might become their comrade. Haitani only laughs at the word comrade. He suddenly appears behind him, ready to strike. He barely dodges Haitani's attack, but the relentless assault keeps coming. As he attacks, Haitani says he'll never be their comrade. He's just a puppet following their commands. Haitani taunts him, saying that once his loved ones become hostages, he'll have no choice but to give in. He calls him naive. Before he can even react, Haitani steps on his foot and slashes him, mockingly asking if he was right. He quickly backs away, feeling a burning sensation on his cheek. As he reaches up, he realizes the poison is already spreading. Haitani grins, lifting his fingers, which are now coated with sharp, poison-laced needles. He teases that it's already in his system. He then reveals that it lets him produce dozens of poisons from his body, which he calls Phantom Bug's Poison, Deadly Vision. Haitani then complains about how inconvenient this mission is. He says that if he wanted to, he could release deadly toxic gas over a 5-kilometer radius, but doing that in the middle of the city isn't an option. He then states that the poison will kill him in a minute, unless he agrees to join their organization. If he does, Haitani will give him the antidote. Otherwise, he'll die. He thinks about how deadly Haitani's toxin is, knowing it would be an inescapable death sentence for any normal person. Looking down at his hand, he calls out to Valentine, the god of medicine, asking if she's inside him. The founders look at Valentine, who seems both confused and surprised. He apologizes for calling her so suddenly, and asks if she can teach him how to neutralize the poison later. She stammers out an agreement. Irritated, Haitani throws another wave of poison at him, yelling and asking what kind of nonsense he's mumbling. He quickly dodges it, then explains that the Aikido move he'd used earlier came from Kuruhuma, the god of hands. The old man inside him is taken aback, realizing he's managed to copy his move just from seeing it once. Next, he calls on Hinoki, the 10,000 army slasher, Shimer Kalkus, the blue spear of destruction, and Margit, the heavenly bow. He says he's studied and memorized all of them from the records. He tells Haitani that the founders Haitani used to look up to are now inside him. This leaves Haitani completely bewildered, but instead of being afraid, Haitani gets furious. He shouts that he'll show him what real pain is. Haitani then charges at him, his needles ready. He leaps away just in time, avoiding the attack. Haitani's strike hits a nearby tree, and it withers and dies instantly. Haitani doesn't hesitate. He launches another attack, shouting that if he kneels and begs, he might get an antidote to make the pain a little less. He warns him, once pain consumes him, he'll never go back to normal. His mind will be lost to madness. But he stays silent, just waiting as Haitani's hand gets closer. Just as Haitani reaches him, he quickly slides to the side. He puts his palm against Haitani's chest and activates Saint Wantok's fist. Haitani coughs up blood from the hit, which shocks Wantok inside him. The force sends Haitani crashing into a streetlight. Without a moment's hesitation, he follows up with a kick, using Eilerson's feet of light. This sends Haitani flying a great distance. Eilerson, who's inside him, is stunned by the power, but Haitani still manages to stand up and recovers quickly. In an instant, he's in front of Haitani again, attacking with both hands. He manages to slip through Haitani's attack, breaking some of his needles. Then he uses the sharp beak corral attack, hitting Haitani in the stomach. Kanagi then slashes Haitani with Rowan's skill, the dragon's claw. This leaves Rowan, who's inside him, stunned in surprise. Haitani grabs him, then activates Leilak's flipper, which ends up throwing Haitani around in midair. As he floats, he wonders what's happening. He knows poison should cloud judgment, and should have already messed with the nervous system, but Kanagi is still moving, strong and unharmed. Kanagi then used the Magus of Truth, Melteus Silenteus, unleashing it on Haitani. There was a loud energy blast that completely shocked everyone. Hinoki turned to the founders, asking if they'd seen that. He told them that right after beating Haitani, Kanagi began copying all their moves, both physical and magical. Hinoki added that he didn't care if Kanagi's power came from the crest of nothingness. He just found him really interesting. The founders agreed. Hinoki then suggested they train Kanagi, convinced that if they did, he'd become the strongest awakener. Meanwhile, somewhere else, hooded figures were running and jumping across rooftops. One of them yelled for everyone to hurry. He revealed that Nemor's guilds were after Kanagi, so they needed to move fast and grab him before Nemor's people did. Suddenly, Midori appeared right behind him. "Are there really that many?" Midori asked. The man looked shocked, but Midori calmly told him, "If there are 15, you must be the last one." Midori then pointed a finger near the man's forehead, flipped his head, and slammed him hard onto the building's roof. He contacted Rin using his Raven's call, and she answered right away, telling him she'd arrived. She assured him there weren't any awakeners nearby, but her next words really surprised him. "Someone else has already been here," Rin said. Midori stayed quiet, waiting for her to go on. Rin then explained that the intruder was Haitani, an S-rank hunter famous for his poison skills. He'd come to find Kanagi, but had been completely beaten. Midori's eyes went to the rooftop, where Haitani was lying sprawled out, his mouth slightly open. It made Midori wonder what exactly had happened. A little while later, they got to Kanagi's house. Midori clapped his hands together, a bright grin spreading as he praised Kanagi. He genuinely admired him, saying he'd never expected Kanagi to take down Anne. Without hesitation, he asked, "Were you exposed to the poison?" Kanagi scratched his cheek, giving a small, sheepish reply. "Both Mom and I are fine." Hinoki, unimpressed, crossed his arms. He reminded Kanagi, "You wouldn't have made it through the night without Valentine's help." As soon as her name was mentioned, Valentine groaned, clearly exhausted. But Hinoki quickly acknowledged her swift work, noting that finishing everything in just 5 seconds was no easy feat. Valentine just shrugged, muttering that it wasn't difficult at all. Since the poison's creator was right there, it just took a few jabs to get the blood samples they needed and find the antidote. Kanagi was still trying to process everything, but he finally asked the question that had been bothering him. Had Haitani been lying when he said he was Midori's comrade? Midori nodded right away, confirming it was a lie. He added that lots of people use his name for their own gain. With that out of the way, he looked back at Rin. He asked if she was done, and just as he did, she appeared at his side and nodded. She told him all the damage was fixed. Kanagi's eyes went wide with disbelief. He glanced at his house, and sure enough, his window and backyard wall looked completely perfect again. Then, with a bright smile, Midori suggested they go inside to talk about Kanagi's future. Kanagi just stood there, frozen. He felt a mix of excitement and unease washing over him. The next day, a car was waiting for Kanagi, and his mother saw him off at the gate. She reminded him to check if he'd forgotten anything, but Kanagi told her he was fine and that she worried too much. She couldn't believe the child she'd raised was now heading to Midori's. Midori had already promised Kanagi's mother he'd take care of him and turn him into a great hunter. Hearing that made Kanagi really excited, but his mother was still a bit worried. Hiding her concern, she gave Kanagi his lunch, telling him to eat since he'd skipped breakfast. Even though he didn't really need it, Kanagi took it without arguing. Then his mother directly asked Midori if her son would be in danger. Midori confirmed it right away. His mother then revealed that Kanagi had always struggled until now, so it was a huge deal for her to trust Midori with her son. Still, as a mother, she couldn't help but feel uneasy. Midori, sounding confident, promised her he'd train Kanagi until he had no weaknesses left. Hearing this, she finally agreed to leave Kanagi with him. Once they're in the car, Rin, who's driving, looks at Midori. She asks if it was really alright to promise Kanagi's mom something like that, especially since they don't even know what's going to happen. Midori feels a moment of worry. He glances in the rearview mirror and sees Kanagi's mom still giving him last-minute advice. She's telling him how to wash his clothes right and reminding him not to sleep naked or he'll catch a cold. Her concern makes a determined look flash in Midori's eyes. He silently vows he'll do his best. Meanwhile, Kanagi holds back his emotions and says his final goodbye. Just as he's about to get into the car, his mom reminds him to come home for New Year's. As they finally drive off, Midori asks Kanagi if he's okay. Kanagi admits he had to really control his emotions. Midori leans back in his seat, telling him to just do whatever he feels like, whether that's eating or resting. Looking around, Kanagi notices the lunchbox his mom packed, sitting neatly beside him. He opens it, his mom's words still fresh in his mind. When he lifts the lid, his eyes land on a small good luck message carefully placed on the pork cutlet. That simple gesture hits him hard, stirring up emotions he expected. He pauses for a moment, thinking about all the care and sacrifices she's made for him. A quiet sense of gratitude settles in his chest as he starts to eat, even though the meal comes with the sting of unshed tears. Rin and Midori, sitting nearby, exchange glances but stay silent, letting him process the moment in his own way as they continue their journey. When they finally get to their destination, Kanagi's shocked. He takes in the impressive anti-prophecy headquarters building. Midori welcomes him, explaining that only a select few awakeners are ever allowed inside. The weight of that knowledge settles over him. For a brief moment, he's overwhelmed, realizing what he's about to become a part of. Inside one of the rooms, a man stands by the window, watching them arrive with quiet intensity. Without turning, he speaks to someone else in the room, confirming that the new members have arrived. A girl, her expression unreadable, questions if this is really about the newcomer. A young man responds, saying it's pretty rare for them to get a new comrade, but another man, standing to the side with his arms crossed, is skeptical. He insists they should first figure out if the newcomer is truly worthy of joining the anti-prophecy. Meanwhile, outside the headquarters, he's momentarily frozen, struggling to really process his surroundings. Questions swirl in his mind. What exactly is the anti-prophecy unit, and could it have any connection to Ichihara Guild? Sensing his unease, Rin acknowledges things aren't clear and apologizes for not explaining sooner. She explains she hasn't been able to tell his mom everything because it's classified. It's a top national secret. Those words hit him harder than he expected. As they headed towards the building, Midori suggested they take his luggage to the dorm first. Rin offered to help, but he turned her down, saying he could handle it himself. Just as he was about to move, a sudden voice cut through the air, telling them to wait. The unexpected interruption startled him. He looked up and saw the young man from earlier standing above them. Without missing a beat, the man declared he'd be the one to explain everything. Then, in the same breath, he lunged forward with a powerful kick, aiming straight for him. He instinctively raised his arms to block, but the sheer force shattered the ground under his feet. The impact sent a tremor right through him, but he stayed standing, bracing himself against the shock. The man seemed impressed. He acknowledged his resilience and even offered a rare word of praise. Intrigued, he paused for a moment before asking who he was. Without missing a beat, the man stepped back, landing effortlessly on the ground. He then proudly introduced himself as Hanada Hikotaru, a member of the anti-prophecy unit and his comrade. The revelation caught him by surprise, but there wasn't much time to hesitate. Hanada had been assigned to explain everything, and ready or not, the truth was about to unfold. Meanwhile, Midori seemed completely unfazed. He just asked Rin for some tea. Rin nodded and poured him a cup while the other two kept sparring. training. Midori watched them calmly, his gaze steady. He asked Hanada why they were fighting if they were comrades. Hanada, still unfazed, explained it served two purposes: introducing Kanagi to the anti-prophecy unit and testing his skills. The explanation stuck in Kanagi's mind, leaving him unsure what kind of test this actually was. Without warning, Hanada moved with swift precision, launching another kick at him. Kanagi reacted instantly, blocking the strike with both arms, his stance unshaken. Even in the middle of the fight, Hanada started explaining where the anti-prophecy unit came from. Kanagi listened, but he was skeptical. He doubted Hanada would really give a full explanation while they were still fighting. As the exchange continued, Hanada paused for a moment to ask for Kanagi's name before going on. Without hesitation, he introduced himself as Kanagi Minato. Midori, still leisurely sipping his tea, thought about how Kanagi had been tested again and again, first by the academy, then by him, and even by an S rank. Now he's facing another challenge. He turned to Rin, wondering aloud if Kanagi would always face these constant tests. Rin, looking calm, said it couldn't be helped. After all, Kanagi's been personally scouted. Meanwhile, Hanada just kept delivering relentless kicks, but Kanagi kept blocking with his hands. His endurance didn't waver. At one point, Hanada suddenly asked, "What's the role of a hunter?" Kanagi didn't hesitate, saying, "A hunter's job is to eliminate monsters that emerge from dimensional cracks." Hanada gave him an approving thumbs up, confirming his answer was correct. He then compared a hunter's role to pest control, a simple but powerful analogy. Suddenly, Hanada dropped to the ground, changing the subject with a new question. He asked Kanagi about other dangers that exist outside of dimensional cracks. The question caught Kanagi off guard. He hesitated, then asked Hanada to clarify what he meant by other dangers. Hanada's expression darkened slightly as he explained the world faces threats far worse than just dimensional cracks. He spoke of terrifying events, the Pandemonium 10,000 Demons Castle from 10 years ago, and the Great Outbreak of Kyushu from 5 years ago. Kanagi immediately recognized these as huge dimensional breaks, disasters that left lasting scars. But before he could even respond, Hanada suddenly lunged at him. Instinctively, Kanagi raised his arms, managing to block the attack. Still, the strike's sheer force sent him skidding backward. Hanada acknowledged his toughness, praising him for correctly remembering the public details of those past catastrophes. He then added that Kanagi would understand much more about them once he started training at the academy. Just as Kanagi managed to steady himself, his breath still measured, he barely had time to react. Hanada suddenly appeared above him with staggering speed. Kanagi didn't even have time to think. Hanada's leg was already coming down in a crushing axe kick. Kanagi just barely managed to throw himself out of the way, dodging it as Hanada's foot slammed into the ground. A nearby tree took the hit instead, splitting cleanly in half. The attack was so powerful it left Kanagi stunned for a moment. Hanada then straightened up, and his tone changed as he kept explaining. He explained that events like the Tower of Malevolence from 300 years ago weren't just disasters. They were full-scale invasions, direct attacks from another dimension. Kanagi struggled to believe what he was hearing, trying to grasp the weight of those words. This wasn't just history, it was happening right now. Hanada stepped closer, his expression serious. He admitted he didn't understand why today's Awakeners seemed weaker than those from the Tower era. There just weren't as many people who could match the original founder's strength, and that really bothered him. Caught between curiosity and worry, Kanagi finally asked the question he'd been holding back. What should we do? Hanada's answer was firm. That's exactly why the anti-prophecy unit exists. He explained that people who can foresee these threats and predict real catastrophes don't share that knowledge with the public. They only tell the elites, the ones who can actually handle such dangers. And those elites, Hanada stated, are the members of the anti-prophecy unit. Midori and Rin couldn't help but smile proudly when they heard this. Kanagi then realized their whole purpose was to stop these prophecies from happening. Hanada then told him that, as of today, he was officially part of their group. Hanada welcomed him into the group, saying he was the first person who'd managed to block his kicks one after another. Hanada held out his hand as a sign of acceptance, and Kanagi shook it. Midori and Rin applauded, and then Hanada called for the other Awakeners, who appeared silently above the house. Hanada asked them what they'd do, but they just stared at him, then vanished, which really surprised Kanagi. Midori said they disappeared like villains, but Hanada just shook his head. He figured they wanted to see how things played out for themselves. Hanada then told Midori to leave it to him, and Midori did, heading off. After that, Hanada helped Kanagi with his things, and offered to show him to his dorm room, which Kanagi thanked him for. That night, as he got settled, Kanagi couldn't stop thinking about what this organization meant. It was all about handling prophecies in their world. He wondered if the founders had faced a similar crisis back in the Tower's era, and if he was now fighting something that had been predicted. His thoughts got him anxious, but then a voice cut through his worry, saying he'd simply trained. Surprised, he turned to see Hinoki and the other founders standing right there. He quickly apologized for not talking to them sooner, but Hinoki told him not to worry. They'd already made a decision. As the founders, they'd decided to train him to be the strongest Awakener, just like Midori. With their help, he could become the strongest Awakener ever, one of their own disciples. Kanagi was really surprised, asking if they really wanted him as their disciple. Hinoki nodded, saying yes, but then teased that it'd lead to a kind of battle royale between them. Kanagi, worried, begged them not to fight over him. Hinoki explained that's how things had started, but after watching him more closely, the founders had changed their minds. Instead of just using his body for their own benefit, they found training him much more interesting. Hinoki then told him that when Kanagi beat the poison user, he actually copied all their moves. He couldn't do them as well, of course, but he picked up the basics really fast. Hinoki asked if Kanagi understood how big of a deal this was, pointing out it was probably because of his crest of nothingness willingness. But what really made him special was how fast he learned. Hinoki explained that this ability was actually stronger than any of the founder's own talents. As Hinoki spoke, Kanagi felt tears welling up in his eyes. He remembered his old trainer's disappointed faces, the ones who told him he seemed to have no talent. Until now, no one had ever expected anything from him. It all felt like a dream, especially since he'd been treated like trash and constantly bullied for failing the hunter's qualification test 3 times. He remembered his classmates' laughter, their mocking voices telling him to just give up. His name was often forgotten, lost in the crowd, because no one cared enough to remember it. No one had faith in his future, and he was used to being overlooked. But now, 2 of the most renowned figures, Midori and Hinoki, were actually acknowledging him. He couldn't believe they were. It made him question if he even deserved this sudden happiness. He'd admired them from afar for ages, never once thinking they'd actually trust him. Hinoki noticed his reaction, came closer with a reassuring smile, and put a hand on his shoulder. He told him not to let his emotions take over. Then, it was revealed. Their actual souls were inside him, especially when he slept. This presence meant he could access a space not limited by time or dimension. Knowing this, they laid out his rigorous training schedule. Every afternoon, he'd train with the anti-prophecy unit, and at night, in his dreams, he'd continue his lessons. Peaceful sleep was a thing of the past, but he'd already braced himself for the challenge. He accepted their guidance right away, determined to follow whatever they said. Night passed and morning came. In the bathroom, Hanada was washing his face when he saw him walk in. They exchanged greetings, but he still looked really tired. He was clearly exhausted, and he admitted he hadn't adjusted to the grueling schedule yet. Hanada understood perfectly, remembering how he'd struggled himself when he first started at the dorm. But then, something unexpected caught Hanada's eye, a powerful aura coming from him. His curiosity was piqued, so Hanada impulsively threw a swift kick. Yet with an almost effortless move, he just lowered his head, spat out the water in his mouth, and walked away. He didn't even look back. He dismissed Hanada's silly stunt, saying he had no patience for that kind of thing so early in the morning and was going to the cafeteria first. Hanada was left in disbelief. He realized his attack was faster than yesterday, but it had been dodged so easily. Moments later, in the cafeteria, Hanada spotted a good place to sit and walked over to a woman who was eating some fruit. He asked if she minded if they joined her, and she gave a short, curt approval. Hanada took the chance, sat across from her, and motioned for him to sit next to him. Then he recognized her. This was one of Hanada's comrades from yesterday, but she still seemed distant. She spoke to him formally, making it clear she didn't really want him there. Even so, he greeted her and introduced himself. Her indifference was immediate. She wasn't interested in learning his name, and she certainly didn't plan on remembering it. She even raised her fork, pointed it at him, and declared she'd only acknowledge his name when she deemed him worthy. Until then, training was the priority. He'd have to go with her on a mission to get rid of a prophecy. This prophecy went all the way back to 1945, when people found the first prophecy book buried deep in the Antarctic ice, 3,000 meters down. They called it the Book of Doom. Its writing was crude, almost like a child's scribbles, but it predicted a catastrophic future. It said that 80 years later, the world would face a devastating attack and a bunch of apocalyptic disasters. The words were so heavy that everyone took it seriously. Later, as they were driving, she asked him why he thought the world believed the book's grim predictions. He thought about it for a moment, then looked at her, still not sure what her name was. But before he could even ask, she told him there wasn't any need for introductions and just wanted his answer. He figured the prophecies had to be accurate, but she reacted right away. She scoffed at his answer, practically questioning his intelligence. She told him that if even one thing in the Book of Doom came true, the world would end. That revelation stunned him. As they kept talking, he turned to Hanada, wondering how many prophecies were actually recorded. Hanada guessed around 200, and that just left him speechless. He couldn't help but wonder if the world was already beyond saving. But Midori reassured him that they'd already prevented almost 180 of those prophecies, which totally amazed him. Still trying to wrap his head around it all, he went back to asking why the world believed in the book so much. The woman explained that an explorer named Bernard Russell found the Book of Doom. The second Bernard opened it, the very first page said, "Hello, Bernard," along with a precise timestamp, March 17th, 1945, 11:35 a.m., on a sunny day, the exact moment he discovered it. That eerie accuracy left no room for doubt. Hours later, they got to their destination, Tokyo's Sumida Ward. An intermediate-level dimensional crack had opened up there. As they got closer, guards blocked their path, firmly saying the area was off limits. But they just ignored the warnings, zipped past them with incredible speed, and left the guards momentarily stunned. He hesitated, wondering if it was really okay to go on, but Hanada quickly reassured him it was. The woman then started explaining the big crisis they were dealing with. She explained that big problems like the Third World War, the dark side of the moon, an invasive pandemic, and the floating trees were all considered emergencies. Out of those, the pandemonium outbreak, which Midori managed to stop, was an especially bad one. Even though the Book of Doom's pretty well known, it's just one of many magic books scattered all over the world. The anti-prophecy unit's whole job is to gather information, analyze predictions, and act before things happen. She then went through the different threat levels they dealt with. A rank 3, for instance, meant one or more regions getting destroyed. A rank 2 was a national emergency, while a rank 1 affected the planet's environment as a whole. Then there was the special rank, reserved for when the world itself was going to be destroyed. He listened carefully, and as he realized how serious everything was, he grew alarmed. He urgently asked if these missions were now completely up to them. The woman didn't flinch. She confirmed that yes, those duties just came with being part of the anti-prophecy unit. Not long after, Kisaragi and his team spotted them crossing the caution line and immediately confronted them. Kisaragi, thinking they were just civilians, warned them to turn back, explaining how dangerous the area was. But she brushed off his concerns, stating that today's prophecy was a rank 3 event. The dimensional crack in front of them looked like an intermediate B rank, but it was actually a much bigger threat. A rank 3 disaster codenamed Yellow Journal. She was sure the crack would get bigger, and almost on cue, it started widening at an alarming rate. Kisaragi turned, his eyes wide with horror, as the fissure completely tore open. Then, a wave of creatures started pouring out, each one more monstrous than the last. He sharply commanded his squad to get ready for battle, but the response was both immediate and brutal. The creatures overwhelmed his forces in moments, cutting them down with little resistance. Panic set in, and he cursed under his breath, realizing that even B and C rank hunters were struggling to hold their ground. Then, his attention shifted to something even more dangerous, the immense pressure coming from a boss-level monster. Watching the newcomers stride forward, Kisaragi tried to intervene again, warning them to stay back. But before he could say anything more, the woman pressed her hand to the ground and cast a spell called Trismegistus. Instantly, spears shot up from below, impaling the creatures in a swift, merciless strike. Their bodies collapsed, lifeless, as blood pooled around them. Hanada launched his own attack too. He burst forward with incredible speed, moving fluidly through the battlefield and knocking down every enemy in his path with precise, calculated moves. Kisaragi watched the whole thing and was left speechless. He'd always thought he was pretty formidable as an S-rank hunter, but these people were clearly way beyond him. He just couldn't figure out who they were or where they'd come from. Then, the woman turned to Kisaragi and, without a shred of doubt, told him to fall back. As far as they were concerned, he was just a civilian in this situation. Kisaragi's eyes dropped to her hand and he saw an emblem imprinted on her skin. Recognition flashed across his face. He realized they weren't here by chance. They were government operatives. Before he could even process what that meant, a massive hand shot out from the dimensional crack, ripping it open even wider. As the rift grew, a towering beast stepped through. It was Gilia Olnir, a being way beyond S-rank, looming over them, its monstrous form giving off an overwhelming presence. Without a moment's hesitation, the woman lunged forward, getting ready to strike. Kisaragi shouted, warning her not to be reckless, but she didn't listen. Together, they launched their attack, completely unfazed by the threat in front of them. Hanada quickly started hitting the beastman with a series of kicks, only to realize with shock that his attacks weren't doing anything. The creature's anti-physical armor made his strikes useless, forcing him to pull back just as it lunged toward the woman. Without hesitation, she started gathering energy in front of her, getting ready to counterattack. But before she could even react, Kanegi suddenly appeared between them. He stopped the beastman's attack with just his bare hand. The impact made the beastman explode in a burst of energy, stunning everyone for a moment. Once the dust settled, Hanada recognized the attack. It was a penetration shock. What really shocked him, though, was that Kanegi had taken down an S+ rank monster with one hit. It hit him that Kanegi's strength had grown a lot overnight. Even though the woman called out that such force wasn't necessary, he knew that when you're up against an enemy with high physical resistance, striking from within is the most effective way to go. He'd learned this from Wantak, the Fist Saint, who taught him the basics of penetration attacks just the night before. After that, Kanegi turned to the girl and asked for her name, saying he'd saved her, so he at least deserved to know that much. She excitedly told him her name was Akane. There wasn't time to dwell on things. Hanada spun back to the battlefield, powering up to take on the new wave of monsters bursting from the crack. The woman wasn't phased. She unleashed her own attack, drenching her enemies in liquid mercury, then igniting it into a powerful explosion with her Mercurius Reject skill. Together, they pressed forward, seeing how right Kanegi had been earlier. Breaking their enemies from the inside was proving far more effective. She was determined to push on, so she signaled Hanada. Without hesitation, they both headed straight for the dimensional crack. Kisaragi could only watch in disbelief from behind. He knew the world beyond that crack was entirely different, an unknown realm packed with unimaginable dangers. Going inside was pure madness. Before he could even react, they'd already rushed ahead, leaping through the crack without a second thought. Kisaragi was left standing there, surrounded by the lifeless bodies of A-rank monsters. Then it hit him. These two weren't ordinary fighters at all. They had to be part of that rumored secret organization. The moment they stepped into the dimension, an overwhelming swarm of creatures was waiting for them. Akane quickly assessed the situation. She noted that the monsters were identical to the ones outside, then raised her hand. With perfect precision, she conjured a barrage of mercury spears, instantly impaling the creatures. Kanegi, still running, watched her technique and acknowledged her immense power. He finally understood why she was considered the strongest area of effect fighter within the anti-prophecy unit. After they defeated the other enemies, Akane now stood in front of a massive bear monster. Just as she was about to attack, though, Hanada leaped toward it first. The bear saw him and swung its claws, but Hanada dodged by, jumping onto the roof. He then followed up with a barrage of kicks all around the beast. Kanegi watched, amazed, as Hanada moved so effortlessly, simply giggling. But then, to his shock, Kanegi suddenly rushed at the bear and unleashed a barrage of kicks just like Hanada had. He even asked Hanada if it looked similar to his own technique. Hanada was taken aback, but he couldn't help but smile in amazement. Once they'd defeated the monster, they ventured ahead. Akane noticed that the deeper they went, the fewer enemies they encountered. They finally reached a huge open space that looked just like an arena. Suddenly, they felt an aura all around them, and they knew something was coming. Suddenly, to their shock, a huge enraged Minotaur warrior monster jumped right in front of them. It wasn't just any Minotaur. It was a boss blind one with a triple S rank power level. Hanada and Kanegi were totally taken aback by how massive it was, but Akane just stood there nonchalantly, wondering if this was really the boss. Then, a bunch of spears shot out from the portal. Akane yelled at the others to hit it with their strongest attacks, saying she'd handle whatever came next. Hearing her, Hanada started channeling his energy, while Kanegi just stood in the background, amazed by both of them. But deep down, he knew it probably wouldn't be enough to beat the beast. When Hanada heard him, he was surprised that Kanegi doubted their best attacks. Even though they were hitting it with a barrage of magic, the beast just swung its huge weapon. It created a crater in the ground and sent powerful shockwaves all over the arena. Once the dust settled, they were shocked. The beast was completely unharmed even after their powerful hits. The group got ready to fight again. As Kanegi got ready, he suddenly heard someone praising Akane's talent. He recognized the voice. It was Kilik, his founder's spirit. Kilik, who was an alchemist, worried that Akane, with all her purity, agility, and incredible strength, might just waste her talent by dying so young in this fight. Kilik said Akane had tried her best, but this minotaur was just on a whole different level of power. She'd underestimated the monster's physical resistance, which was at a full 100%. Kanegi, getting more concerned, asked what he should do, but Kilik just laughed. Meanwhile, Hanada and Akane were really struggling against the beast. They realized they should have brought someone good at magic. As Akane glanced at Kanegi, she was taken aback by the strange energy coming off his body. Kanegi had given control of his body to Kilik, who then cast his powerful spell, Mercurius, right onto the beast's legs. The spell froze its lower body, completely stunning Akane. She was shocked, not just because Kanegi used the same kind of skill as her, but also because he used it in a way that totally immobilized the beast. Kilik, still controlling Kanegi's body, looked at Akane seriously and called her a fool. He then scolded her for not being flexible enough with her expertise, telling her she still needed to learn how to control substances in 3 different forms to really become an alchemist. As Kilik spoke, he simultaneously filled the Minotaur's entire body with mercury. Just as the liquid metal started seeping from the monster's mouth, he cast a boiling spell. The mercury inside the beast quickly heated up, boiling from within, and its toxic fumes spread throughout the arena, making it hard for the others to breathe. Akane watched, amazed. Realizing Kilik hadn't used brute force, he'd used extreme temperatures to take down the monster instead. Meanwhile, the Minotaur writhed in agony, its body overheating from the inside. While he was casting the spell, Kilik casually told Kanegi he wanted to make Akane his disciple. Kanegi, though, just brushed it off as a joke. Eventually, the boiling mercury overwhelmed the Minotaur, turning it into a lifeless heap on the ground. And just like that, the day's mission, beating the boss, which was classified as a level 3 prophecy, ended in victory. Akane watched in disbelief, unable to grasp what she'd just seen. Kanegi had used a skill that should only be available to an awakener living inside a crest. Akane knew he had to be in the same class as Hiko, but he'd still managed to use alchemy at her level. Still shocked, she demanded to know who Kanegi really was. With a confident smile, Kanegi reached out his hand and introduced himself. Akane, annoyed but intrigued, reluctantly shook his hand, telling him she'd definitely remember him. Hanada beamed with happiness, seeing Kanegi finally get Akane's recognition. Meanwhile, Kisaragi and his men were still waiting outside. To their shock, the dimensional crack started closing. Just as it was about to seal completely, the trio jumped out just in time. Kanegi asked if the mission was officially over, and he was told they just needed to report back to headquarters. As they talked about what to do next, Kisaragi came up to them, thanking them for saving his team. He promised he wouldn't try to dig into their identities or what happened inside. Akane thanked him for understanding and suggested he put details about the emblem in his report. That would explain everything to the authorities. As the trio started walking away, Kisaragi offered his help if they ever got into trouble. But Akane turned back and said they'd probably never meet again, telling him he should go back to his normal life. Hearing this, Kisaragi realized that, in the end, they were just civilians. They were people who lived in a world he couldn't reach. On May 11th, a red flash streaked through the streets of An Prefecture Village. A guard spots it, but they're totally baffled, unable to tell what it is. Then, all of a sudden, a deafening, sky-piercing roar rips through the village. Back at Anti-Prophecy HQ, the trio gets out of their car, and Akane reminds them they need to write up their report for headquarters. But then Hanada gets a message on his phone. They're being called to the lab. That's pretty unusual, especially right after a mission. Curious, they head over to the Anti-Prophecy HQ lab, where 2 people are already waiting. One person standing on a stage, while the other's sitting in the stands. The one sitting then says, in a really authoritative voice, that Akane took way too long to handle a rank 3 disaster. Kanagi immediately recognizes him. It's the red-haired guy from earlier. Akane, though, is enraged by his condescending attitude. She's annoyed he's acting like he's the leader when he isn't. Hanada quickly steps in to try and calm things down, asking what Director Kurihara needs. It turns out the man on the stage is the director himself. Once everyone settles down, he plays a video the analysis team sent. The video shows a glowing, red-hot piece of charcoal, which the director explains is a prophecy grimoire. He explains they found it in a volcanic region, and they've been analyzing it ever since. Kanagi wonders if it's even possible to read a grimoire that's in such bad shape. But the director, adjusting his glasses, reveals they managed to get some info out of it using AI and X-ray tech, even though what it actually says isn't clear yet. But what they did manage to decipher was one prophecy that clearly mentions Japan. Everyone in the room is shocked, especially Akane, because this is a totally new prophecy they've never seen before. The director goes on to explain that anti-prophecy research is really advanced, gathering info from all over the world. So finding Finding an unknown prophecy like this is highly unusual. But this situation is different. The red-haired man immediately gets it. The four of them have to investigate it. The director praises his insight and says this mission would normally go to their usual members, but they're not available right now. Hearing that, Kanagi realizes this must be why Midori wasn't there when they got back. The director then orders them to leave right away and promises that more details will come via email. Kanagi's stunned they got another mission so fast, but the red-haired man just tells him he'll get used to it. Feeling really uneasy, Kanagi clenches his fists as a chilling thought sinks in. This time, the fate of the world might really be on the line. Suo slammed his hand on the table and stood up. He announced, in a really bossy tone, that he and his 3 subordinates would be taking on the mission. Akane was clearly annoyed. He was acting like a boss again. As they left, the director gave them a final warning. He told them to be cautious since they didn't know how severe the mission was. He also reminded them that even if the prophecy started unfolding, they'd have to wait for the main force before doing anything drastic. In the car, Kanagi felt uneasy about all the mission's unknown dangers. From the front seat, Suo suggested they get some rest. He noted that Kanagi had just finished his first mission, but Akane, driven by pride, refused. She insisted he had no right to give her orders. To her surprise, though, both Haneda and Kanagi immediately accepted his offer and dozed off within moments. Akane was determined to stay awake and struggled to fight off sleep. But as the night got deeper, exhaustion finally took over, and she drifted off too. Sometime later, the car stopped. Akane stirred awake and noticed the vehicle was empty. Alarmed, she rushed outside and found the others standing on a cliff, staring down at a glowing light below them. What she saw left her in utter disbelief. A massive magic circle sprawled across the ground, its scale far beyond anything they'd imagined. Haneda quickly grasped how serious the situation was. It was far worse than they'd expected. The prophecy was nearly complete. Skeletal figures were emerging from the ground, still trapped inside enormous crystals. Their eerie glow cast an ominous light over the entire area. It sent chills down their spines as they realized they might already be too late. These skeletons were the 23 residents of the village mentioned in the report. Suo recalled a similar incident from the past. 30 years ago, the Wakayama mansion had mysteriously vanished, and a dimensional rift had nearly opened. As he explained this, the massive pillar at the center of the magic circle began to erupt with bursts of energy. Noticing this, Suo urged them to move quickly. Haneda drew his sword and asked what they should do. Suo revealed that they had to stop it. Akane quickly reminded him of the director's orders. They'd been told to wait for more orders, but before they could even discuss it, they felt a huge aura behind them. When they turned around, they saw Kanagi covered in massive energy and ready for a fight. The group immediately realized Kanagi felt much stronger than before. Even so, Suo wasn't phased at all. He just smirked, leaped forward, and told the others to come with him. Everyone rushed after him, though Akane warned him not to be so reckless. As they charged down toward the magic circle, Hinoki and the mage suddenly picked up a smell in the air. It felt eerily familiar, a scent they'd come across many times in their lives. Just then, the ground trembled violently, and with an explosive burst, a huge hand shot up from under the earth. Hinoki's eyes went wide in shock. He now knew exactly what they were smelling. It was the stench of a forbidden technique, the very prophecy written in the Book of Scorching Heat. Hinoki explained that long ago during the Epsi period, an awakener named Bandu Shijima, who was the leader of the Dark Magus, had committed genocide. The Onmyojis eventually killed him, but an entire village got caught up in the whole ordeal. Shijima had collected the blood of those fallen villagers and used it to draw a magic circle, making sure he'd be reincarnated 1,000 years later. His goal? To devour everyone and rule the world as a demon king. Before he died, he'd left behind a forbidden technique that showed how living beings would be sacrificed for his resurrection. Now, in the present, Shijima has been reincarnated as a boss whose rank no one knows. His mission is clear. His mission? To fulfill the prophecy of scorching heat. He looked down at his hands and scowled, realizing he'd been brought back with way less power than he'd expected. He wondered if there weren't enough sacrifices for the ritual. As he looked around, he noted with amusement that even after 1,000 years, the place hadn't changed at all, but his lips curved into a maniacal grin when he spotted the anti-prophecy unit coming closer. He just thought they were more sacrifices for him to take. Channeling his dark arts, he unleashed Plate of Yin, causing a huge explosion right under the charging anti-prophecy unit. Kanagi's alarmed when the blast hits Hanada and Akane, but they're fine once the dust clears. Then, his expression darkens as he sees a dark magic circle appear under where they landed. It's the Death Realm, Dark Art. Hundreds of spirits come out of the circle, reaching with their ghostly hands to grab Hanada and Akane. They struggle, quickly realizing Shijima's much more skilled than they thought. As Shijima watches his spell work, he suddenly feels something behind him. It's Kanagi hitting him with a surprise attack. Shijima easily dodges, bending and sidestepping without any effort. He smirks, calling Kanagi an amateur, then casts Plate of Yin right under him. The blast goes off, but to Shijima's surprise, Kanagi's unharmed. Kanagi hits back with his Thunderbolt Hadad skill, but Shijima blocks it by using his own dark magic. Even though he stopped the attack, Shijima's impressed by Kanagi's skill choice. Out of the smoke, Su walks up behind Shijima and uses the Chrysanthemum spell, sending a bunch of sharp knives flying at him. Shijima's surprised but easily dodges by jumping into the air. While he's up there, Suo uses another spell, showing he already knew Shijima wouldn't be taken down by such a weak skill. Suo slams his weapon down and uses the Autumn skill, making knives rain from the sky. But Shijima just smiles, calling it a rain of mere lights. He then morphs his hand into a Suo, who blocks it, but the recoil is significant. After that block, Shijima realizes Suo's probably the strongest one there. Kanagi Kanagi, watching from the side, thinks Shijima's power is endless. He's totally different from any enemy they've fought before. Shijima himself feels even stronger than the founders. While Kanagi's thinking this over, he hears his friends calling him from behind. He turns and is shocked to see Akane and Haneda getting hit by black art skills. They manage to escape the attack and both start charging at Shijima, who's still fighting Su. As he's fighting them, Shijima summons 3 skeleton demons to handle Akane and Haneda, who are still rushing him. Haneda sees a demon appear right in front of him and kicks it, but to his surprise, it does absolutely nothing. These monsters' bodies are as tough as the minotaurs they fought before. While Shijima and Suo kept trading blow after blow, one of the skeleton demons stood right in front of Kanagi, blocking his way. Shijima even mocked Suo, telling him he wouldn't get any help from his friends. But right after Shijima said that, Suo slashed him straight on the shoulder. "I don't need any help," he declared, then pointed at Shijima. "Stay away. I only rely on my own ability." Shijima just wiped the blood from his wound and started yelling like a madman, screaming that he didn't need anyone either and would devour everyone. With that, he charged right at Suo, who barely managed to block the attack just inches from his body. As Suo struggled to hold off Shijima's relentless assault, he heard someone call his name from behind. It was Kanagi, charging straight for Shijima. Shijima was stunned to see Kanagi, especially since he'd sent a demon to stop him. He quickly looked back and saw the others still fighting their demons, but the one he'd sent after Kanagi lay cut clean in half. While Shijima was trying to process all this, Kanagi landed a powerful punch right to his face, sending him skidding across the ground. Even Suo was impressed by the attack. Kanagi then suggested they fight together to beat Shijima. Suo was shocked for a second. Kanagi and Akane hadn't even beaten their own opponents yet, but this guy had, and now he was offering to help him, but Suo's pride got the best of him. He flat out rejected Kanagi's offer, declaring, "I don't need anyone's help. I'm more than enough to fight alone." Kanagi couldn't believe it, but before they could argue anymore, Shijima suddenly closed in. He unleashed his Magatsu's breath technique, and a powerful beam blasted straight at both of them. Suo managed to block it, but Kanagi was sent flying. His body hit hard by the devastating attack. He crashed into a tree, and his vision started blurring as he began to black out. As he drifted into unconsciousness, he saw Hinoki and the mage's souls standing right in front of him. Hinoki told him he'd fainted, and that's why they'd summoned him into his own consciousness. Even though his body was bruised and battered and racked with pain, Kanagi tried to stand up, desperately asking them to send him back. He had to fight, but before they could even answer, a deep, authoritative voice echoed through the space, commanding him to step back from the battle. Meanwhile, outside, Suo was barely holding his own against Shijima's relentless attacks. Shijima smirked, even praising Suo for thinking just like him, believing they didn't need anyone else to fight their battles. With a sinister grin and that insatiable urge to devour everything, Shijima poured his power into his next attack. He struck down with such force that Suo's sword shattered in half. Even though Suo was stunned, he quickly summoned another blade and swung it at Shijima. But Shijima dodged it effortlessly, bending backward with an almost unnatural flexibility. Shijima clearly seemed to be enjoying himself more as Suo kept struggling. Meanwhile, back in the spiritual realm, Kanagi's spirit form watched the fight unfold. They knew Shijima was stronger than anyone else there. Hinoki told Kanagi this was way beyond what he could handle, and the mage added that Shijima's precision was terrifyingly high. If more humans had been living in that place, Shijima might have already become a demon king. She warned Kanagi that if Shijima took his life too, he'd get even stronger and wreak havoc on civilization. She even said their discovery of the grimoire was just a coincidence. Then Hinoki stepped forward, asking Kanagi to lend them his body so they could deal with it. But to their complete shock, Kanagi flat out refused. He apologized, but said firmly, "This isn't training. This is real." He explained he had to overcome this obstacle himself, just like he'd have to in the future. Full of confidence and determination, he looked at them and asked if they agreed. The mage tried to argue, but Hinoki interrupted him with a laugh. He told Kanagi, "You've already defeated us." Hinoki put a hand on Kanagi's shoulder, reminding him of his claim to surpass the founders. Then he urged Kanagi to go, use everything he's learned, and do things his way. This really boosted Kanagi's confidence. With a determined look, he faced the battlefield, asking the founders to watch over him. Without a moment's hesitation, he dashed toward the field where Shijima and Suo were still fighting hard. Suo looked battered and beaten. Just as Suo opened his eyes, Shijima struck again, sending him flying through the air. While Suo was airborne, Shijima got ready for his final blow to finish him off. But just as Suo braced for impact, someone grabbed him mid-air. Kanagi grabbed both Suo and his sword. While still mid-air, he quickly burrowed Suo's sword, and with a swift move, he threw Suo toward the ground, safely out of the way of Shijima's incoming magic beam. Suo landed hard on the ground, and Shijima immediately turned his attention to Kanagi, who was still in the air. Shijima releases another Magatsu's breath right at him, but he's shocked. Kanagi is calmly using Hinoki's one-handed sword style. With sharp focus, Kanagi slashes right through Shijima's breath attack, cutting it cleanly in half. Then, with precise control, he strikes Shijima's arm, cutting it clean off his body. Shijima is stunned, horrified, and speechless. He doesn't know what just happened. Shaking with fury, he yells about his identity. But Kanagi, looking completely determined, responds coldly that he's the one who will surpass the founders. The mage watching asks Hinoki if Kanagi will beat the Dark Magus, but Hinoki himself doesn't know yet. Still, Hinoki is certain Kanagi isn't foolish. He suspects Kanagi might have learned something new while sleeping in the car on their way here. A wide smile spreads across Hinoki's face, making him wonder if it's something even he doesn't understand. Suo is just as shocked, watching Kanagi move so efficiently smoothly and fluidly. Only moments ago, he'd refused Kanagi's help, but now that very help is saving his life. Meanwhile, Kanagi keeps relentlessly slashing at Shijima, forcing Shijima to teleport backward. Shijima counters with his dark art skill Pomegranate, sending a barrage of energy blasts toward Kanagi. Kanagi tries to dodge them, but he quickly realizes they're tracking him. Kanagi jumps around trying to get away, but the blasts just keep chasing him. Suddenly, he remembers one of the founder's skills, Aftershock. He slams his foot into the ground, raising a stone barrier in front of him to block the incoming attacks. Shijima is surprised by Kanagi's tactics, but quickly throws more blasts his way. Kanagi responds by using the shattered stone fragments to shield himself again. Then, seeing his chance, Kanagi combines two skills and flashes behind Shijima, but Shijima barely manages to dodge just in time. He counters immediately, unleashing his Plate of Yin Blast and striking Kanagi. Kanagi takes the hit, but he absorbs most of the impact. Using an airborne rock as a springboard, he lunges at Shijima, remembering the lessons from the founders. Shijima dodges again, but the sheer variety of techniques Kanagi uses leaves him stunned. Even the founders, watching from afar, are just as shocked by Kanagi's quick growth and constant assault. But Shijima isn't done yet. With a dark glare, he activates his forbidden art, summoning a towering skeletal monstrosity by fusing skeletons together. This giant creature looms over everyone, giving off a powerful, evil aura. Shijima smirks. "This is the end," he says. The giant skeleton swings its massive hand toward Kanagi, and the founders yell at him to run. But Kanagi just stands there, motionless, staring at the attack coming his way. He's deep in thought, realizing he still doesn't have enough power to beat Shijima, even if he gave it his all. He knows he needs something more, something beyond his current limits. Recalling the lessons from the mage and Hinoki, Kanagi remembers how to wield Shining Flame and Hinoki's one-handed sword technique. He recalls Hinoki teaching him the Wave Blade attack and various slashes. Drawing upon both teachings, Kanagi channels Shining Flame into his hand, while infusing his sword with Hinoki's skill, transforming his weapon into a blazing blade. The mage and Hinoki watch in shock. Kanagi has just achieved the impossible. Holding his newly empowered weapon, Kanagi stands ready. The technique he has just executed is called Blazing Fire Cutting Blade. Without hesitation, he dashes the skeletal beast, swinging his fiery sword as Shijima watches in utter disbelief. Remembering Hinoki's teachings about the blade and mage's magic arts, Kanagi desires more than just those two. With that determination, he manages to use the Blazing Fire Cutting Blade skill, engulfing his sword in flames. With a swift swing, he cleaves through the skeleton, splitting it from head to toe while also slashing Shijima in half. Everyone is shocked by this feat, combining two magic skills in such a way. The alchemist founder is particularly amazed, calling Kanagi an irregular for his ability to switch and combine all kinds of skills. He never expected Kanagi to be capable of merging techniques so effortlessly, and he suspects there may be even more to his potential. Suddenly, the alchemist vanishes, leaving Hinoki confused. Mage, overhearing his words, agrees, realizing they may have underestimated Kanagi's abilities. She now feels a twinge of concern, wondering if it's wise to raise someone like him. However, Hinoki is thrilled by Kanagi's power and eager to see just how far he can grow. As Kanagi lands on the ground, exhausted, he is shocked to see Shijima, who had been cut in half, beginning to regenerate from his own blood. Furious, Shijima snarls that if the attack had hit his head, he might have died. Channeling a dark energy, he forms a death ball, vowing to end things himself. But just as he speaks, Tsu suddenly slashes his throat from behind. Shijima is decapitated, caught completely off guard. As his body collapses, Tsuo grabs Kanagi, who has fallen unconscious. Holding him, Tsu recalls a distant memory. His older brother once carried him in the same way. It had been a freezing night under a bridge, with snow covering the ground. His brother had promised to get food for him in the morning. As Tsu drifted off to sleep, they had heard the sounds of a grand parade above the bridge, others celebrating while they shivered in the cold, stomachs empty. This memory reminds Tsuo why he chose solitude. Shijima had tried to manipulate him by preying on his loneliness. But now, looking at Kanagi, he realizes something. He is not truly alone, and even if he is, he can endure it. As he ponders this, the barrier around them begins to crack. Akane and Hanada rush in, immediately worried upon seeing Kanagi unconscious. Once they confirm he's only passed out, Hanada notices the barrier is collapsing from the inside. She warns that they need to act quickly. Hanada asks what would happen if the energy within the barrier explodes outward. Tsuo grips his sword tightly, revealing that if that happens, they will all be crushed to death. Their only option is to hit it with their strongest attack and try to deflect it. Though Tsuo says this with confidence, deep inside, he isn't sure if they are capable of it in their current state. But they have no choice. As they brace themselves, Kanagi, still unconscious, suddenly lifts his sword, channeling energy into it. Tsuo notices this in shock. Inside Kanagi's mind, Hinoki takes control, guiding his body. As the barrier explodes, everyone unleashes their full power, while Hinoki executes his one-handed style's splitting cloud attack. Outside the barrier, a red-haired man rushes toward the scene, accompanied by two men. His subordinates warn him that the barrier is about to collapse. Suddenly, it bursts open. The men fear they might be too late, but to their astonishment, a brilliant beam of blue light shoots into the sky from Kanagi's sword. The red-haired man watches in awe, recognizing the light as a flawless sword technique, free of hesitation. His name is Tsuo Makoto, the captain of the anti-prophecy unit. Observing the spectacle before him, he wonders whose work this could be. A while later, on a plane flying over Peru, Midori is on a call with Makoto, amazed that the new member has just stopped the unknown prophecy. Meanwhile in Japan, Makoto, still on the call, is facing a rank 1 prophecy, one that, according to him, is on a much higher level than what they encountered before. Midori, instead of boarding the plane, sits on top of it, smiling as he reflects on how much the anti-prophecy unit has grown, even though he isn't there to witness it firsthand. However, his amusement is short-lived when Makoto reveals that the core member who stopped the prophecy was none other than Kanagi, the same Kanagi who had only joined the team 2 days ago. Shocked, Makoto desperately demands to know who he really is. Without hesitation, Midori confidently declares that Kanagi is the one who will bring an end to all prophecies. They had been anticipating his arrival for quite some time. There was a lingering sense of expectation surrounding him, as if he was the one they had been waiting for. Makoto, skeptical of such high hopes, questions whether their faith in him is truly justified. Instead of arguing, he is simply told to see for himself. Changing the topic, Makoto urges Midori to return. His presence is needed, as facing an opponent of equal strength without him is proving to be a challenge. Midori chuckles, offering a brief apology before shifting focus. Meanwhile, Rin reaches out, his voice carrying urgency as he speaks of a grand prophecy unfolding before them. It is a colossal enemy, a super-rank prophecy, the boss of suicidal infection, Ishtam. As the monstrous being charges toward him, Midori tells Makoto to hold on, assuring him that he will finish up soon. Without hesitation, he extends his hand and unleashes divine wind turbulence. At that very moment, in a hospital ward, Kanagi's eyes snap open. A startled cry escapes his lips as he abruptly sits up. A nurse, noticing his sudden movement, leans over to reassure him. She informs him that he has finally regained consciousness. He has been in the anti-prophecy infirmary, asleep since the end of his mission. Hearing this, Kanagi wonders if he had merely lost consciousness. His sleep had been so deep that he hadn't even entered the spatial realm to train with the founders. The nurse assures him that he is fine, drawing back the curtain before reminding him to call if he needs anything. As the curtain lifts, Kanagi notices Suo sitting nearby, arms crossed, silently watching him. Seeing him, Kanagi wonders if he had been watching over him the entire time he was unconscious. Kanagi looks around and notices that Hanada and Akane are missing. Curious, he asks about them, to which Suo reveals that they are training, frustrated by their perceived uselessness in the last fight. With an accepting tone, Suo calmly states that Kanagi's power was overwhelming. Hearing this compliment from a man like Suo shocks the overpowered boy. But before he can fully process it, Suo suddenly stands and aggressively demands to know who he really is. In less than 2 days after his arrival, Kanagi has already defeated a rank 3 and a potential rank 1 boss, while using a rare fusion spell that Suo has never seen before. Pressing the question again, Suo demands to know Kanagi's true identity and how he too can become like him. As Suo insists on getting answers, Makoto suddenly arrives, asking if Kanagi is the one he's looking for. Kanagi confirms, but Suo is taken aback by his older brother's unexpected arrival. Makoto walks past Suo, barely glancing at him, while Kanagi hesitantly asks if he really is Suo's big brother. The moment the question leaves his lips, Makoto suddenly draws his sword and swings it inches away from everyone in the room. Both Suo and Kanagi are caught off guard. Dodging the attack, Kanagi wonders if it's some kind of test, while Makoto, equally surprised, marvels at how a mere trainee managed to evade his strike. Makoto confirms that it was indeed a test, and Kanagi has passed. Without hesitation, he introduces himself as the captain of Suo's squad, Su Makoto. The realization hits Kanagi hard. Makoto truly is Suo's older brother. After a brief pause, Makoto announces that due to Kanagi's extraordinary performance against the rank 1 disaster, he will be joining his squad temporarily. The announcement stuns Kanagi, but Suo is even more shocked. A tinge of jealousy creeps into him. Despite being Makoto's younger brother, even he is not allowed to join his squad. Wasting no time, Makoto orders Kanagi to follow him for a briefing. While in the background, Suo clenches his fists so tightly in frustration that his knuckles begin to bleed. Meanwhile, in the training area, the anti-prophecy unit duo is training hard. Akane wields multiple weapons, while Hanada focuses on blocking her attacks. However, no matter how much they push themselves, they know that reaching Kanagi's level is nearly impossible. As they continue practicing, Midori suddenly walks in, announcing his arrival with chocolates from Peru. To his shock, they completely ignore the chocolates and rush toward him, eagerly asking how long he will be staying in Japan. When Midori reveals he will be there for a week, the duo immediately insists on training under him during that time. They refuse to let Kanagi surpass them without a fight. Taken aback, Midori hadn't expected them to be this determined. He agrees to train them, but then asks about Suo, wondering if he wants to join. Just as he finishes speaking, Suo arrives, his expression filled with sheer determination, as he confirms that he will be joining as well. Meanwhile, in the hall, Kanagi keeps pace with Makoto's fast strides as he leads the way. Back in the training room, the group is shocked to see Suo just as determined to join them. Suo reveals that Kanagi has been scouted by his older brother to temporarily join his squad. This revelation stuns the duo, making them realize just how far Kanagi has progressed. Being personally recruited by Makoto is no small feat. However, Suo sees this as a sign of his own shortcomings compared to Kanagi, believing he must improve himself even more. Meanwhile, in the hallway, Kanagi, growing curious, asks Makoto about the meeting. Makoto reveals that it concerns their next mission, for which they will depart the following morning. As As they walk, Makoto suddenly stops and asks if Kanagi is close to his younger brother. Recalling their last battle together, when Suo lent him his sword, Kanagi excitedly confirms that he is. Though Makoto acts indifferent, he secretly worries about his brother but never shows it. This has led Suo to mistakenly believe that his brother hates him and doesn't care about him. The truth is, when Makoto visited them before, he didn't ignore Suo. He simply couldn't bear to look at his wounds. However, this misunderstanding made Suo believe his brother was disregarding him, fueling his determination to risk his life and grow stronger just to get Makoto's attention. On the other hand, Makoto doesn't want Suo to become stronger. He just wants him to be safe. This deep misunderstanding drives Suo's resolve to surpass Kanagi, believing that only then will his brother acknowledge him. One day, he hopes to defeat Makoto himself. Meanwhile, Kanagi, still curious, presses Makoto further, and Makoto finally admits that he truly does care about his little brother. Kanagi finds this heartwarming. Back in the training area, as Suo explains everything to the group, Akane finds it confusing. Even though Suo talks about surpassing his brother and proving himself, he still respects him deeply. Continuing her training with Hanada, Akane remarks that, in the end, Suo just wants his brother's attention. Hanada finds this touching, but Akane's words trigger something in Suo, making him enraged. Meanwhile, in the meeting, Kanagi learns about the 3 core rules of the squad. First, be swift. Second, maintain offensive pressure. Third, overcome weaknesses. Within the Counterforce division, Makoto's squad is considered the strongest in terms of combat ability. The squad operates with a minimum of 7 members, designed to be a small but elite force. Their primary targets are rank 1 and above-level threats. Aboard the helicopter, as Makoto's squad is escorted to their mission, a squad member named Jakaru casually remarks that 90% of the team's power comes from their captain, while the rest are just extras. Since Kanagi is only a temporary member, he isn't expected to do much. However, while Jakaru is explaining this, Kanagi is distracted, busy on his phone. Jakaru points this out, prompting Kanagi to apologize, explaining that he needs to contact his friends. Jakaru, confused, asks what he means by contact. Kanagi is trying to contact the other members of the anti-prophecy group, as the founders keep nagging him about it. While the group is training, they receive his message, and reading it shocks everyone, especially Sue, who wonders what the hell Kanagi is thinking by sending it. They immediately show it to Midori, who discovers that the message contains 3 separate pieces of advice, each tailored for a different person. The detailed guidance on how to get stronger impresses Midori. With a smile, he extends his hand and asks if they will follow the advice or reject it. Seeing it as a challenge, everyone accepts, especially Sue, who is enraged that Kanagi has essentially salted their wounds. Back on the plane, Jakaru informs Kanagi that they have arrived at their destination. Wiping the window, Kanagi is amazed by the sight of a vast, snowy mountain terrain with enormous crystal spikes jutting out of the ground. Their mission is to deal with a rank 1 prophecy, Frozen Earth. This disaster threatens to freeze the entire planet, as the affected areas are expanding at an alarming rate. If left unchecked, the whole Earth could be consumed, ending all life. This phenomenon is occurring simultaneously in 17 different locations across multiple countries, many of them in urban areas, which only worsens the crisis. Vice Captain Kashi briefs the squad on the situation, stressing that they cannot afford any delays, as reports indicate the freezing effect is spreading faster than anticipated. Leading the mission, Makoto orders the squad to jump from the helicopter's back hatch, as it can no longer proceed safely. Before they jump, he reminds them that no human lives should be harmed. To motivate everyone, he commands them to chant the 3 squad rules, and they all shout them in unison. Standing at the back, Kanagi reflects on his last battle, where he once again relied on Hinoki in the end. Determined to grow stronger during this temporary mission, he sees this as a valuable opportunity to learn from the other members. As everyone leaps from the helicopter, Kanagi resolves to complete this mission on his own. This is his first rank 1 prophecy. At 10:17 a.m., everyone lands safely on the ground. The air is freezing, and despite being an awakener, Jakaru catches a cold, questioning how the temperature is affecting him. Kashi explains that the cold is far worse than the reports indicated, which might be the reason. He also informs the squad that the area is vast and suggests setting up a camp midway. Hearing this, Makoto considers something but keeps his to himself. Meanwhile, Kanagi asks Jakaru if the prophecy, Frozen Earth, is recorded in any prophecy book. Jakaru denies it, revealing that the anti-prophecy unit predicted it using their unique skills. While many prophecies exist, this is the first time a member has successfully identified a rank 1 prophecy. This is why Makoto's squad was chosen for the mission, given its severity. Kanagi's question is answered, but Kashi notices that he seems slightly nervous. Kashi reassures him that nervousness is better than letting his guard down, but he shouldn't let it become a burden. Jakaru places a hand on Kanagi's shoulder, repeating Kashi's words and reminding him that he is moving with the best crew of the anti-prophecy unit. Kashi yells at Jakaru for being too relaxed, prompting Jakaru to apologize instantly. Suddenly, Jakaru raises his hand, reporting that his radar has detected enemies at 2 o'clock, approximately 200 meters away. Kashi acknowledges the report and vanishes in an instant, only to reappear moments later. She confirms that she scouted ahead and saw 30 monsters with an estimated rank of S++. These creatures belong to the ice gargoyle race of the Tice tribe. Hearing this, Makoto immediately orders his unit to annihilate the enemy. The squad charges toward the incoming monsters in a highly coordinated manner, their teamwork and situational awareness leaving Kanagi in awe. They operate on an entirely different level compared to trainees, making him realize that these are elite warriors, far beyond the regular members. Eager to join the fight, Kanagi asks for permission, which Makoto grants. Dismissing the enemies is nothing more than S++ rank. With permission secured, Kanagi launches forward and kicks a monster in the head. However, to his shock, the creature explodes, sending shards flying in all directions. Kashi, skillfully evading a flashy monster's attack, warns everyone that some extremely powerful monsters are mixed in with the rest. Meanwhile, Kanagi activates his fire-cutting blade and completely obliterates a monster with a fiery attack, sending it flying. Witnessing this, Jikaru is stunned that someone like Kanagi used a Fury Sword skill. Kashi is impressed, while Makoto, with just a few swings of his sword, effortlessly slices through the remaining monsters. He also takes note of Kanagi's fiery sword and realizes that the blue light beam he saw earlier must have come from it. With the monsters defeated, the squad sets up camp in the mountains and begins eating. During their meal, Kashi asks Jikaru what else he saw on his radar. Jikaru reports that there are no boss-level threats within a 10-kilometer range. Hearing this, Kashi sighs in relief, confirming that they can spend the night there. However, she soon wonders, where have Kanagi and the captain gone? On the other side, Kanagi sits by his own campfire, attempting to fuse his spells together just as he did before. However, as he focuses on the process, the captain suddenly arrives from behind and calls him out for his enthusiasm about training. Caught off guard, Kanagi nearly jumps out of his skin as Makoto scared the hell out of him by approaching so silently. After calming him down, Makoto sits beside Kanagi and asks if this is his first time camping and whether he finds it difficult. Kanagi enthusiastically claims that he's fine, but to his surprise, Makoto casually states that he just wants to go home and smoke. Kanagi is taken aback. He never expected someone like the captain to talk about smoking. However, to Kanagi's shock, Makoto then reveals that he's desperate to smoke his cat. Confused and alarmed, Kanagi misinterprets his words, thinking he's talking about drugs. He immediately questions the captain about his cat, to which Makoto, getting uncomfortably close, pulls out his phone and shows him a picture. Kanagi asks for the cat's name, and Makoto reveals it's Oribe. As Kanagi examines the picture, he notices the cat's ferocious gaze, but instead asks if Makoto really misses him. To his surprise, Makoto denies it, revealing that Oribe is a complete menace, always scratching his stuff, vomiting everywhere, and being an overall nightmare. Yet despite all of that, Makoto admits that the cat is still adorable, just like his younger brother Suo. Kanagi finds it strange that Makoto is talking this way, but he listens as the captain, in a hopeful voice, expresses his wish to one day talk with Suo the same way he's talking with Kanagi now. Kanagi, being an only child, admits he can't relate, but he offers a suggestion. Perhaps Makoto should treat Suo the same way he treats his cat. Hearing this, Makoto smiles and agrees. He then shows Kanagi some videos on his phone, shocking him with footage of the captain treating his cat like a baby. Amused, Makoto questions whether that kind of behavior is really okay. Then, with a soft expression, he looks at Kanagi and asks if they can practice together. In his mind, Kanagi doesn't really want to, but before he can answer, Kashi arrives, searching for them. She requests that they return to camp, reminding them that they have to depart early the next morning. Makoto agrees without complaint. That night, however, Makoto and his crew remain unaware of a mysterious figure venturing into the snowy land. The person, casually dressed as if heading to the beach, moves deeper into the frozen terrain. When stopped, he claims to be on a mission to fulfill the prophecy of that place. Holding a small book in his hand, he declares it an important mission. He is a solo awakener heading toward the very same mountain as Makoto and his squad. At the camp, as Kanagi sleeps, he finds himself training in his dreams with the founders. Today's lesson is archery, meant to improve his concentration. He practices with a heavy bow under the guidance of Margit, who is instructing him. Noticing Kanagi sweating, Margit asks if it's painful to keep his focus steady. As they train, Hinoki loudly complains about why it isn't a sword training day, but the mage quickly silences him, reminding him that it was his turn the previous day. Despite the noise, Margit is impressed that Kanagi remains undisturbed, showing significant improvement in maintaining his concentration compared to their first session. Kanagi explains that he is currently on a mission with an amazing team, which motivates him to give his best. With his focus locked on the target, he releases the arrow, hitting the bullseye with perfect accuracy. Margit is amazed by the precision, while Kanagi drops to the ground, sighing in relief. Margit reminds him not to forget the feeling and calls it a day for training. Realizing that the session is over, Hinoki gets excited, immediately drawing his sword and ordering Kanagi to get up for sword training. However, just as they are about to start, Kanagi is suddenly awakened by his crew, as it's time to continue their journey. Before setting off, Makoto briefs everyone, stating that today, they will slay the boss tied to the prophecy. As they venture ahead, they encounter more monsters. This time, a flock of blue birds. As the squad charges toward them, the founders within Kanagi comment on how easy this mission should be, given the team's strength. However, the mage notices that one of the older founders appears uneasy, sensing that something is off about the fight. After a battle, the crew successfully clears the monsters, clearing their path forward. Makoto then orders Jikaru to scout ahead. Jikaru reports that approximately 2,000 meters from their position, there is likely a major boss, and it is heading straight for them. He then delivers horrifying news that the monster will reach them in just 10 seconds. Within moments, a towering figure known as the unknown god Calamitas comes rushing toward them with a ferocious, maniacal expression. Her aura is completely different from any monster they have faced before. Makoto immediately orders his crew to engage, and they all flash toward the boss in perfect coordination. Jakaru uses his abilities to shackle the creature, while Kashi slashes at it from all angles. However, to their shock, their attacks leave no visible damage. The boss remains completely unscathed, despite their well-executed combo. Just as the boss is about to counterattack, it suddenly senses something approaching from above. It's Kanagi, descending with a powerful sword strike. Remembering what Akane and Hinoki taught him about executing a vertical slash, he unleashes his strongest attack first, ready to strike with full force. Combining his power, Kanagi attacks with his blazing fire-cutting blade, sending a beam of fire toward the boss. However, to his shock, it has no effect. The boss immediately counters, swinging her own sword and sending Kanagi crashing into the ground. Hearing the powerful impact, Jakaru momentarily believes Kanagi has just died. However, Kanagi survives, having landed on an ice crystal that cushions his fall. Meanwhile, Kashi, still fighting, realizes why this boss is ranked number 1. She glances toward Makoto. It is now up to him to save them. Makoto draws his sword, and as he does, Jakaru instantly shackles Kanagi and lifts him out of the fight, claiming that if they interfere, they will only get in their captain's way. As they retreat, the boss swings at Makoto with all her might. The sheer force of the attack creates a powerful shockwave, making Kanagi worry for Makoto's safety. However, to his astonishment, Makoto stops the attack inches away from hitting him. The boss swings again, and once more, Makoto blocks it effortlessly. Without hesitation, he counters with a devastating slash, severing one of the boss's arms. Watching this, Hinoki is beyond impressed, exclaiming that he wants to do the same. However, Kanagi, growing concerned, firmly refuses to let Hinoki take over his body. Meanwhile, standing before the wounded boss, Makoto calmly declares that he had wanted his crew to gain experience fighting a boss of this level, but now he will end it himself. Hearing this, his crew quickly deploys a barrier around them for protection. As soon as the barrier is up, Makoto channels his red dragon skill into his sword, unleashing blazing flames all around. He then combines it with crimson light, sending a massive inferno straight at the boss, which obliterates nearly half of her body. Kanagi, witnessing this, is utterly shocked. Makoto used a sword flame technique similar to his own, but it was far stronger. Without the protective barrier, they all might have been reduced to ashes. Kanagi quietly apologizes to the boss, saying it was his duty to protect the world. Then, out of nowhere, he meows like a cat, causing an unbearable wave of secondhand embarrassment to wash over everyone. Observing the battle closely, Kanagi realizes that Makoto's technique is vastly different from Hinoki's. His skills are truly on another level. Amazed, Kanagi now deeply desires to learn from him. Meanwhile, Makoto delivers a final follow-up slash, cutting the boss completely in half. However, in an instant, a flash of light streaks through the battlefield. Makoto's arm is suddenly severed. In disbelief, he turns, only to see a gaping hole in Jakaru's body. Kanagi frantically looks around, horror gripping him as he realizes what just happened. One by one, his comrades' bodies are being torn apart, blood spilling onto the ground. They are all dropping dead before his eyes. Kanagi, seeing Jakaru falling, rushes to help him, but with the last of his strength, Jakaru pushes him away. Stumbling backward, Kanagi watches in disbelief as the comrades he fought alongside just seconds ago are now collapsing before his eyes. Despite being on the brink of death, Jakaru is filled with regret. His radar failed to detect the incoming attack, leading to this devastating loss. As he falls, he apologizes to his captain and crashes onto the ground, hoping his team has at least seen where the attack came from. Kashi is safe, but several other members are struck by the same beam, piercing straight through them. Makoto, clutching his severed arm, yells at his team to take cover in the terrain, calling it a skill attack. Without hesitation, everyone obeys and runs for their lives. While fleeing, Kashi calls out to a fallen comrade, urging him to follow. However, he hesitates, worried about their captain, who is severely wounded. The attack that severed Makoto's arm cannot be blocked, not even by a barrier because its properties allow it to annihilate everything it touches. Suddenly, another beam hurtles toward Makoto, but he narrowly dodges it by leaping into the air. Kashi watches in growing fear as the boss unleashes a relentless barrage of attacks while simultaneously regenerating. Realizing they must take down the boss in one decisive burst, she turns to Kanagi, only to find him kneeling on the ground, frozen in shock. Kanagi stares at the of his fallen comrades, his voice barely above a whisper as he pleads with the founder Valentine, asking if she can resurrect them. However, with an embarrassed expression, Valentine apologizes. She cannot bring back the dead. Kanagi falls silent for a moment, then takes a deep breath. He calls upon all the founders, admitting that while he wanted to handle everything himself this time, he now realizes he may need their help once again. Without hesitation, Hinoki steps forward and takes control of his body. Meanwhile, Makoto, analyzing the attack, realizes that it completely bypassed Jakaru's radar. Since Jakaru's radar can only detect threats within a 3-kilometer range, the attack must have originated from beyond that distance. This single strike not only killed Jakaru, but also severed Makoto's arm, proof that their hidden enemy is at least as strong as he is. Determined not to let his fallen comrade's sacrifices be in vain, Makoto pushes beyond his current limits, channeling power far beyond his normal capacity. He focuses his energy, using his heightened senses to pinpoint a location over 3 kilometers away, despite the obstacles concealing the enemy. Clenching his sword, he remembers those who have fallen today. Their deaths fuel his resolve. With unwavering determination, Makoto charges his blade with crimson light and unleashes a devastating blaze of fire. The scorching inferno rips through the ground, obliterating everything in its path, until, at last, it reveals the enemy who cast the deadly spell. It is the same boy who arrived there alone, casually dressed. He is impressed that Makoto managed to track him down after his attack, just as expected from the captain of the strongest squad. However, Makoto is shocked. His attack was completely consumed by this man. The boy claims that if Makoto still had his left arm intact, that attack would have killed him. He is using a spell called Darkness to channel dark orbs around him. As he walks toward Makoto, he launches one of the orbs with the intent to kill. In response, Makoto swings his sword, conjuring an ice barrier. He then counters in an instant, vanishing and reappearing behind the boy, slashing at his neck. But before Makoto can process what just happened, the same devastating beam attack strikes again, tearing a chunk off his torso. The boy remains unharmed, calmly stating that he had anticipated Makoto's attack. However, he adds that Makoto is the one truly close to death. That comment ignites Makoto's rage. With what little strength he has left, he lunges forward, swinging his sword. But the boy effortlessly sidesteps and counters with a powerful kick, landing a direct hit on Makoto's open wound. However, Makoto is one step ahead. Using the opening, he strikes with the back of his sword, sending the boy crashing into the ground. As Makoto watches, he becomes curious. Why did the boy stop using his beam attack after only a few shots? Despite its overwhelming power, it seems he cannot sustain it indefinitely. Realization dawns on him. The boy cannot use his spell continuously. In terms of endurance, they are evenly matched. The boy, after crashing, manages to land on his feet, confirming Makoto's suspicion, but pointing out that they are not in the same condition. Makoto is at a clear disadvantage. One arm severed, half his body missing. However, Arcade Makoto refuses to acknowledge the concept of a disadvantage. He recalls the 3 rules of the Makoto squad, drawing strength from them. Determination floods his body as he readies himself to fight until his last breath. With unwavering resolve, he channels electric fiery energy, burning his own wounds to cauterize them and stop the bleeding. As he does, he roars the squad's 3rd rule into the battlefield: overcome your weakness. With those words, he unleashes Scarlet Blaze. The boy's eyes narrow. He realizes that Makoto is burning away his own life force to amplify his power. In response, he does the same, fueling his darkness spell with his very essence. Makoto, calling upon the spirits of his fallen comrades, glares at his opponent. His voice booms across the battlefield, warning him not to look down on his squad. Meanwhile, in the back, as Kanagi calls upon his funders for help, his hair turns white as Hinoki takes control of him. The other squad members, who are still running, are suddenly stopped by the boss, who remains strong as she regenerates her arms. Kashi, witnessing this, grows concerned, realizing she cannot subjugate the boss alone. She calls out to Kanagi, who is still kneeling in the back. To her, it seems as though his fighting spirit has completely faded after witnessing his squad members' deaths. It is only natural. He was just an ordinary person who recently joined the squad. However, to her shock, Kanagi rises from the ground. In a blinding flash, he dashes forward and lands a devastating kick on the boss, sending her flying. On the other side of the battlefield, Makoto and his opponent continue their fierce exchange, trading blow after blow. Makoto, wielding only half of his sword, unleashes Scarlet Light. The opponent barely dodges by leaning to the side. Despite evading the attack, he grows uneasy. It is getting harder. Makoto's flames, which should have been erased by his darkness spell, are re-emerging and striking him again. Furthermore, there is a limit to how much he can control his darkness manually, and that limit is approaching. Realizing this, he sends a barrage of darkness orbs at Makoto. But Makoto swiftly dodges, seizing an opening to lunge forward and slash his opponent's arm clean off. Now their positions are reversed. However, despite losing his arm, the opponent leaps forward and drives his knee into Makoto's wounded arm. Makoto collapses to the ground in pain as the opponent slowly approaches. Looking down at him, he claims that losing an arm means nothing. After all, there is still a hole in Makoto's stomach. He then reveals something chilling. He had already anticipated Makoto's strategy. From the very first attack, he knew Makoto would engage in close combat. He acknowledges Makoto's strength, admitting that he always makes the best decisions and never wastes time. However, he also points out Makoto's flaw. He is too predictable. That, he declares, is the reason why Makoto will lose. Reaching into his bag, he pulls out a book. Holding it up, he claims that Makoto's defeat has already been decided by its contents. Makoto's eyes widen in shock as he recognizes it as the Book of Doom. The opponent opens the book, revealing a startling truth. The guy claims that if there is an organization that exists to stop prophecies, then it is only natural that another exists to fulfill them. Makoto is stunned as he never knew such an organization existed. The opponent then makes his final revelation that he is one of the 12 apostles of the apocalypse. He introduces himself as the 12th of darkness, the one destined to fulfill the prophecy. Makoto, still in disbelief, questions the reason behind his obsession with bringing about destruction. The opponent, flipping through the pages of the book, smirks and asks if he reveals will Makoto forgive him. Makoto is enraged by the mockery. Without hesitation, he swings his sword with all his might, nearly severing the opponent's shoulder. Makoto is confident that he can win this battle, as his opponent appears to be out of mana, and his body seems to be reaching its limit. Makoto channels the red dragon form, convinced that it will secure his victory. On the other hand, the guy, with his shoulder nearly severed, is still standing, declaring that this is Makoto's end. With that, he takes out a potion and drinks it, unleashing a flashy burst of light. The light blinds Makoto, and suddenly, within that brilliance, a powerful fist strikes Makoto's face, sending him crashing to the ground. As the dust settles, Makoto is in disbelief, seeing that all the damage he inflicted on the guy has been healed, and his opponent is back to full strength. The guy claims that the potion he used is an artifact, which allowed him to heal completely. With one arm, Makoto uses his Scarlet Light Blade again, sending a sword wave toward the guy. However, the guy disperses it with his darkness orbs and counters with a barrage of attacks. Makoto is left in shock, as the artifact the guy used is supposed to be controlled by countries due to how overpowered it is, and no ordinary organization should be able to possess one. The guy kicks Makoto in his gut wound, sending him to the ground, where he takes his final breaths. Seeing Makoto beaten, the guy lets out a sigh of relief, believing he has finally defeated him. Meanwhile, Makoto, remembering his childhood and his comrades, tries to reach for his sword. He also recalls Kanagi's words about treating his brother like his cat, which brings a smile to his bloodied face. With renewed determination, he picks up his sword, but as he is about to swing it, a darkness beam hits him, completely severing the hand holding the sword. The guy, with a confident tone, bids Makoto his final goodbye. However, just as he is about to deliver the finishing blow, someone arrives, parting the crystal behind him. It's Kanagi, backed up by all the founders, ready to get their revenge on the guy who made their disciple cry. Makoto notices Kanagi's presence and is initially worried, but soon realizes that it's not just Kanagi. Something else is emanating from him. The guy also notices the abnormality and the aura radiating from Kanagi. The boy in front of him no longer appears as a vulnerable target, but as an existence that will fiercely defend himself. Growing worried, the guy warns Kanagi not to move, threatening to kill Makoto if he does. However, as he speaks, his arm is severed from his body in a flash. The guy is shocked, unable to comprehend how it happened so quickly. Meanwhile, Kanagi simply swings his sword from a distance, the force of the strike even dulling his blade. The founders notice this, surprised that the sword dulled after just one strike. The alchemist founder steps in, transmuting multiple weapons for Kanagi to use in the fight. With pure vengeance in his eyes, Kanagi orders every founder to unleash hell on the guy. Meanwhile, the guy completely regenerates his arm, which shocks Hinoki. The mage founder explains it as reversal, a skill she didn't expect a modern awakener to possess. She speculates that the artifact he used continuously heals his wounds until its effect wears off. As she speaks, Kanagi launches an arrow that strikes the guy directly in the head. The guy didn't see it coming, but he regenerates the wound instantly. Seeing this, one of the founders asks the mage how they can kill the guy. She reveals that they must kill him repeatedly until he eventually dies. The guy uses his darkness spell as Kanagi loads another arrow. When Kanagi releases the arrow, the darkness spell tries to intercept it, but the arrow pierces through, striking the guy in the chest and head. The archer founder mocks the guy, asking if he truly believed he could stop his arrows. The guy regenerates his wounds and counters with a darkness orb's attack. Kanagi, using the founder's evasive powers, dodges the attack and flashes toward the guy, kicking him in the face. He then grabs the guy's hand and delivers a palm strike to his face. One of the founders notices that the guy can't use his annihilation beam attack if his vision is blocked by his own orbs, which works in their favor. Dodging the attack becomes easier because of this. Kanagi delivers a powerful blow to the guy's gut, sending him crashing to the ground. The founders wonder how many times they'll have to watch the same guy die and regenerate. Meanwhile, Kanagi walks over to Makoto, who, in his beaten state, asks if he is truly Kanagi. Kanagi denies it, explaining that the founders are using his body as heroic spirits. Using Valentine's healing power preservation, Kanagi begins healing Makoto's arms. As he heals, Kanagi reveals that they are in a hurry and must act quickly. Seeing Kanagi leave, Makoto understands that it's the founders who are in control. A short distance away, the guy gets back up, shocked that his spells are being dodged and countered so effortlessly. Without giving him time to think, Kanagi attacks him with a spear, piercing straight through his heart. The guy is relentlessly attacked, dying repeatedly without a moment to recover. One of the founders asks the mage if keeping the spear in the guy's heart will prevent him from regenerating. However, the spear passes through his body, and he begins to regenerate again. As the guy starts to recover, Kanagi delivers a powerful kick from above, crashing him back to the ground. Kanagi wonders which body parts regenerate first if they completely destroy his body. The guy begins regenerating from his hand, but by the time his full body is restored, he is gasping and exhausted. He is being obliterated, but refuses to let a boy stop him. Deciding to kill Makoto and escape, he rushes toward him, only to find Kanagi already sitting there, guarding Makoto. With a maniacal smile, Kanagi reveals that he is too late. Hinoki then takes control of Kanagi Kanagi's body, and using his sword style completely cuts the guy's body into pieces. Even though the guy is obliterated, he doesn't fear death, as he believes he is fulfilling a prophecy. However, his resolve begins to waver in the face of something as terrifying as Kanagi. As the guy regenerates again, he tries to remind himself of his mission to fulfill the prophecy, refusing to let fear overcome him. He reaches for another artifact in his bag, but before he can use it, Kanagi cuts off his arm. The artifact scatters the ground, creating a powerful golden cage around Kanagi called the Sand Cage of Time. The regeneration effect on the guy ends, and he is unable to regenerate his arm. Relieved, the guy believes he has barely made it. The founders, seeing the cage, grow concerned, wondering what to do next since the guy's regeneration is nearly over. The guy, standing outside the cage, claims that even his darkness can't destroy the cage, so Kanagi can't kill him from within. With a nervous expression, he declares that he is going to leave, but before he can finish his sentence, Hinoki yells at him to watch closely. Suddenly, the guy feels a strong aura behind him and turns to see Makoto standing on his own 2 feet, still regenerating. How is Makoto that much of a Chad and overpowered? Well, it all goes back to his childhood when he trained with the best Midori. Even Midori lost to Makoto in a sword fight, which led him to suggest that Makoto find a better master to continue his training. Following the advice of the world's strongest awakener, Makoto searched for masters to become a disciple of those at the highest level. However, he surpassed every master he encountered, whether they taught him swordsmanship, magic, or agility. Every master gave up on him in less than a month. One of the masters recommended him to the strongest swordsman they knew at the time, Hinoki Ichika, the little sister of Hinoki. Ichika became Makoto's final master, and he trained under her for about 3 years. One day, while training with Ichika, Makoto asked about a sword technique mentioned in a book called Indomitable. Even Ichika couldn't figure out how the technique worked, claiming that it was a skill only Hinoki, the founder, could use. Makoto found it fascinating, as he had read about it in the book. However, Ichika soon realized she had nothing left to teach Makoto, as he had already mastered Hinoki's one-handed sword style. Makoto wanted to grow even stronger, but Ichika didn't know how he could progress further. She compared him to an unblooming bud, stating that even with all his training, blooming in this lifetime would be difficult for him. She hoped that one day, a stronger swordsman would appear before him. In the present, Makoto realizes that this moment is happening right before his eyes. He notices Kanagi using sword techniques he didn't even know existed. According to Ichika, such an opportunity might come only once in a lifetime, and he shouldn't miss it. Grateful for the chance, Makoto thanks Ichika in his heart and begins touching his severed arms together. Seeing this, all the founders are confused about what he's trying to do. Kanagi is also worried about his captain, who is outside the cage with the enemy. Makoto begins emitting the same aura as Kanagi. Meanwhile, inside the training ground of the anti-prophecy faction, Midori, who is training with Suo, senses a powerful aura. Suddenly, an explosion rocks the area, and as the dust settles, they are shocked to see a massive hole in the wall, and Midori is gone. Back on the battlefield, the guy is confused, seeing Makoto able to perform such a feat despite his condition. He is certain that he will be cut down. Witnessing this, Hinoki explains to Kanagi that people are like flowers, blooming at their true potential when they reach their peak, whether physically, spiritually, or through mastering an ultimate technique. For Makoto, this is the moment of his true potential. Hinoki, standing behind Kanagi, advises him to engrave what he sees deep in his mind. Kanagi realizes what Hinoki is trying to say. Like a blooming flower, Makoto lifts his arms as if holding a sword, and, with unwavering determination, manages to use Hinoki's one-handed sword style's lost technique, Indomitable, the very technique he read about in the book. Even though the guy's darkness defenses are flawlessly activated, his body is cut in half without Makoto even wielding a physical sword. The guy wonders if this is the time and place where he will meet his end. As his body falls apart, Hinoki praises Makoto for materializing a sword that existed only in his mind. Meanwhile, Makoto, though standing in a state of confusion, feels that he has finally become the swordsman he always aspired to be. He considers it a blessing to have spent time with his family, friends, comrades, and subordinates. Every experience he's had has made him stronger. Even if this is his end, he remembers his little brother and his cat, apologizing to them in his heart. As he is about to lose consciousness, he sees Kanagi walking toward him, lending a hand with a smile. Seeing this, Makoto realizes that this death might not be the end, as he can still leave his legacy to the next generation through Kanagi. Grabbing Kanagi's hand, he thanks him and collapses to the ground. As the cage vanishes after the guy's defeat, Kanagi rushes toward his captain, feeling a deep connection through the crest of nothingness. All the other comrades lie lifeless on the ground, but as Makoto is about to join them, Midori comes flying in. He grabs Makoto just in time as he falls. Makoto dies in Midori's arms at the age of 23, after the battle with the darkness user, Pei, F for respect in the chat. Holding Makoto's body, Midori is in despair, unable to believe what has happened. He remembers a time when he asked Makoto why he became the captain of the squad while they were training. According to Midori, in the anti-prophecy unit, Makoto was the second strongest after him, and if he were to go all out, no one would be able to match him. Midori had asked Makoto if, with all that strength, he thought it was better to fight alone. This question surprised Makoto, and he asked Midori if he thought he wasn't suited for teamwork. However, the team was more important to Makoto than anything else. He wasn't sure how to express this to Midori, but suddenly his comrades called him through the the security camera. In the group, Jakeru was excited because one of their comrades, Kuzushiro, had just passed the level 2 assignment he had been working on. Kuzushiro was also happy, saying he wanted to tell the captain first. Jakeru, thrilled about the news, suggested they all go out for lunch. Seeing their camaraderie, Midori was taken aback. As Midori listened, Makoto revealed that he was fond of his comrades, and that even if he fell wounded in battle, he would be happy knowing he had his comrades by his side. Coming back to the present, Midori holds his friend's body and tells him that his wish of fighting for his comrades has been fulfilled. Even though most of his comrades have fallen, 2 of them are still alive. With tears in his eyes, Midori closes Makoto's eyes, stating that as a leader, Makoto has fulfilled his duties. It's something Midori knows he couldn't have done, but Makoto did it, and with honor. On the other hand, Kanagi is on the ground while all the founders stand behind him. Darkness begins to cloud his consciousness, and the mage explains that it's likely due to Kanagi taking all the blame for the station's destruction and his perceived weakness. All of the founders have also experienced the loss of their comrades, friends, and families. Their hearts were broken as they watched their comrades depart, and in most cases, like Hinoki, they couldn't move on from their wounded hearts. Hinoki walks up to Kanagi, who is kneeling in despair. He calls out to him, but in a hopeless tone, Kanagi reveals that he doesn't want to fight anymore. His heart feels torn apart, and he believes that if he had let the founders fight from the beginning, no one would have died. He now understands that in his attempt to become strong for others, he ended up becoming merely a vessel for the founders. Hinoki, hearing Kanagi's words, tries to say something, but Kanagi is too overwhelmed by his thoughts. He feels the hand he shook with Makoto in his consciousness burning like fire. Kanagi knows that Makoto entrusted him to carry forward his legacy. This brings tears to the founders' eyes, but what Kanagi says next shocks them. He declares that he now not only wants to surpass the founders, but to surpass them with every moment he has. Suddenly, a beam of bright light hits Kanagi as he declares his determination. From now on, he will not let anyone else die. Bro is now 1,000 levels mentally strong. 1 month later in Nagano Prefecture at Mitake Mountain, Suo is practicing hand-to-hand combat with Kanagi. He sends blow after blow toward Kanagi, who dodges them all. Kanagi then counters with a penetration attack, which Suo blocks. But the attack creates a shockwave behind him. Kanagi is shocked that Suo redirected the force of his penetration spell so effortlessly. As he processes this, Suo counters, but Kanagi is ready and uses Aikido to swing Suo around. Suo tries to kick mid-air, but Kanagi blocks it and counters with a powerful kick of his own. Just as he's about to land the hit, a loud shout stops them both. It's Ichika. How did it all happen? Well, the annihilation of the squad has left a deep scar in the anti-prophecy unit. During the funeral of the fallen, everyone was in grief. But Suo stood frozen in front of his brother's picture the entire time. Later, as Kanagi was heading to his room, he saw Suo coming out of Makoto's room, holding some books and a cat. Kanagi recognized the cat as Oribe, the one Makoto often talked about. Suo was shocked that Kanagi knew about his brother's cat, something even he hadn't been aware of. Before entering his brother's room, Suo didn't know about the cute cat, the books, the clothes, the food, or even the thoughts his brother had. He only discovered these things when he went through Makoto's belongings. Kanagi noticed that Suo had a bunch of diaries with him, which he planned to take. These diaries were left by Makoto so that his brother could read them in case he lost his life. All of Makoto's daily training and missions were recorded inside. However, Suo noticed something else. Every sentence in the diaries ended with Makoto worrying about Suo. He wrote about how Suo was doing, how the weather was cold, and even about Suo's achievements and life events. Reading this alone in his room, Suo broke down in tears, curling up on the floor as he realized that everything his brother wrote was about him. Comment a tear emoji if you're crying too. As Suo revealed all this to Kanagi, Kanagi also shared that Makoto always talked to him about Suo and his cat, Oribe. Hearing this, Suo teared up, declaring that from now on, he wants to get stronger so his brother won't have to worry about him from heaven anymore. With that, they both went to Hinoki Ichika to train. At first, she was cautious of them, until they revealed that Suo was Makoto's brother and that Makoto had fallen in battle. This shocked Ichika, but she kept her composure. In sync, both Suo and Kanagi requested her to train them to become stronger. Coming back to the present, Ichika is amazed at how much they've both improved, especially Suo, who has progressed remarkably. Kanagi asks about his own progress, to which Ichika responds with an annoyed sigh, claiming she has nothing left to teach Kanagi since he already knows everything. She jokes that it should be her asking him to teach her instead. She then kicks a stick toward both of them and, with a manic grin, declares that she is the sword, challenging them to come at her. With that, they both charge at her, Suo striking from the front while Kanagi attacks from above. As they fight, Kanagi is determined to get stronger and is confident that he will become the strongest awakener in the world. Meanwhile, in England, London, a man wearing a hat and coat walks down the night streets alone. As he turns a corner, someone recognizes him as one of the 12 apostles of the apocalypse, Quatre. Quatre also recognizes the person approaching him. It's Midori. Midori straight up demands that Quatre reveal the location of his base and comrades, warning him that if he says anything else, he will die. Hearing this, Quattro instantly summons his weapon, a strange heart-shaped pike, and challenges Midori to come at him. Suddenly, a burst of blood sprays from the alleyway, followed by Midori walking out unscathed. Outside, other members of the anti-prophecy group are waiting. Midori hands them the book, turns and leaves, stating that 7 people are left. They now have 5 books, meaning they've killed 5 members of the 12 apostles of the apocalypse, and Midori is now heading to the next target. Within the Hunt of Everlasting Secrets, the anti-prophecy's top secret facility, a book collected by Midori is presented to an elderly woman. She is introduced as Io, the superintendent of the anti-prophecy unit. The man delivering the book confirms it is indeed from Midori, revealing that these are the prophecy books of the 12 apostles of the apocalypse. This man is Jengen, the assistant to the superintendent. Another assistant, a lady named Shiki, is also present. She suggests that the books might be parts of a single, larger book that has been dismembered. Io opens the book and remarks that eliminating the apostles and retrieving the books aren't the main problems. The real issue is that Midori is acting on his own, and it seems like Makoto's death has left a deep scar on him. Shiki, hearing this, wonders what they should do. Io, with a smile, orders them to leave Midori to her, assuring them that once he returns, she will prepare tea for him. Jengen and Shiki then propose that since Makoto's squad has been eliminated, leaving a gap in the anti-prophecy unit, they are willing to form a new squad under their leadership. Hearing this, Io falls into deep thought. Meanwhile, somewhere around Tokyo, a Rank 2 prophecy, the Rebellion, is unfolding. The boss of this prophecy is the God of Down. Members of the anti-prophecy unit are fighting the troops of the prophecy, but are struggling to defeat even a few of them. In their nervousness, they call out for their captain, Hibiki. Hibiki, the captain of the Hibiki Setsuna squad, steps forward. To her, the troops are boring and easy to defeat. She then looks back at Akane, who has joined her squad, and asks if she can handle it. Akane uses her Trismegistus spell, creating a massive blob of mercury. She warns everyone to stand back as she flows the mercury onto the ground toward the troops. Once every troop has their feet submerged in the mercury, Akane uses her gasification spell, converting the mercury into gas. The troops begin coughing and suffocating. Akane then follows up by converting the gas back into liquid mercury, which is now inside the troops' bodies. She uses crimson heat to boil the mercury within them, and finally, she solidifies the mercury, instantly killing all the troops by forming spikes inside their bodies. The entire squad is shocked, as Akane has just wiped out all the troops in a matter of seconds. Akane snaps her fingers and turns toward the group, announcing that she's finished. Hibiki walks toward her, clapping, and praises Akane for using all 3 states of matter and executing 4 attacks in a single skill. She holds Akane's chin and remarks that it's a shame Akane is only a temporary member of their group. Hibiki proposes that once Akane finishes her training, she should join their squad permanently. Akane, excited, replies that she'll think about it. The other squad members are also impressed by Akane, wondering if she'll really join their squad given how cute and strong she is. However, to their surprise, Hibiki wants Akane to join because she wants their battles to be even easier. As soon as Akane leaves, she calls Kanagi, informing him that she has completed Lesson 7 about controlling the 3 states of alchemy, and asks him to send her the next lesson. Kanagi, who is trying to keep his lunch safe from the cat, agrees. The founder alchemist hearing this is amazed that Akane has finally mastered level 7. Kanagi requests the founder to prepare 3 more lessons for Akane, which he gladly agrees to. Kanagi informs Akane, and she thanks him. She also mentions that Hanada has reached Lesson 8. In Saitama Prefecture, Tokorozawa City, a Rank 2 prophecy, Earth-eating beast with the boss Sphinx has occurred. Hanada, sent to eliminate the boss, uses his lightning kick and completely destroys the boss with a single strike. With this, he completes his level 8 lesson on the lightning kick. The captain of the Todoroki squad praises Hanada and proposes that he join their squad. Hanada, like Akane, wants to think about which squad he should join. He asks Akane for advice, and she, excited to compete with him, claims that no matter which squad he chooses, she'll win against them. Kanagi, who is on a joint call with them, is happy that they're both getting stronger, and declares that he should get up and start training too. As Kanagi is talking, Suo gets annoyed that Oribe the cat always clings to Kanagi and not him. He yaps about it, and as he tries to pull the cat away from Kanagi, Akane asks if they've heard the rumor about a new squad forming. Kanagi hasn't heard about it, so she explains that a new squad is being formed to fill the gap left by Makoto's squad. The captain of this new squad will be selected from the member with the highest achievements. Kanagi takes the news lightly, but Akane has something else on her mind. She reveals that the real question isn't who will become the captain, it's whether Kanagi wants to form his own squad. At first, Kanagi brushes it off as a joke, but then he freezes, realizing the weight of what she's saying. Kanagi asks Akane why she said that. She reveals that there is a certain desire within the anti-prophecy, as there exists a force in the world capable of eliminating all prophecies. Kanagi is taken aback by this revelation, and Akane adds that she too desires such a force. She explains that everyone in the squad is searching for a strong-willed leader, and she believes Kanagi has the qualities to be a capable squad captain. Just then, Akane's squad captain calls for her, prompting her to excuse herself from Kanagi and say goodbye. This conversation leaves Kanagi deep in thought about the possibility of becoming a squad captain. Meanwhile, Ichika asks Suo about Kanagi, to which he reveals the discussion about him potentially becoming a captain. Ichika also believes that if Kanagi wants to, he could easily take on the role, and Suo agrees with her. Lost in thought, Kanagi seeks answers from the founders, who appear just as uncertain about what to advise him. Since they had all devoted their lives to following a master, they lack experience in leadership. The mage founder, realizing this, calls them useless teachers for being unable to guide Kanagi in this situation. Hinoki then turns to the founder of military strategy, Rion, and asks for his opinion. Rion, however, refuses to intervene, stating that it is not the right time, as there is already someone qualified to guide Kanagi. Before Kanagi can process this, his thoughts are abruptly interrupted by a wooden spear striking the ground inches away from him. Looking up, he sees Ichika approaching, urging him not to waste his time overthinking, and instead continue his training. With a maniacal grin, she challenges him to use his flash step against her. Kanagi agrees, leaping down from the rock and using flash step in combination with ripple step to land softly. Ichika watches in amazement, wondering about Kanagi's true identity. To her, the level of skill he has attained in just 6 months is impossible for a normal awakener. Recalling Hinoki's rigorous training sessions where he failed countless times while learning flash step, Kanagi lets out a laugh. However, before he can dwell on the memory, he senses an aura of energy surging toward him. Noticing Ichika charging at him with her wooden staff infused with energy, he swiftly dodges. The staff strikes the rock behind him, splitting it cleanly in half. Suo, witnessing this, is stunned. Ichika, undeterred, reminds Kanagi that she doesn't care whether he is focused or not. She will force him to be. Kanagi, now slightly nervous but fully attentive, holds his stance. Inside him, Hinoki realizes that Rion was referring to Ichika as the qualified person to guide Kanagi. The mage founder also comes to understand that Ichika is remarkably strong for a modern awakener, as expected from Hinoki's descendant. However, Hinoki denies having children, claiming it might be his brother instead. He acknowledges Ichika's strength, noting that since she trained someone as powerful as Makoto, she might be a living successor. However, as he says this, he notices her using a technique called Skyfall, something he has never seen before. This technique launches an electric zap toward Kanagi, who barely evades it. Realizing the sheer strength behind the attack, Kanagi understands that Ichika is going all out against him. Ichika charges forward and follows up with her Purgatory Sword technique, unleashing a powerful strike at him. Meanwhile, Hinoki watches in excitement, realizing that Ichika has developed a new technique by refining all the knowledge passed down to her. Outside, as Kanagi dodges the attack, Ichika is impressed. It's a technique he has never encountered before, yet he still managed to evade it. She praises Kanagi's one-handed sword style, noting that it closely resembles the techniques of the founder. This comment shocks Kanagi, and before he can respond, Ichika adds that he might be worrying about whether he could ever become as strong as Makoto. Kanagi is stunned, as this is exactly what has been weighing on his mind. Suo, overhearing this, is also taken aback. Kanagi's grip on his sword tightens as he recalls witnessing Makoto's strength firsthand, how he was an extraordinary squad captain. This is the very reason Kanagi keeps questioning whether he can ever reach Makoto's level. To his surprise, Ichika tells him that he doesn't have to be like Makoto. She suddenly yells at him to pay attention, channeling her energy as she executes her sword technique, Tengu Dance, creating a powerful water tornado. She explains that this technique was developed by past masters who built upon the founder's techniques. While these techniques may never match the founder's power due to the immense difference in strength, the masters never stop trying, gradually getting closer over time. Hearing this, Kanagi finally understands what she means. Ichika then reveals that she doesn't know exactly how great a Captain Makoto was, but from what she knew of him, he must have been an incredible leader. She adds that it won't be the same for Kanagi in the beginning, but if he has skills, he definitely has the potential to reach that level. Pointing her wooden stick at him, she advises Kanagi not to try to become like Makoto, but instead to focus on the path entrusted to him. Hearing this, Kanagi remembers when Makoto shook his hand. Thinking back on that moment, he realizes he must look toward the future instead of dwelling on comparisons. A smile appears on Ichika's face as she declares that, for the sake of that future, she will train him herself. With that, they both engage in intense training, pushing each other to their limits. 2 weeks later, at the Anti-Prophecy headquarters, Hibiki and Todoroki, 2 squad captains, review the list of newly recommended squad candidates. The list, submitted by the superintendent themselves, includes Kanagi and Ichika. Some members find this selection odd. Meanwhile, outside the HQ building, a dark figure speaks on a cell phone, informing someone that they have successfully infiltrated the facility and that the new squad captain exam will take place in 3 days. This figure carries the Book of Doom and boldly declares that they will soon become the new squad leader of the Anti-Prophecy. This figure is none other than Eva, a member of the 12 Apostles of Apocalypse. Eva possesses a skill called Heavenly Demon, which allows her to replace the existence of anyone she kills. Her goal is to become the captain of the newly formed squad of the Anti-Prophecy and destroy the organization from the inside. As Midori continues his killing spree against the 12 Apostles, more than half of them have already fallen. Since they cannot defeat Midori head-on, they have decided to sabotage the Anti-Prophecy from within. Their motto is that they will do anything to fulfill the prophecy. 3 days later, at the grand training field of the Anti-Prophecy, the selection examination for the captain of the new squad is underway. As all participants gather, the instructor announces that there will be 4 tests, with only 4 people advancing to the final stage. The exam follows a point system. First place in each test earns 3 points, second place earns 2, and third place earns 1. In the end, the candidate with the highest score will be elected as the captain of the newly formed squad. The superintendent watches as the instructor urges all participants to give their best effort. In unison, they yell, "Yes!" Among them, Kanagi feels the weight of everyone's gaze. phase. There are 8 candidates: Koki from the Yagarama squad, Akihina from the Yorizuya squad, Sonobe from the Yashima squad, Hisagi from the Kakabe squad, Sakazaki from the Tsarazaki squad, Shikami from the Todoroki squad, and Jiru from the Hibiki squad. However, the real danger lies in the fact that one of them is actually Eva, one of the 12 apostles, an imposter hidden in plain sight. And then there is the special recommendation, Kanagi. Unlike the others, Kanagi stands alone, as his squad captain Ichika is nowhere to be seen, oversleeping as usual. However, she sends him a message, warning that if he doesn't win, she will personally make him regret it. Determined to avoid elimination before Ichika arrives, Kanagi steels himself for the competition. Meanwhile, Ichika rushes toward the training ground, riding on Sue's back. She yells at him to go faster, knowing that if they don't hurry, they might miss the crucial moments. She has complete faith that Kanagi will win and refuses to miss his victory. Back at the training field, the first test begins, which is mana measurement. To everyone's shock, Kanagi releases an immense amount of energy, shattering the measurement device and securing first place. Akihina from the Yorozuya squad, who ranks 5th in the test, is stunned by Kanagi's overwhelming power. Sakazaki takes 3rd place, while Sonobu secures 2nd, both realizing that Kanagi is an anomaly. Sakazaki remarks that such irregularities occasionally occur when a genius in either physical strength or mana appears in the exam. He speculates that Kanagi is a mana prodigy, much like another participant, Shikami, who ranks 7th. On the points table, Kanagi takes the lead with 3 points. As the instructor announces the second test, hand-to-hand combat, the real battle begins. Each participant must face an opponent, and a victory will earn them 2 points. As the instructor announces the first participant, Shikami voluntarily raises his hand, requesting to face Kanagi. Shikami is the strongest regular member in hand-to-hand combat, and is also considered an irregular. When he was just 2 years old, he was caught in the emergence of monsters from another dimension. However, even as a baby in a cart, he single-handedly killed all the monsters, shocking his own mother. He protected her and became a legend. In the audience, Hibiki accuses Todoroki of cheating by sending Shikami into the hand-to-hand combat test. Todoroki argues that there is nothing wrong with choosing his strongest member, as Shikami is blessed with both magical talent and immense physical strength. He boasts that he has been training Shikami since he joined his squad, and to this day, no one has ever beaten him in hand-to-hand combat. Hearing this, Hibiki wonders if the match will end instantly, considering Shikami's combat abilities are practically unbeatable. As the fight begins, Shikami approaches Kanagi and asks if he has really been giving lessons to Hanada. Remembering the founders, Kanagi replies that he is merely a messenger. Shikami doesn't understand what he means, but continues, claiming that someone out there is advising and teaching Hanada, who is already a super genius. He adds that even without Kanagi's guidance, Hanada will surpass his current level on his own. Instead of arguing, Kanagi simply agrees with him, which only annoys Shikami further. Enraged, Shikami activates Violent Bite, transforming into a monstrous form. In an instant, with blinding speed, he lunges at Kanagi. Kanagi ducks just in time, but Shikami follows up with a powerful claw attack. Watching this, Todoroki is thrilled to see his fighter going all out. As Shikami swings with all his might, Kanagi sidesteps the attack. Seizing the moment, Kanagi shifts into Kudu's stance, grips Shikami's wrist, and with tremendous force, slams him into the ground. The impact erupts in a massive shockwave, sending rocks flying across the field and startling everyone. As the debris settles, both Kanagi and Shikami are airborne. The other participants are in awe. Despite Kanagi merely redirecting Shikami's attack, the sheer power of it was enough to devastate the entire battlefield. Even Kanagi himself is impressed by Shikami's strength, though Shikami assumes he is being sarcastic. Despite the powerful blow, Shikami lands safely on the ground, shocking everyone that he managed to do so despite the destroyed terrain. Akihina, analyzing the situation on his laptop, remarks that this outcome was inevitable. Shikami's physical boost is irregular, and the sturdiness of his body far surpasses that of a normal awakener. Regaining his composure, Shikami charges at Kanagi once again. Kanagi realizes that simply countering Shikami's attacks won't be enough to win. He needs to try something different. Activating his founder power, he delivers a light kick at the charging Shikami. He then multiplies the attack using the penetration technique, Luminance Kick, striking Shikami multiple times while he is still airborne. Everyone watches in shock as Shikami crashes to the ground, defeated. The instructor quickly intervenes, stopping the match before it escalates further, and declares Kanagi the winner, awarding him 2 additional points. The other squad members are amazed. This guy just physically overwhelmed Shikami, despite Akihina's earlier claim that he was an irregular. Akihina, now furiously typing on his laptop, hadn't expected Kanagi to be so exceptional in hand-to-hand combat. He initially assumed Kanagi would be eliminated naturally if left alone, but now, it's clear that Kanagi is becoming an obstacle in his plans. As Shikami regains consciousness and opens his eyes, he is shocked to see Kanagi casting some kind of spell on him while he lies on the ground. Kanagi reassures him that he is healing his wounds, which only astonishes Shikami further. An irregular in both mana and physical prowess, now capable of healing too? It seems almost unbelievable. Shikami, still processing what's happening, asks Kanagi if there's anything he can't do. This question makes Kanagi recall the time he desperately tried to bring back his fallen Makoto squad members, but failed. After healing Shikami for a while, Kanagi tells him he should be able to stand now. As they speak, a loud bang suddenly erupts nearby. Kanagi looks over and reveals that it marks the final match of the hand-to-hand combat exam. Shikami, now alarmed, wonders how long he's been unconscious, realizing it must have been quite some time. Kanagi calmly tells him it has only been 5 minutes. According to Kanagi, after their fight, the other battles started simultaneously. 2 of the pairs finished instantly, but Akihina and Hisagi are still fighting even after 5 minutes. Both remain determined, exchanging a relentless barrage of blows with full force. As Hisagi charges at Akihina, she pushes him back with a powerful attack, mocking him for lacking any special abilities. She taunts that without unique skills or traits, he is unfit to be a captain. Akihina steadies himself and counters her remark, stating that he is not the type who seeks to stand out. According to him, even if an ordinary person were to take on the captain's role, death would be the only outcome for them. He believes that a captain must have the ability to adapt to any situation in order to increase the survival chances of every squad member, even by just 1%. Akihina declares that this is his goal, ensuring that he does not suffer the same fate as the Makoto squad. This statement strikes a chord with Kanagi, as Akihina is speaking about his fallen comrades in such a manner. Shikami also takes offense and warns Akihina to watch his words. Back in the fight, Hisagi executes her disciplined chainsword technique, generating an energy whirlwind as she charges straight at Akihina. Even though Akihina blocks the attack, the sheer force sends him crashing to the ground. Hisagi quickly follows up with another strike, but just as she is about to land the hit, Akihina unexpectedly surrenders. The instructor immediately stops the match, declaring Hisagi the winner, leaving her in shock. Another squad member quickly restrains her as she fumes with rage, furious that Akihina gave up so easily instead of putting up a real fight. Akihina, on the other hand, claims that he expected the battle to last longer, so he chose to preserve his energy for the upcoming tests. As he walks away, he knows that he could have defeated Hisagi if he had tried, but he does not want to reveal his full strength just yet, especially with Kanagi closely observing the fight. The second stage of the exam, hand-to-hand combat, concludes with Kanagi leading the scoreboard with 5 points, followed by Tsunobu with 3. The instructor announces a 30-minute break before the start of the third examination. He also reveals that in the next round, the 4 participants with the lowest scores will be eliminated. As the lunch break begins, Kanagi wonders about Ichika and Sue, who should have been there, but are still missing. Meanwhile, outside the Anti-Prophecy headquarters building, Sue finally arrives, carrying Ichika. Exhausted from the effort, he is confused when she starts heading toward the courtyard instead of the training ground. When he questions her, Ichika reveals that she can smell traces of an aura, one that suggests someone has recently died there. According to her, it appears to be the residue of an awakener who was killed by an overwhelmingly powerful monster. Hearing this, Sue is stunned. If an awakener was truly killed here, it means someone may have infiltrated the Anti-Prophecy headquarters, despite this place being a well-kept secret. Ichika argues that the 12 apostles are strong enough to have figured out how to find this location, shocking Sue even further. When he asks about their possible motive, she ignores the question and instead suggests they head to the training venue. In her mind, however, she knows that whoever died was likely at the level of a squad captain. But with no official reports of such an incident, the situation is becoming more intriguing. Now, not only Midori, but also Ichika, Sue, and, most notably Kanagi, are all working toward the same goal, avenging Captain Makoto's death. During the lunch break, as everyone patches up their wounds, eats their meals, and casually converses, Akihina sits alone, focused on his laptop. Meanwhile, Kanagi, who is sitting with Shikami, becomes excited when he notices his comrades, Ichika and Sue, arriving. The atmosphere shifts as others grow nervous upon recognizing Ichika, one of the 5 elite members of the Anti-Prophecy Special Task Force, alongside Midori. Sue, observing the gathered captains, feels uneasy. Ichika had claimed that a captain had been killed, yet all 7 captains are present on the training ground. Hearing this, Ichika smirks and calls Kanagi over to share something important. She tells him everything, shocking him with the revelation that one of the captains might actually be a member of the 12 apostles in disguise. According to Ichika, the probability is high based on the aura residue she sensed in the courtyard. The individual who died was undoubtedly at a captain's level, yet all captains are accounted for, making the situation highly suspicious. Logically, it should be impossible, but if someone is disguising themselves as the victim, then there is an imposter among them. Realizing the potential danger, Kanagi grows tense, and Sue agrees. The person who just killed a captain-level individual is standing among them. Sue fears that if they don't solve this problem soon, there may be more victims. If they leave it as it is, there's a possibility that a prophecy at the level where human extinction is certain. Ichika, with an evil grin, suggests a far more ruthless approach, killing everyone there to eliminate the threat entirely. Sue and Kanagi immediately oppose the idea, arguing that they only need to find and eliminate the one member of the 12 apostles lurking among them. Ichika, now excited, points out that if they are dealing with the 12 apostles, this might be their chance to avenge Makoto. After all, they are the ones responsible for his death. She asks Kanagi if he feels the same, and as he recalls what happened to Makoto and their squad, he confirms. Sue, clenching his fists, also remembers everything that happened to his brother. Kanagi then turns to Azure, the founder of the detectives, for his opinion. Azure suggests that he should first examine the crime scene, but given that they are in the middle of an examination, he knows that isn't possible. Kanagi considers hurrying there since there's still some time left before the lunch break ends. However, Azure warns that this might alert the culprit. If the apostle they are dealing with is as strong as the one they faced at the Snowy Mountain, he could easily wipe out everyone here if he wished. They need to be prepared if that happens. Taking this into account, Kanagi decides to head to the training ground after today's test, but asks asks if there's a possibility that even the founders wouldn't be able to detect any aura residue at the crime scene. Hinoki then reveals that they have been near a volcano for the past month, where he trained and mastered his one-handed sword technique. He explains that the volcano might be interfering with the flow of their chi, potentially making it difficult to any residual energy. Mage also reveals that if the aura can only be sensed at close range, it is almost certainly from a 12 Apostles class enemy. Azure, annoyed that they are taking over his detective work, is about to protest, but Hinoki shuts him down, suggesting they focus on catching the culprit so he can kill him. Returning to the interrogation, Azure tells Kanagi to ask Ichika a question. Kanagi then asks if there is a possibility that the apostle infiltrated as a candidate, rather than as a captain. This catches Ichika off guard, but after a moment she confirms that it's possible, if they are talking about the captain candidates. However, she insists they cannot rule out suspicion on the squad captains either. Kanagi understands, but quickly forms an idea that he plans to use in the next test, assuming it involves combat abilities. However, just a few minutes later, the instructor announces the start of the third stage of the examination, revealing that it is a written test, completely shocking Kanagi. The candidates are seated in private chambers where no phones are allowed, making it impossible for Kanagi to gather any information about the infiltrator. The test focuses on the rules of the anti-prophecy, something Kanagi doesn't understand at all. However, he refuses to give up, determined to push through. When the test ends, the instructor announces the results. Kanagi fails to earn any points while Akihina jumps to second place with 3 points. The last 4 candidates, including Shikami, are eliminated. Kanagi feels embarrassed about getting the lowest score in the writing exam, but as he stands there frustrated, Shikami walks up to him and encourages him, telling him that he did well. Both Kanagi and Shikami receive 0 scores in the writing test, but Shikami is especially frustrated about Akihina earning full marks. Despite this, he praises Kanagi for maintaining first place and assures him that he will be cheering for him in the second half of the exam. He wonders who will be selected as the new captain, and adds that after the captain is chosen, the superintendent will also evaluate whether the newly formed squad will function properly. Shikami explains that the minimum number of members in a squad is 7, meaning the captain must recruit at least 6 more members. He advises Kanagi to start considering which candidates he will recruit once he becomes a captain. Placing a hand on Kanagi's shoulder, Shikami offers himself as a squad member, emphasizing his strong physical abilities. Then with a grin, he walks away, wishing Kanagi the best for the rest of the exam. As Shikami leaves, Azure approaches Kanagi and tells him to visit the crime scene. However, something in Azure's confident tone makes Kanagi realize that he has already identified the culprit. Azure confirms this, but states that he still needs solid evidence to make an official deduction. He then declares that they will now go on the offensive against the 12 Apostles. The mage explains everything that has happened so far, and mentions that Detective Azure assists Kanagi with his deductions and methods. This annoys Hinoki as the mage speaks in a roundabout manner, but she does so intentionally to lighten the mood with her narration. They are at the crime scene, where Azure takes over for Kanagi, and begins examining the area. As expected, everything aligns with his suspicions. With the victim's identity confirmed, he now also knows who the culprit is. Hearing this, Hinoki realizes that their opponent is indeed one of the 12 Apostles, which means he might have obtained the Book of Doom, the same one the last apostle possessed. The mage then asks what they should do next. Just as Kanagi is about to respond, he suddenly feels a surge of energy and is transported into a cloudy realm. There, he encounters an old lady who, when asked, simply claims to be a random granny passing by. She inquires about his investigation, and Kanagi reveals that a murder has been committed. The culprit has taken on someone else's form and appears to be highly skilled. Upon hearing this, the granny asks if they should find the culprit now. However, Kanagi explains that they already know who it is, not by mere guesswork, but with solid proof. Despite this, he admits that he cannot expose the truth just yet. The granny is confused, as she believes that revealing the culprit and eliminating them immediately would be the best course of action. However, Kanagi argues that while it may seem that way, there are actually 2 culprits instead of 1. He insists that it would be better to take them both down at once when they are in the same place. He decides to deal with it in the morning, but requests that the old lady, who is actually the superintendent, refrain from interfering and simply observe. She smiles, wishes him luck, and reiterates that she is just a passing granny who will not interfere. As she is about to leave, Kanagi reveals his name to her, prompting another smile from the old lady. Suddenly, a strong surge of energy rushes through him, and he regains control of his body. In a top-secret location, the assistant questions the superintendent, asking if it was wise to leave things as they are. The granny, however, assures her that she doesn't mind, as Kanagi seems close to the truth and appears to have a plan. She claims that she is merely interested in seeing what he will do next. She then orders the assistant to instruct the other officers to provide backup for Kanagi if anything happens. The assistant agrees, but admits that even after walking near the residual traces, she didn't find anything particularly interesting. Still, the superintendent places her trust in Kanagi's words. The assistant is puzzled as to why the superintendent has so much faith in him. In response, the granny reveals that it is because of the confidence and determination she saw in his eyes. The next day, as Kanagi walks through the woods, Shikami joins him, explaining the next test. This test will evaluate their performance based on how well they would function as a squad captain. Shikami already expects Akihina to rely on his strategic skills, but he expresses his support for Kanagi instead. Kanagi thanks him, but suddenly, out of nowhere, asks why Shikami deliberately dropped out of the examination. After a brief yet sinister pause, Shikami turns to him and claims that he changed his strategy midway. Instead of becoming a captain himself, he now prefers to operate in his own way under the command of a strong captain. Kanagi narrows his eyes in suspicion and accuses Shikami of doing it so he could eliminate all the promising members of the squad. Ichika is also present, hiding in the trees just in case. Hearing Kanagi's suspicion, Shikami openly admits that he has no problem killing someone if it is necessary for a replacement. He explains that during the third test, he struggled to write anything because his brain could only process and retrieve the information already stored in it, which is why he ended up with a score of 0. Calling himself a fool, he accepts that it would be better for him to simply eliminate Akihina's body instead. As they step into an open field, all the squad captains and members surround them. In the center, Todoroki is chained to the ground while Hibiki and another captain stand beside him. With her usual casual and cocky demeanor, Hibiki refers to Shikami as Mr. Apostle and asks him to introduce himself. Realizing his disguise has been exposed, Shikami deepens his voice and reveals his true identity, Eva, the 9th Apostle. Eva then explains her ability, adding that she can also extract information directly from a host's brain. She claims that she killed Shikami because he possessed the strongest physique among the contenders. Hibiki smirks and asks if Eva's goal is to sabotage the anti-prophecy from the inside. Eva confirms this but admits that since she has failed, she now has no choice but to kill everyone present. However, before doing so, she wants to know who first discovered her true identity. Hibiki points toward Kanagi, who is standing right beside Eva. With an evil grin, Eva glares at him and remarks that she never expected him to have the audacity to stand so close to her. Turning to face him, she radiates immense energy and demands to know who the hell is he. But how did all of this happen? Right before Shikami's body was taken over by Eva, Todoroki had told him that he would recommend him as a candidate for the new squad captain. This news excited Shikami greatly, though Todoroki cautioned him that the information was still a secret and would only be officially announced the next morning. Getting even more excited, Shikami joked that despite it being a secret, they were practically yelling it out loud, which would definitely inform others. Todoroki then reassured him, stating that Shikami was one of the strongest individuals there in terms of physical power and would undoubtedly make a great captain. Seeing this level of confidence in him, Shikami agreed, feeling determined to do his best. However, just as he was fist-bumping Todoroki, something slashed him into pieces. In an instant, Shikami was cut down right in front of Todoroki, leaving him utterly shocked and unable to process what had just happened. Suddenly, a deep voice echoed through the air, mocking Shikami's weakness and questioning if this was truly the standard for a squad captain candidate in the anti-prophecy unit. The figure then answered its own question, claiming that the squad had only grown strong thanks to artifacts and the one who had provided them. Stepping forward, the figure introduced herself as Eva, one of the 12 apostles, and declared that she was looking forward to their future. Walking up to Shikami's lifeless body, Eva activated her heavenly demon skill, taking complete control over it. As she is channeling her power, Todoroki, with his mighty punch Vajra, smashes her entire body into a splatter of blood. Tearing up in rage, Todoroki breathes heavily, but to his shock, he suddenly hears applause from behind him. The same Shikami he had just seen die is now clapping, praising Todoroki for managing to kill a 12 apostle with a single hit, just as expected from his master. Stunned, Todoroki turns around to see Shikami standing there, seemingly alive. However, before he can even react, his body is instantly sliced in half by Eva, who had taken on Shikami's form. With a wicked grin, Eva then activates the Necromance Dance artifact, resurrecting Todoroki as a corpse slave bound to her will. Now under Eva's control, Todoroki agrees to serve her, addressing her as Eva, but before he can say anything else, she slaps him so hard it nearly knocks him over. Correcting him, she demands that he call her Shikami, ensuring that no one grows suspicious of her disguise. Todoroki nods, complying, and the two share a dark, twisted laugh. Meanwhile, at the crime scene, Kanagi and Azure investigate. Using his unique skill, Theatrical Detective, Azure rewinds time to witness everything that transpired there. This powerful ability allows him to replay past events at a crime scene, giving him a first-hand view of what truly happened. The only condition is that Azure himself must possess the evidence and personally deduce the culprit, not just by looking at the clues, but by reaching a conclusion on his own. Additionally, this ability allows him to predict future crimes before they happen. However, there is a significant drawback. If Azure ever fails to deduce a case correctly, the skill will be permanently lost. This means that for the rest of his life, he will never be able to use it again. As Azure explains this ability to the founders, they are disgusted by how underhanded Eva's technique is, killing someone and taking control of their body. However, the room falls into shocked silence as everyone turns their gaze toward Kanagi, who is overflowing with mana, his rage uncontainable. With fiery determination, he vows not to forgive the apostle. Back in the present, still burning with fury, Kanagi launches a devastating attack, a flash reflection punch, enhanced by his penetration spell, aimed directly at Eva. He also uses Luminance Fist, and as he strikes Eva's face, a massive energy blast erupts, sending her flying. She tries to land, but the force is so immense that she skids backward, struggling to regain her footing. However, as the dust settles, Kannagi is shocked to hear her laughing out loud, calling him cruel. Despite being struck by multiple techniques, she still talks, mocking him by bringing up his friendship with Shikami, questioning why he attacked her so mercilessly. Kannagi, already expecting this, knows he can't defeat Eva with his current strength. Eva, still reeling from the punch's recoil, claims that it's nothing and mocks him, saying his attacks feel like he's just playing around. As the recoil fades, Eva yells that these kinds of attacks won't do anything against her. Kannagi agrees, but reveals that he was never the one meant to defeat her. All he was doing was buying enough time for the mage founder to take over his body. As the founder takes control, she claims everything, and Kannagi's body becomes engulfed in energy. Seeing this, Eva realizes that Kannagi might be the person the satellites warned about, someone who has become completely different. But instead of feeling fear, she becomes even more excited. With a wicked grin, she summons hundreds of mummies from the sky, their terrifying screams echoing. She declares that life is boring until one faces death, so they should fight with all their heart's content. Azure, watching the mummies descend, remarks that they seem like nothing more than empty shells, controlled by Eva using the bodies she has taken before. Laughing out loud, Eva boasts that all of these mummies possess the same physical strength as Shikami, and challenges them to come at her. Looking around, Hibiki notices that there are roughly 100 bodies, all on the same level as Shikami, which shocks a candidate standing nearby. Kannagi, witnessing this from his consciousness, finds it disgusting that Eva is using the bodies of those she has trampled over. The mage, who is standing beside him, notes that he has changed, and so have the founders. As the mummies shoot toward the ground, the mage, controlling Kannagi's body, declares that Eva has underestimated him. With that, she unleashes multiple electric zaps, electrocuting all the mummies mid-air and shocking Eva. Mage takes it personally as Eva summons her minions and lets them free fall in front of her, forcing Mage to strike them before they land. As the burning mummies rain down from the sky, Eva is left confused, wondering what Kannagi just did. There are people who master unparalleled accuracy through intense training, but Kannagi simply used his skill without batting an eye and managed to hit every single target without missing. The mage instructs Kannagi to stand beside her and study her actions. Our boy finds it amazing that even though she is using a weak body, she can still cast all of her spells efficiently. Calling him closer, Mage explains that while Kannagi was only seeking power for himself, the founders, on the other hand, were eager to use their power through body. Kannagi is confused, unsure of what she is talking about. Mage continues, stating that even after everything, Kannagi, drunk on immense power, still felt closer to his goal, which was simply to become stronger. Meanwhile, all the founders are also drunk on Kannagi's unparalleled talent. However, after experiencing the tragedy of losing a friend, someone who trusted Kannagi with the future, Mage concludes that Kannagi is angry from the bottom of his heart. Pointing at the founders, who are all excited, Mage claims that they all like the current version of Kannagi. Eva, hearing this, is confused. She charges at Kannagi, yelling that the rule of the world is simple: the weak get trampled by the strong. Just as she is about to strike, an electric spark erupts in front of her, stopping her mid-charge. Eva, bewildered, looks around and notices the sky raining down with thunderstrikes. Mage reveals that many people think like Eva, but he remembers witnessing an existence powerful enough to destroy the tower, only to be toyed with and devoured by beasts from another dimension. Mage, who observed her comrades fall, now stands for those who were weak, vowing to avenge them. As she walks toward Eva, Mage, still in control of Kannagi's body, calls Eva frustrated, mocking her for lacking the strength to fight. Eva, on the other hand, can't get back on her feet as she is continuously blasted by the thunder strikes. Mage knows that even though Kannagi trained in the mountains, laughing on the outside, deep inside, he wanted revenge. She ensures that all the founders share the same belief, that Kannagi will one day reach the same peak as them. Extending his hand forward, Mage assures him that if he ever needs help, they will lend it to him, and if he feels sadness, he should point to what caused it, and they will put an end to the prophecy. Without hesitation, Kannagi points at the airborne Eva, and suddenly, she is struck by lightning bolts that tear her body into pieces. Everyone is left in shock, while the instructor realizes that Kannagi resembles Midori when he was a child, a monster in the making. As Eva lies in pieces on the ground, she can't comprehend how this young boy not only destroyed all her minions, but also obliterated her body. Kannagi, walking toward her, asks if she now understands their strength, and states that he has a lot of questions to ask her. He adds that he knows many people skilled in interrogation and wants to talk to Eva about everything that happened. However, in a deep voice, Eva reveals that she can't fight Kannagi in her current form and admits that her boss was right about it. Suddenly, a coffin emerges from the ground, and Eva calls it her trump card. Kannagi is shocked, while Eva explains that hundreds of years ago, one of the founders, known as the 10,000-man army slasher, was responsible for destroying the tower. To Kannagi's horror, Eva unveils the body of Hinoki Raishiru inside the coffin. All the founders, especially Hinoki's spirit, are stunned that she has possession of his corpse. Without a word, Mage casts a thunderbolt spell, striking down the coffin. This shocks Hinoki, but Mage states that this is now the real deal, as Eva has already taken control of Hinoki's body. In front of them, Hinoki's corpse stands, gripping his blade. Eva, thrilled by her newfound power, declares that she can now fight them on equal footing. Kannagi, taken aback by the overwhelming pressure filling the air, realizes that this aura is even stronger than what he felt while training with Ichika. But that's not all. With a snap of her fingers, Eva summons summons hundreds of minions from the ground, calling it the second wave. Kanagi begins to worry, but Mage reassures him that it's nothing. As Eva continues summoning her minions, a sudden explosion erupts behind her. Turning around, she sees Kanagi's friends arriving. Ichika, Suo, and the others, standing ready for battle. He is not alone. Eva feels annoyed, believing Kanagi to be alone in this ordeal. As she observes him speaking, Kanagi realizes that the corpse's voice and speech pattern are identical to Hinoki's. Despite their friends joining the battle, they struggle to defeat the minions, as Eva remarks that these ones are far stronger. This time, the minions possess a physical hardening skill, and even when one of the members unleashes their full power, the attack leaves the minion unscathed. To their horror, each minion possesses a unique skill, making them formidable opponents. With their overwhelming numbers, the anti-prophecy members find it increasingly difficult to fight them head-on. Hibiki, who has been closely observing the battle, activates her sound visualization release skill, summoning a sound phoenix that obliterates a group of minions in an instant. However, despite her powerful attack, she remains wary, realizing that each minion's strength is enhanced by their individual skills. As if things weren't chaotic enough, Todoroki suddenly breaks free from his chains and slam dunks one of the younger members with crushing force. However, Hibiki reacts just in time, rescuing them from certain doom. Amidst all that, Eva is reveling in the chaos, thoroughly enjoying herself. She smugly declares that, in a battle like this, only the squad captains have a chance of survival. Hearing this, Kanagi turns to the other founders for their opinions, but they all remain silent. He then faces Mage and asks her to let him take control of the body for a moment. She is surprised by the request, but ultimately agrees. Taking control, he confidently mocks Eva, accusing her of underestimating his friends, something she should not have done. Meanwhile, Hanada finds himself surrounded by minions, but he recalls Lesson 7 from Kanagi. Channeling his fist technique, he summons a dragon, using it as both a power source and a foundation for his attacks. With explosive force, he kicks the hell out of every minion charging at him. A while ago, founder Spirit Wantak had observed Hanada's muscular yet flexible build, noting his tendency to rely on single-point concentrated strikes paired with his agility. Another founder, Eilerson, had argued that while it was not a bad technique, it could be far more effective with their guidance. Now, in the present, Hanada flawlessly integrates all the techniques they have taught him, moving like a coiling snake, striking from every angle and obliterating the minions with precision. At the same time, Akane stands her ground, ready to face the horde of minions rushing toward her. She remembers Kanagi's advice about the transmute technique, which converts an imperfect substance into perfection. In the past, she could only produce cheap, low-quality weapons. But now, she uses her alchemical prowess to defy limitations, crafting stone golems from the earth itself. This is something she mastered in Lesson 8, and with it she can even destroy the hardened physiques of the minions with ease. Kanagi asks Hinoki about Suo, but Hinoki assures him that Suo is holding his own. While he may not be as brilliant as his brother, he has his own talents. At this moment, he is skillfully wielding Hinoki's one-handed sword style, combined with the Skyfall skill, cutting down a swarm of minions with a single powerful swing. He then enhances the attack by merging it with Calendula, creating a flower-shaped slash that strikes the minions in a wide area of effect attack. Watching this, Ichika feels a sense of pride, impressed by how her student is seamlessly combining techniques and skills. However, in her opinion, Kanagi's feats remain unparalleled due to the complexity of his combinations. As she continues cutting down minions, lost in thought, she suddenly notices a massive fire tornado forming before her. The sight startles her, as this can only mean that the battle between Kanagi and the 12 apostles has already begun. However, as she focuses on the fiery vortex, her shock intensifies when she realizes that Kanagi is fighting none other than the legendary founder, Hinoki. Eva charges at Kanagi, wielding Hinoki's one-handed blade style combined with the wave-cutting blade technique. However, our boy effortlessly sidesteps the attack with the precision of Goku in Ultra Instinct. Despite missing her target, Eva's strike completely obliterates the ground beneath them. Kanagi immediately counters with Mage's Thunderbolt attack, but it barely phases someone as powerful as Eva. She retaliates with her devastating dice slash skill, slicing the entire battlefield into countless cubes, even cutting down her own minions in the process. However, our boy survives, leaping onto one of the floating cubes and recalling that he has endured this very skill with his own body before. Meanwhile, as the battlefield is reduced to shifting cubes, the other members struggle just to stay upright. One member desperately clings to another, who is about to plummet into the abyss, but before they can pull them up, the dice slash severs his arm, sending her tumbling down. As she free falls, still clutching her comrade's severed arm, Kanagi notices them just in time. Without hesitation, he casts a bubble spell, lifting them all to safety. Mage Spirit, growing increasingly worried, turns to Hinoki and asks what they should do next. However, Hinoki simply leaves the decision up to her, telling her to do whatever she wants. She agrees, and just as Eva unleashes Splitting Cloud, a powerful beam blast that engulfs the entire battlefield, even Hibiki, a squad captain, is left stunned by the sheer madness of it. Meanwhile, Eva is thrilled by the capabilities of a founder's body, marveling at how perfectly suited Hinoki's body is for battle. However, despite this, Eva feels the need to use an even stronger skill. Activating Hinoki's secret technique, Indomitable, she prepares to strike. But to her utter shock, Kanagi catches her sword with his bare hand. Hinoki's spirit watches unimpressed, while Mage mockingly claims that even though Eva is using Hinoki's body, he is still weak. Hearing this, Eva shouts in frustration, demanding to know how a founder's legendary body could possibly be considered weak. Desperate for a stronger skill, she frantically searches through Hinoki's memories, trying to extract something more powerful. As she forces his way deeper into Hinoki's mind, her eyes begin to tear up, as if she has just seen something truly terrifying. Eva's tears stem from the overwhelming memory of Hinoki's past, back when he was still alive during the time of the towers. Just witnessing this memory pushes Eva to the brink of madness. In the vision, Hinoki slices through an entire tower with a single swing of his blade. However, despite this awe-inspiring feat, he grows colder and more detached with each passing battle. Eva struggles to comprehend how a mere human's wisdom and skill could reach such an unfathomable level. Hinoki's memories are filled with countless acts of destruction, severing human bodies, cutting down monsters, slicing through the sea itself, and even wounding the planet. The sheer weight of these memories crushes Eva's spirit, leaving her crumbling under the pressure. She desperately wonders where she should go, how she can possibly grow stronger, but the weight of it all is unbearable. Her very soul begins to fracture, feeling as though it's about to shatter into nothingness. Hinoki's spirit, unbothered and relaxed, simply remarks that Eva's spirit should just break apart. However, another founder quickly warns that if it does, it will go berserk, slaughtering everything around it. And to their horror, that is exactly what happens. Eva's spirit shatters. It lets out a piercing scream, so powerful that it is felt even in the distant city of Takasaki. The force of the scream triggers an immediate evacuation, as residents check their phones and discover that the source of the aura is coming from Nagano Prefecture, a staggering 100 kilometers away. Yet despite the distance, the shockwaves still reach them. Panic spreads as people fear that the end of times has arrived, or that a monstrous entity has emerged. Back on the battlefield, as Eva's scream echoes, the very rocks begin to levitate off the ground. The overwhelming aura crushes down on everyone present, weighing heavily on their shoulders. Weaker members begin coughing violently, their bodies pinned to the ground under the sheer force of it. Kanagi, witnessing this, shouts for Hinoki, but the spirit remains unbothered, still relaxing as if nothing is happening. He simply replies that he has left everything to the mage, and Mage agrees. Meanwhile, as Eva steps toward Kanagi, Mage raises her sleeve, revealing the seal of truth on her arm. With unwavering confidence, she declares that if she must use Kanagi's body, she will end this in just one strike. As she unleashes the seal of truth, Kanagi's body begins radiating with immense energy. Witnessing this, Akane is in complete disbelief. The alchemist spirit within Kanagi speaks, telling him that he and Akane must watch carefully. He explains that whether it is magic or alchemy, they are the pursuers of truth, and in this moment, Kanagi will reach one of those truths. As he continues speaking, Kanagi's arms become marked with the same seals that Mage once bore. The alchemist spirit wonders if Kanagi's body can withstand the fragments of truth, or if it will crumble under the weight of such power. Meanwhile, Eva's soul is already shattered into pieces, and the only thing driving her body is the lingering residue of her spirit. Yet the body moves instinctively, as if guided by primal urges, just like a wild animal. Hinoki, who was once mature and composed, abandoned his body to this state long ago, and to describe that phenomenon, they call it truth ignorance. As Eva grows more enraged, she unleashes a surge of dark energy, her aura twisting and distorting the air around her. Mage, witnessing this, foresees a future where the energy becomes so overwhelmingly powerful that it destroys everyone, including Kanagi, and even affects people far across the continent. Eva could very well be the end of the world in that moment. Kanagi, realizing the severity of the situation, recognizes the danger in the vision. Mage then activates one of her skills, Magus of Truth, a technique designed to counter the skills of its target. The technique is so powerful that the world itself can hardly bear its immense force. As Eva loads dark energy into her arm and swings it at Kanagi, he effortlessly stops the attack. To her shock, he grips her hand firmly. In that moment, Mage channels a burning light attack, creating a powerful burst of light between them, engulfing the entire area. As the dust settles, Eva is reduced to nothing more than a charred skeleton, while Kanagi still grips her hand. Mage, using Kanagi's body, calls out a final goodbye to Eva's dying soul, as her ashes are swept away by the wind. The other founders watch this with determination, but Hinoki rises, clearly annoyed by the fact that his soul and body are now completely separate entities. Mage smiles and turns toward Kanagi, asking if what he has just witnessed will help him in his training. As Kanagi takes control of his body again, he is shocked to see that the field is clear, with all of his comrades cheering for him, as if he had won against the monster. Ichika, however, is worried that he didn't use his sword at all, making her teaching seem to have had no impact. Hanada sighs in relief, while Sue praises Kanagi, saying that he burned that powerful enemy with just one attack. However, Akane has a deeper insight. She understands that Kanagi completely analyzed his opponent's skills and rendered them useless. This makes Akane's hands tremble, as she wonders if it's even possible for a human to reach that peak. Despite the uncertainty, she gains confidence. motivating herself that she will do the same. The instructor is now worried about the massive hole in the field, as it was only an examination, but things went south quickly and spectacularly. Even Todoroki is dead, which makes the instructor annoyed, knowing that he now has to conduct another exam like this. As the members are gathering themselves, one notices a strange, bright circle and becomes terrified. The instructor is also shocked, but to everyone's surprise, it's the superintendent. Kanagi, seeing the superintendent, remembers that it's the old lady from his consciousness earlier. The lady's assistant, who is with the superintendent, is also a bit confused about why she's there. However, superintendent suddenly kneels in front of Kanagi, claiming that she has been waiting for his return. She says that she has waited hundreds of years for the founders, and now they are finally in front of her. Suo and the others turn to Ichika for answers, but she simply states that they should have known, though this might be their first time seeing her. According to Ichika, the old lady is one of the founders of the anti-prophecy and holds the highest rank in the Japanese branch. Suo, frustrated, exclaims that they already know that, but what's truly confusing is why she is kneeling before Kanagi. Ichika admits she doesn't know either. Meanwhile, Kanagi is just as bewildered, wondering why the old woman from earlier is bowing before him like that. The founders within him are also deep in thought, trying to recall what's really going on, but they can't seem to find the answer. Suddenly, Kanagi is struck with shock as he senses her overwhelming aura. The old lady stands up and asks if Kanagi remembers her, remarking that she has grown old. To make things clear, she turns around and starts shaking her back, calling out to Hinoki to witness her performing the waist dance. All the founders are confused, but suddenly they realize that the old woman is Io. Hinoki quickly asks Kanagi to switch with him, and as he does, he greets her. This shocks everyone around, and the assistants immediately take an offensive stance, seeing it as disrespectful behavior toward their superintendent. Enraged, they declare their intent to kill Kanagi and redo the examination. However, Io, still dancing with Hinoki, tells them to stand down, assuring them that it's fine. Hinoki playfully rubs Io's head, joking that she has already become a granny. Hearing him speak, Io suddenly remembers that he used to talk the same way in the past when she was with them. After a while, all the members begin repairing the training grounds and gathering themselves. Meanwhile, deep within the anti-prophecy, at a top-secret location known as the Hut of Everlasting Vision, Kanagi is stunned by the sight of its garden. Io explains that, since she cannot reveal her appearance often, a barrier is normally set around the place, so she can live there undisturbed. Kanagi asks if she knows all the founders, to which Io begins to explain her story. She reveals that she was an orphan, having lost her family during the era of the towers. The founders saved her and raised her. Kanagi is shocked to realize that she was just a child during that time. When Io mentions that it was 300 years ago, he is even more stunned, realizing that she is over 300 years old. She then reveals that she has been able to stop time using an artifact that freezes time as long as she remains inside the headquarters. Hearing about the artifact, Kanagi suddenly remembers them. Meanwhile, Hinoki's spirit explains to Valentine that the artifact functions similarly to her preservation skill. Valentine agrees, stating that in her prime she could have achieved the same feat with her skill. However, she wonders where Io obtained such a powerful artifact. Io explains that within the anti-prophecy, there is a secret division tasked with collecting artifacts, and their existence is kept hidden. However, she reveals that the facility storing these artifacts was recently attacked, resulting in the loss of a large number of them. In response, a special task force, including Midori, was formed to reclaim the stolen artifacts. The detective founder within Kanagi wonders if the attack was carried out by the 10 apostles, which would explain why they are so powerful in the modern era. Kanagi is shocked at how quickly the detective deduced that from such a brief conversation. The detective then reveals that when Io mentioned her boss as the one who provided her artifacts, he looked into her memory and confirmed it. Another founder explains that instead of recruiting 12 awakeners stronger than Makoto, it would be much easier for the enemy to use artifacts to enhance mediocre awakeners. Hinoki agrees, noting that the two enemies they previously encountered were not as strong as Makoto. Io also agrees, stating that they were unaware of the 12 apostles' existence until they raided the facility. She explains that the apostles now possess the same power as the anti-prophecy's greatest enemy, making them too dangerous to ignore. She adds that they are doing their best to track down their leader, but it seems that Midori will reach them first. This shocks Kanagi. Meanwhile, in Detroit, Michigan, the streets are eerily empty. In an area that looks like a battleground, a turbulent spell suddenly creates a tornado, slamming into the ground with immense force. At the center of it all is Midori, who has just made a shocking discovery. They had assumed the 12 apostles consisted of 12 individuals, but there is also a 13th member. Watching him through an orb, a man lounging on his couch smirks, impressed that Midori has arrived earlier than expected. With a sinister tone, he casually asks whether Midori prefers a cup of coffee or black tea. Without hesitation, Midori chooses him to die, calling him by his true title, Number Zero. Midori launches another turbulence beam toward the floating Number Zero. The beam is so massive that, far away, another member of the task force, Nishina, notices it. Mikado, who is also with him, remarks that the city is already abandoned, so they should be fine, but he is puzzled as to why Midori is using such a powerful attack. As they discuss, they suddenly sense a strong attack coming their way. Just in time, they leap off the building, which is instantly sliced in half. The structure completely shatters into pieces. Landing on the ground, they decide to leave number 0 to Midori, while they focus on handling Kamaragi, one of the 12 apostles. Meanwhile, Midori grows frustrated, unable to pierce the bubble surrounding number 0, even after using his strongest wind attacks. He wonders if it's the effect of a skill or perhaps an artifact. Finishing his tea, number 0 steps out of the bubble himself, mocking Midori and asking if he's done. Without hesitation, Midori instantly casts Wall of Cutting Pearls, launching massive rocks toward number 0, triggering an explosion. However, to his shock, number 0 emerges unscathed, casually comparing himself to a whale among fish in front of Midori. Midori quickly realizes that number 0 has other means of defense, even without the protective bubble. Seeing Midori standing before him, number 0 begins to taunt him. He claims that under normal circumstances, Midori would be so powerful and terrifying that he wouldn't even consider him an enemy. Yet now, Midori is grieving the death of his friend. To number 0, this makes him a pathetic creature. He goes on to say that from the moment Midori was born, he was nothing more than a monster designed for battle. And yet, despite being made for war, he still failed to protect his precious friends. These words ignite a deep fury within Midori. Enraged, he lunges at number 0 with overwhelming power, his eyes burning with killing intent as memories of the past flood his mind, memories of what happened 23 years ago. At that time, deep in the mountains, Shinonome, a special task force member, stood in shock, staring at a brilliant surge of energy erupting from a massive crater. Yelling in disbelief, he realized that this was all that remained of the Midori family mansion. Superintendent Io is also there, witnessing the remains of the destroyed mansion. At the center of the devastation, something emits a tremendous amount of energy. As she steps closer, she realizes the source. It's a baby, radiating an overwhelming aura. The intensity of the energy makes them believe that the entire disaster was caused by this child's birth. Without hesitation, Superintendent Io rushes toward the baby, enduring multiple cuts on her body due to the sheer energy pressure surrounding it. Despite the pain, she pushes forward, finally reaching the child. She gently picks up the baby, whispering words of comfort, assuring it that everything is fine now. Feeling the warmth of Io's embrace, the baby slowly stops crying. As a result, the violent surge of wind around them dissipates, revealing Io, bruised and bloodied, yet firmly holding the child in her arms. She declares that this child will be raised by the anti-prophecy. Later, the baby is given a name, Midori. 9 years pass, and Midori, now a young boy, is preparing to leave the facility. A teacher named Hinoki Hiyaradu, along with a 12-year-old Ichika, tries to stop him, warning him not to cause any trouble. The man warns Midori that if he goes through with this, the anti-prophecy will hunt him down. Unfazed, Midori agrees. But as the master turns away, he cryptically states that this was the very reason he let Midori live. Ichika, standing nearby, feels the tension in the air but suddenly starts laughing. The master, annoyed, questions why she's doing that. Midori has always been exceptionally strong, breaking every record and considering everyone else weak in comparison. However, one day he meets Makoto, who casually tosses a wooden stick toward him and asks if he wants to be his partner for sword training. Midori is confused, but Makoto simply smiles and holds his sword forward in invitation. At that time, Makoto was the same age as Midori. With that, they begin training together, but Midori was unable to defeat Makoto in sword fighting. It annoyed him, but he kept trying, constantly asking Makoto to spar with him one more time. Makoto, wanting Midori to learn his lesson, fights him again, and the result is the same. Midori loses. Frustrated, he yells, demanding to know why he can't win despite trying his hardest. Nishina, who is also present, reveals that Midori is too strong, which might be the reason. Midori doesn't understand what he means, as he is always losing to Makoto. A voice from outside chimes in, saying that it's a compliment for Midori. The voice belongs to Makoto, who at the time was 14 years old. Midori keeps breaking his wooden swords while fighting Makoto, so Makoto explains that even if Midori wins, he will still break his sword in the process. To illustrate the point, Nishina shows him an egg, explaining that when someone exerts their full power, it's difficult not to break the eggshell while holding it during a fight. Midori remains confused, so Makoto picks up the egg and throws it with full force. However, he gets shocked to see that despite hitting the ground, the eggshell doesn't even crack. Picking up the egg, Makoto explains that Midori just needs to balance his offensive aura with the aura that protects the shell, and it's not a skill, but something that comes with time. While he is explaining, Nishina throws all the eggs at the wall, and even after hitting it, none of them break. Midori is amazed, seeing that not a single eggshell shatters. Makoto hands an egg to Midori and explains that if he wants to win against Makoto in swordsmanship, he needs to adjust his aura. Once he does that, even with his overwhelming aura, he won't hurt anyone around him. As Makoto starts to leave, Makoto calls him out but is hit by an egg on the head. Makoto turns and sees it was Midori, who wants him to join him in the adjustment. Makoto, returning the favor, asks him to apologize to him first. He then kicks the egg crate and uses his power to make them levitate. However, when Midori tries the same, all the eggs explode or shatter around him. However, after trying for a while, Midori manages to create a hole in the wall fall with the egg, and it doesn't even break the eggshell. They both then start training in swordsmanship, and now that Midori knows how to control his aura, they can spend a whole day sending blows at each other. Seeing this, Nishina and Makoto are also excited and ask him to fight them next. 4 years later, Midori is taken into the special task force, and Makoto leaves for his own ventures. Midori is heading towards a prophecy to support the European branch, as he heard there is a special rank prophecy called the Pandemonium. Midori then asks if Makoto is still looking for a swordmaster to teach him. Makoto confirms it, reminding Midori of his own words about finding a master by himself. Makoto puts his fist forward, claiming that he wants to stand equally with him. Midori, with a smile, fist bumps him, revealing that he will be waiting for him. After that, Midori does everything for his friends. As long as they are alive, Midori has the determination to keep doing what he's doing for their sake. He just wanted friends, but the 12 apostles took that away from him. Coming back to the present, remembering all that, Midori charges toward number 0 with full-on killing intent while the guy stands there nonchalantly. However, just as he's about to strike, number 0 pulls out a golden egg artifact and breaks it in front of him. It unleashes a berserk life stampede spell, creating a massive sunlight glow between them. Other special task force members also notice it and wonder if Midori did it. As the glow lightens a bit, they see Midori emerge from it, radiating a strange yet powerful aura. Seeing Midori, Mikado asks if he has already defeated number 0. However, Midori doesn't say a word. They call out to him, but to their shock, Midori reveals that he doesn't know them. Nishina instantly realizes something worse has happened and yells at Mikado to back off. But it's already too late, as Midori has his hand on Mikado's forehead. With an evil smile, he uses the turbulence spell, creating a strong whirlwind. After the 3 members of the Special Force Japanese branch go missing, another special task force from the USA branch, including Marquise and Ashton, is sent to investigate the matter. Upon arriving, Ashton touches the ground and realizes that the residual energy in the area is extremely strong, indicating that it was the epicenter of an explosion. Marquise is amazed by the size of the crater Midori created, and understands why he is called the world's strongest man. However, he is confused about why someone as powerful as Midori suddenly disappeared along with his team. Ashton also has no explanation for their disappearance. The news of Midori's disappearance reaches the Japanese branch, causing the situation to descend into chaos. At the Everlasting Vision Hut, the assistant superintendent grows nervous upon hearing the reports and struggles to believe the news. Io, equally worried, asks if there is truly no information about Midori's whereabouts. She questions Midori's assistant, Rin, but even Rin is unaware, as the artifact that connected her to Midori has been destroyed. Io finds the situation deeply unfortunate. As they discuss the matter, Kanagi arrives, now officially a squad captain, wearing the captain's cape. He feels slightly embarrassed about his new role, but the assistant superintendent reveals that his promotion came from the unanimous recommendation of all the other squad captains and the superintendent himself. Kanagi had even fought Eva, leading everyone to believe he is the only one capable of filling the gap left by Makoto. Kneeling down, Kanagi recalls his vow to surpass the founders as soon as possible and to prevent any further deaths. He thanks them for their trust, and with the founders' legacy behind him, confidently declares that he will do his best to meet the expectations of the anti-prophecy. Hearing this, Io becomes excited, claiming that she always believed he was the best-suited candidate for the captaincy. However, she suddenly grows serious and gets straight to the point, asking for his opinion on a pressing matter. A while back, Kanagi, who had been pursuing members of the anti-prophecy to offer them positions in his squad, now finds himself sitting in front of the superintendent, being asked for his opinion. The situation feels like it has escalated quickly. As the Io, adorned with a tiger drawing, the sudden appearance shocks Kanagi, and as the door opens, Io introduces 2 members of the special task force, Nishina and Makoto, both in a severely beaten-up state. Io reveals that Nishina and Makoto were part of the same special task force as Midori, and are the only ones who know what truly happened. Makoto begins to explain that while in Detroit, Midori's body was taken over by the leader of the 12 apostles. This revelation leaves Kanagi utterly stunned. Makoto continues, stating that the ability used to control Midori seems similar to the one Eva had previously employed. He speculates that it is likely caused by an artifact, though the specifics of the artifact are not important at the moment. The critical point, Makoto emphasizes, is that Midori, once a protector of his friends, has now been turned into an enemy of humanity. This horrifying reality shakes Kanagi to his core. Makoto adds that Midori resisted the control as much as he could, buying time for Nishina and Makoto to escape. Before fully succumbing, Midori apologized and made a final request. He asked Kanagi to defeat number 0 on his behalf. Hearing this, Kanagi is left speechless, overwhelmed by the weight of Midori's words. The assistant superintendent places a hand on Kanagi's shoulder, expressing his high hopes for him. However, he reminds Kanagi that he still hasn't met the minimum requirement of 7 members for his squad. Currently, Kanagi has Honda, Akane, and Suo, but he needs to quickly recruit 3 more members. This, the assistant superintendent states, is Kanagi's immediate task. Hearing the urgent need to recruit more members for his squad, Kanagi rushes out to find suitable candidates. He spots a young boy from the Hibiki squad and immediately begins chasing him, pleading for him to join his team. The boy, however, is visibly nervous and runs around in a panic, shouting that he will never leave the Hibiki squad under any circumstances. Just as the boy thinks he's escaped, he comes face to face with Akane, who is standing calmly in his path, holding a permission letter signed by Hibiki himself. The boy is stunned, unable to believe that his captain, Hibiki, would allow him to leave. However, after reading the letter, his disbelief turns to shock as he realizes it's genuine. Reluctantly, he agrees to join Kanagi's squad. With this, Kanagi and Akane successfully secure their fourth member. Meanwhile, outside, Hanoda is attempting to recruit Akihina for the squad. His approach, however, is anything but conventional. He performs a strange, exaggerated leg-stomping gesture as an invitation, which Akihina finds utterly bizarre. Hanoda insists it's an order from the captain and declares that he wants Akihina on their team. Akihina, however, refuses outright, explaining that his goal is to participate in the next captain's exam, as a position has opened up following Todoroki's death. Undeterred by the rejection, Hanada suddenly launches a powerful kick toward Akihina, testing his reflexes. To Hanada's surprise, Akihina effortlessly dodges the attack, showcasing his unique evasion skills. Impressed but not defeated, Hanada presses on. Akihina, now intrigued, proposes a challenge. He agrees to join the squad on one condition. Hanada must land a single touch on him within 60 seconds in the courtyard. If Hanada succeeds, Akihina will gladly join their team. Hanoda confirms if he can use any means necessary to achieve this, and upon receiving Akihina's approval, he summons the glowing dragon around himself, determined to win the challenge. Akihina starts the timer on his laptop. Somewhere inside the limestone cave of the anti-prophecy unit, Akihina meets Captain Tsurukai, who appears to be fishing in a 17th dimensional crack called the Underjaw. Tsurukai reveals that sometimes he catches big fish there. Noticing Akihina, he asks if he is applying for the replacement exam for the Todoroki squad. Akihina confirms it, but states that he wants to be a captain who doesn't want to die. Tsurukai responds by telling him that his goal is still achievable without even becoming a captain. This shocks Akihina, who asks if the captain thinks he's not suitable. Tsurukai, reeling in a monster shark, claims that he believes Akihina is lacking something. Coming back to the present, Hanoda is charging at Akihina, who is trying to avoid any physical contact. Despite getting inches close to him, Hanoda isn't able to touch Akihina even once. Hanoda is amazed, realizing that Akihina is using some kind of evasive skill to dodge his attacks. Akihina is using Omni-Egos, a skill he has tried to hide from everyone for a long time. His Omni-Egos allows him to teleport to a designated location within a 100-meter range. Although he needs to visit the target location at least once before the skill can be used, once it's set, he can teleport there with fast and high precision. Despite Hanada sending blow after blow, Akihina manages to dodge every single one using his skill. This proves challenging for Hanada, but he takes it as practice, knowing that in the future, he'll have to fight against Midori. While teleporting around and evading blows, Akihina asks Hanoda what kind of redeeming quality he sees in Kanagi. Hanoda, continuing his attacks, reveals that he doesn't know anything specific. He flies into a kick toward Akihina and admits that he knows about Akihina's ideal squad captain image to increase his squad's survivability by 1%. Hanoda finds this admirable, but claims that he wouldn't put his life in the hands of a captain who prioritizes the chance of survival over everything else. This comment annoys Akihina, but Hanoda explains that if someone always thinks about themselves, they won't be able to achieve the goals they're meant to. As he says this, Hanoda recalls his childhood when he saw his family's bodies lying around, killed by a prophecy. This event instilled in him the determination to shut down all prophecies. With that motive, he finally understood that Kanagi has the capability to do just that, which is why he decided to become his subordinate. Hearing this, Akihina realizes what he's lacking to be a captain: the ability to be relied on by others. As he focuses back on dodging, he knows he's winning the fight and hopes to use this conversation as a reference in the future. With the countdown at 5 seconds, Hanoda starts messaging someone on his phone, claiming that someone is just on time. Akihina is confused when suddenly Suo, using his calendula spell combined with Skyfall, strikes from above, destroying the entire courtyard where they were standing. This completely removes Akihina's ability to teleport, and Hanoda seizes the opportunity. He leaps off the building and uses a flash kick to tear off a piece of Akihina's clothing. The clock hits 0, but tearing off the cloth counts as a touch, making Haneda the victor. He lands down while Suo asks if destroying the entire courtyard was worth it. Hanoda brushes it off, praising Suo for his help. Meanwhile, in the background, Akihina is furious, but after typing something on his laptop, he calms down and agrees to join Kanagi's squad. Hearing this, Hanoda and Suo high-five, while Kanagi and Akane bring in another member, Iryu, who is chained up. Kanagi, noticing the destroyed courtyard, is in shock, but Suo reveals that he's counting on Kanagi to write an apology letter for the damage. Hanoda tries to calm everyone down, suggesting that Rin could fix the courtyard, but the main problem is that they still need one more person for their team. Akane doesn't know anyone else and asks if Kanagi has any recommendations. Kanagi points toward the special task force members, Ichika, Mikado, and Nishina, and reveals that he has already accepted them into his squad. From that day on, they are temporarily Kanagi's subordinates and will fight in his squad. Somewhere else, at the Watchtower, the remaining members of the 12 Apostles of the Apocalypse hold a meeting. Only 5 of them are left, but they are confident because they have the world's most powerful weapon, Midori's body. To them, it seems like they are one step closer to wiping out the anti-prophecy unit. Number 0 reminds everyone of their motto: everything they do is for the sake of the emergence of prophecy in this world. Inside the prophecy research room of the anti-prophecy, the assistant superintendent asks the director if he has obtained what was requested. The director confirms and reveals that the Book of Doom, once possessed by the 12 apostles, is actually a single book torn apart. Based on the 8 books that Midori brought, they determine that the recent incident is part of the prophecy, specifically one concerning a special rank called Bhagavad Gita. According to him, in order to destroy the world, the 12 apostles need Midori's power, which alone is sufficient. Meanwhile, over the sea, Midori and Hajime, a member of the 12 apostles, are flying toward an unknown destination. Out of nowhere, Midori asks Hajime if he has ever read the Gita, to which Hajime denies. Midori explains that it is one of the Hindu scriptures, emphasizing that humans should fulfill their duties with a selfless heart. According to Midori, whoever wrote a prophecy like the one currently unfolding likely harbored a deep hatred for humanity. As they fly over New York's Times Square, a family notices them, and a child excitedly recognizes Midori as the world's strongest awakener. The crowd quickly follows suit, cheering and clamoring for pictures. They also notice Hajime referring to him as a samurai. As the gathering swells with excitement at the sight of their heroes, Midori gives Hajime the order to begin their mission. Without hesitation, Midori starts channeling an energy ball in his hand, while the crowd continues to cheer, unaware of what is about to unfold. As a father captures a picture of his child with Midori in the background, Midori suddenly unleashes the energy ball into the air, engulfing the sky completely. The ball transforms into a massive tornado, and from within it, the real Midori desperately yells at Number Zero to stop. However, it is already too late. Number Zero has already cast the spell Turbulence upon them. At the cafeteria of Anti-Prophecy, Kanagi is busy lecturing when Suo rushes toward him, urgently showing him something on his mobile. It is breaking news. New York is burning like hell due to Midori's attack. The report claims that an awakener has attacked and destroyed the city. Meanwhile, at the Everlasting Hut, the American branch superintendent, Vice, is screaming at Io to do something, furious that Midori has just erased an entire city. Io tries to calm him down, but the tragedy has taken countless lives in the heart of the world's economy, New York. She reveals that it is not Midori who caused the destruction, but rather the leader of the 12 apostles, who is controlling his body. She further explains that they have already identified him as Warren Hastings, an Englishman. Io theorizes that he might be collaborating with invaders from another dimension. Vice is shocked by this revelation, while Io discloses that the 12 apostles are using artifacts beyond the supervision of anti-prophecy. According to her, someone or something is backing them. Despite her reasoning, Vice counters that the responsibility still lies with Io, since the man who leveled an entire city came from their special task force. He warns her that the White House is even considering using nuclear weapons against Midori. However, Vice knows that even nuclear weapons will have no effect on Midori and asks Io what she plans to do. Back at the cafeteria, Kanagi asks Suo if he has completed Lesson 15 along with the others. Suo confirms, and to his shock, Kanagi appoints him as the vice captain of the Kanagi squad. He then orders Suo to instruct everyone to continue their lessons until deployment orders are given. He notes that Irian and Akihina always argue, so they must focus on teamwork to achieve perfection. Suo wonders what Kanagi himself will be doing with his free time, to which Kanagi reveals that he will be sleeping, and this time, it will be a deep sleep. He commands Suo not to allow anyone to wake him, and since it is Kanagi's command, Suo accepts the order, placing his trust in him. Back at the Everlasting Hut, Io reveals she is planning to face Midori head-on with their strongest elite unit. Over at headquarters, Kanagi reaches his room and instantly falls asleep. In his dreams, he takes out his sword and starts practicing with Hinoki, while the other founders stand ready to teach him. However, to Kanagi's shock, Hinoki slashes him into pieces in a single flash. He regenerates immediately, only for Hinoki to cut him apart once more. Hinoki reminds Kanagi that he was the one who insisted on not holding back in training, so now he will devour him. Saying this, he charges at Kanagi with his full force. Another founder attempts to intervene, but Wantak and Mage stop him. Other founders argue that while short-term training might demand such extreme measures, Kanagi is dying too frequently, and his soul could soon be dispersed. Still, they all understand that Midori is the strongest awakener of this era, and the current Kanagi has no chance against him. It might be a desperate training method, but it is their only path to victory. The founder from before warns that there may be a limit to how much Kanagi can endure, but the alchemist reassures her, saying there is no need to worry. Kanagi is not a delicate man. Mage, witnessing Kanagi being sliced apart again and again, still believes that he will overcome this. Kanagi apologizes to Hinoki, feeling an immense pressure just by standing in front of him. It feels as if he's been thrown into a blizzard atop a frozen mountain. Regaining his breath, Kanagi stands against Hinoki once more, only to be slashed in half instantly. To his surprise, however, he manages to cut a single strand of hair from Hinoki's head. Before, he couldn't even reach a single hair, but now he has succeeded. Despite being killed countless times, Kanagi remains determined to grow stronger. He rises again and again. Meanwhile, in Mumbai, at the gateway of India, Aradib of Anti-Prophecy's Indian branch becomes excited upon seeing Midori. He reminds Midori that without him, the special rank prophecy boss would have turned Mumbai into charcoal. With a smile smile, he asks if, after they once protected the city together, Midori is now here to destroy it. Midori dismisses his words as futile, explaining that while it is his body, it's being controlled by Number Zero. Mocking Aradib, Number Zero scoffs at the idea that Midori could regain control. To toy with him further, he projects Midori's entrapped thoughts directly from his mind. Midori's voice, apologizing and urging Aradib to run. However, Aradib refuses to flee. This is his hometown, and he is prepared to fight until his last breath. At the Everlasting Hut, Io explains the century-old war between humankind and beings from another dimension to the superintendent's assistants. During the Founders' era, the tower appeared first, followed by the Crack and the Prophecies. Throughout the long history of war, there have always been humans who collaborated with these beings to destroy the world. As she explains, one of the assistants, watching the news of India's fall, grows alarmed, realizing the enemy now seems to be heading toward Europe. Io expected this, but remarks it would have been preferable if they had gone straight to Japan. When the assistant asks why, she reveals that since Number Zero only recently took control of Midori's body, he shouldn't be able to fully harness its power yet. Io then turns to Tengen, her assistant, and informs him that he will also be deployed to the battlefield. Tengen responds with a joke about how they only use him for manual labor during peacetime. However, the real shock comes when Io announces that she will personally join the fight as well. Meanwhile, the Kanagi squad is in the final stages of preparation. They are the only true hope of defeating Midori, but until they are fully ready, Io orders the other squads to stall him. Hibiki and the other squad captains, visibly tense, ask how long the preparation will take. Io reveals that, according to Kanagi, he needs 2 days. She then announces their destination, the Pacific Ocean, where they will attempt to stop Midori. There, the entire Japanese branch of Anti-Prophecy gathers, preparing for battle. As Midori charges toward them, he casts his powerful turbulence spell directly at the group. However, it is stopped dead in its tracks by Io's own defensive spell. Midori, visibly surprised, narrows his eyes while Io smirks and mocks him not to underestimate them. A while back, as the captains were heading to the ocean, Hisagi and her squad members ran to their captain, pleading to be taken along to face the leader of the 12 apostles. The captain refuses, but Hisagi, tearing up, insists that even if they can't make a significant impact, they can at least serve as shields to protect the captains. The captain, along with the others, turns to face them and asks if they understand why the captains have chosen such an unreasonable battle. He explains that even though they know they won't return, as the power levels are vastly different, they still hold on to the hope that their subordinates will survive and carry on. The captains place their trust in their subordinates, believing they will take on the responsibility of protecting the world. Saying this, the captains leave their subordinates behind. While some break into tears, others steel their resolve, determined to protect the Kanagi squad until their preparation is complete. Even though their eyes are filled with sorrow, they know they must act instead of merely crying, and they must act quickly. The squad captains, along with the superintendents and assistants, teleport to the ocean, where they now stand face to face with Midori. As Io effortlessly blocks Midori's spell, the other captains watch in amazement at her immense power. Midori too is taken aback by this unknown ability. Number Zero, reading through Midori's memories, recognizes Io as the superintendent of Anti-Prophecy, a mother figure to Midori who has always kept her true strength hidden. Io, standing before him, declares that this is the first time in 100 years she has used her abilities on the battlefield. None of the captains have ever seen her unleash her full power before, but now, before their very eyes, she activates her 8-Ida mirror spell. This spell has 2 stages. The first allows Io to completely nullify any ability as long as she understands its effects, granting her a 100% defense rate. The nature of this ability is a direct countermeasure, combining perfectly with a mage's advanced analytical skills. Wasting no time, Midori follows up with his blazing turbulent spell, unleashing a barrage of powerful tornadoes toward Io. Seeing them, the captains realize this is the same skill that burned all of India to the ground. Fortunately, Io knows this ability and effortlessly deflects it. The second stage of her skill allows her to copy an ability once she has reflected it. As she sends her own tornadoes, they collide with Midori's and completely destroy them. Midori, now focusing on the battle, understands how her skill works, but grows annoyed as he senses someone trying to attack him from the side. One of the captains launches his infinite fist attack, bombarding Midori with a barrage of punches. Each time a punch lands, Midori feels his body growing numb. However, despite delivering countless blows, the captain is shocked to see Midori remains unfazed. Suddenly, the captain grabs Midori in midair and signals the others to attack while he restrains him. Hibiki instantly activates her sound visualization release, Phoenix, while the other captains follow up with their own powerful abilities, striking Midori all at once. However, Midori counters them with his Wall of Cutting Pearl spell, generating a massive blast of tornadoes that crashes into all the captains. As the smoke clears, Midori emerges unscathed, mocking Io for bringing weaklings to fight him. But just as he speaks, he senses a powerful aura above him. Looking up, he sees the superintendent's assistant summoning a massive, sun-sized energy ball, preparing to unleash it upon him. Midori immediately realizes this ability grows stronger the longer it is channeled. As he attempts to summon his own energy ball to counter counter it, the female assistant uses her slave maker spell, shackling his hand. Midori is stunned. He hadn't expected them to have an warp awakener. Now trapped in the shackles, he is unable to cast his spells. Meanwhile, the male assistant finishes channeling and hurls the massive fiery sphere toward the immobilized Midori. Seeing the attack closing in, Midori realizes he can't dodge it. However, if he unleashes his most powerful wind-based attack at the last moment, he might be able to lessen its impact. But just as he processes this plan, he notices another identical fireball coming from the opposite side, created by Io using her mirror spell. The lady raises her arms toward Leonis' vault, saying that for the sake of everyone's future, he must die. He is trapped in an energy chain and curses the old woman. Someone is watching from afar with the help of binoculars. Two flaming spheres collide and cause a sinister explosion. Like a huge atomic bomb, the mushroom cloud rises into the sky, and that explosion takes over the entire landscape. The soldier using the binoculars gets worried about the situation. He lowers his tool. An aircraft carrier and several military ships are approaching the target rapidly. In disbelief, one of the soldiers handling transport asks them to look at the situation. The white light must be at least a few thousand degrees, and he doubts anyone could survive that, whether they are an enemy or an ally. Pointing at the screen, he says he believes that should be enough to handle the situation. A very stern man with crossed arms observes the situation, and they call him Mr. Richard. With a grim face, he says that this isn't over yet. The light energy that formed in the sea begins to glow with a violet star at its core, and looking closely, a silhouette of a man can be seen in the middle of it. The long-haired blonde man is shocked to see that. No one can believe that someone was able to survive the gigantic explosion that just occurred. Leonis Vault puts his hand on his head and asks if they sacrifice their own people to try to kill him with that explosion. He knows he owes them praise for catching him by surprise with all their efforts, and for making such an elaborate plan to manage a successful explosive blow against him, but he bets they didn't imagine what was coming next. He grits his teeth, trying to contain all the emotion in his chest. Then he starts yelling, telling them to look at him, because he is completely unharmed. The boy opens his arms and says he was just hit by a 1,000-degree fireball, and there isn't even a scratch on him. While the blonde guy boasts about surviving the situation, a crosshair begins to lock onto him, and at that exact moment, a troop of several planes starts hitting him with multiple direct shots to his body. Missiles are also launched from the aircraft carriers and planes toward him. Some pilots are injured in this operation, and they begin to notice the loss of troops. The sea rocks with all that explosive war happening, more so than in a storm. With the force of a massive wave, the aircraft carrier shakes in the sea, and the planes start getting hit too. The boy is in a state of euphoria and starts to laugh while various explosions and deaths happen behind him. Another, larger ship begins to approach the battle site. Mr. Richard yells for Marcus to act according to the plan. A golden aura ascends through his body. The ship they are on then gains a protective shield, but it doesn't last long, and soon it starts to take damage and crack. Marcus is dumbfounded by such power. He says he can barely hold on even from this distance. He knows that with power of this magnitude, this guy would be capable of destroying the entire world if he wanted to. Mr. Richard clenches his fist, getting very nervous, and says no. He insists that this isn't over yet, and they cannot give up under any circumstances. Leonis starts to feel an uncomfortable dizziness, and puts his hand on his face. In his thoughts, he begins to hear voices saying they knew he would use too much energy at once. Now he is in the company of a white-haired lady, who asks if he finally ran out of energy. She holds an empty vial and calls the boy number 0. In another location, we see a small house with a thatched roof and a few people gathering. Setsuna asks if they have no chance against the guy, but a blonde man with glasses tells her not to ruin their morale. She asks if she always needs to sugarcoat things for him. The boy gets annoyed, but the lady warns that they probably won't be able to defeat him anyway. The white-haired woman asks how the commissioner lady intends to stop him. She says that even without winning the battle, they can still achieve their goals. And to do that, they will need to use an artifact they possess. She picks up a vial with a liquid. This artifact is the sandglass cage, and it is now imprisoning Leonis Vault. He observes the bars of that prison and feels that it looks very familiar. The commissioner lady bets that he recognizes that cage, as it's just like the artifact he gave to his henchman. Leonis's memories come rushing back. He really has seen that cage before. It was used by the man who ended up losing his arm in that situation. He didn't imagine there was more than one of that artifact, but he maintains his posture and asks, so what? If he wants to get rid of that cage, he will need to use a massive amount of aura, but since he practically drained all his power, that will be impossible. With a dark look, Leonis stares at the old woman, and you can feel the hatred in his eyes. He lets out a small smile and asks if they are just finding a way to buy time, but this confuses him, because he says that trapping him for a moment won't change anything. The lady is confident and says he wouldn't say that if he knew what was on her mind. He has no idea what is coming. We can see 2 swordsmen training, and the lady continues, saying that if he just waits a few days, he will certainly witness something very interesting. Placing a hand on his chin, Leonis asks if she really thinks he doesn't know what they are planning. The blonde man asks if it's something related to a boy named Minato Kanagi. Io's expression changes instantly. She is shocked to hear that question. Pointing to his head, Leonis says he had enough time to fish out some memories from her brain. He asks if the lady knows what Midori Ichihara thinks about him, and reveals that he thinks the boy is the one who will end all prophecies. Io's eyes go wide, and she thinks that Midori said that about Minato, feeling extremely impressed. Leonis says that the moment he took control of his body, Minato became the top of his target list. He clenches his fist and repeats with hatred the phrase he just said, about the boy being the end of all prophecies. With an outraged expression, he questions if they should allow this, and that Minato must be stopped at all costs. Io now has a very unfriendly unfriendly face and curses the blonde man in her thoughts. But he says he still has something else to say, and she is surprised again. Accumulating a violet energy inside the cage, Leone says that she is the one who doesn't know the half of it. Even now, as they talk, Midori Ichihara continues to get stronger. The woman is now in a panic, not knowing what to do. The amount of aura he has used so far is nothing compared to the total power in his body. All they have done so far is melt the very tip of the iceberg. The more Leonis fights, the stronger Midori's body gets, and the more aura he can command at once. A yellow energy begins to come out of the lady's body, the Yada mirror. She feels the force of a blow hitting her straight on without her being able to dodge. Leonis's hand goes through her body, causing a huge wound. The cage in the background explodes into 1,000 pieces. Io had no chance to defend herself, and the blow was a direct hit to a vital point. And now that he has dealt with his opponent, Leonis wonders which way Japan is. While that battle was happening, our protagonist is sleeping, and the symbol on his hand begins to glow very brightly. The Japanese CPU did everything it could to try and imprison Midori, but their plan ended up failing miserably. Number 0 ended up learning how to release massive amounts of aura using Midori's body. A vortex of violet energy begins to form, and can be seen even from Earth's orbit. Leonis's power has grown significantly stronger. Meanwhile, in Japan, Shinji and Ichika are training, and he says he could feel a gigantic wave of dark aura approaching. Scratching her head, the girl with long black hair thinks the plan has failed. Midori is training, and they decide to return to the headquarters. Kurosagi is also in the middle of a fight, but can sense the different energy. Everyone at the academy becomes apprehensive and worried about what is happening. Ichika says they need to prepare to face the enemy. Shinji already readies himself to grab his sword. Meanwhile, at the CPU headquarters, inside the monitoring room, the woman with her hair tied up is desperate, asking if they are still waiting for the video images from the American fleet. Her assistant is working on the computers and says the American fleet was practically wiped out by the enemy, so she asked to see the satellite images. The woman is extremely apprehensive. She knows she can't use Raven Eyes at sea, and she wonders how the commissioner lady and her team are doing. A group of people appears behind her, and they call for Rin. She looks back, yelling for Shiki in a cry of concern. The group is badly injured. There are many people, and the white-haired girl says they need her recovery techniques urgently. Rin quickly approaches everyone, running as fast as she can. Her expression changes. She panics when she notices one thing. That Commissioner Io is extremely injured, unconscious. Shiki has tears in her eyes and says it's a very critical condition. Observing Mrs. Io, it's possible to see that life is unfortunately already draining from her body. In recent memories, Mrs. Io asked Shiki to listen carefully. She said that their survival on that mission would depend on the girl. After going over the entire plan again, she said she needed the girl's help to stun the enemy while she and Tengen used the heavenly descent. Shiki gave a respectful bow and said she would give her life to ensure it, but as she was about to complete the sentence, she received a slap on the head which startled her. Mrs. Io got angry and said she was a fool and had misunderstood everything because she needs to stay alive no matter what to bring everyone home safely. She asked if Shiki understood that, because it is very important that she survive no matter what happens to her. Not accepting this, the white-haired girl tried to argue, but Mrs. Io made such a frightening face that it would silence even the bravest of stubborn people. With tears in her eyes, Shiki tries to express herself with a trembling voice. She remembers when she was just a child, and Mrs. Io took such good care of her and the others. She said she doesn't want to lose her. The girl recalls the woman's reassuring smile at that moment, and that afterward, she put her hand on her head trying to calm her down, saying that everything would be okay and she wouldn't let anyone die. Smiling, Io said that this was the main point of the mission they were about to execute. But now that calming smile is gone, and the lady is on an oxygen mask and extremely injured. The group mobilizes to try to heal her and save her life. Shiki yells for Commissioner Io not to leave them. She tries to pressure Rin, who is doing her best to help, but it's a complicated task. Her healing ability isn't working properly because of that artifact that stopped time for her. The woman with glasses and long hair tries everything to help, but says the most she can do is keep her alive for now. However, time only stays stopped for Mrs. Io if she is inside the CPU, so the idea of taking her outside comes up, but she is in a very critical state. But a very loud noise interrupts everyone's conversation. Tengen, Shiki, and the others are surprised. Tengen looks up and realizes they have already arrived. Outside the CPU building, someone with their head covered by a turban can be seen observing everything. He is accompanied by 3 other people besides Leonis Valt, who is wearing a frightening smile. Shiki has fire in her eyes and yells that she will end the life of every single one of those bastards. Rin warns her not to do it, but it's already too late, and the girl is gone. She appears near all those beings that emerged outside the CPU. With hatred in her eyes, she joins her hands and uses her spatial division ability. Shiki Kitamori's ability instantly connects different parts of space, allowing her to teleport between different places with extreme precision. But in large, open areas, this ability becomes very unpredictable and results in damage that can be catastrophic. Space and time begin to distort. The image of everything becomes confusing. Tengen is furious with the girl's recklessness and says that the commissioner lady is still there. Leonis Valt concentrates, observing the girl who just arrived at the battle. Then he calls for Hajime, who already prepares his next attack, holding his sword. He uses the artifact Relic of the Abyss, firmly gripping his sword and its sheath. Drawing his blade, he cuts space and uses the Kulika strike ability, causing a beam of light with his slash. This catches Shiki by surprise, and her eyes go wide. A part of the location is shattered like crystal, scattering various shards through the air. The girl's arm is severely injured by this blow. The girl in red lets out a little laugh and says that Hajime is truly relentless, making the villains almost feel sorry for the good guys. But while still holding his sword, sword in a battle stance, Hajime tells them to stay alert. The swordsman looks out of the corner of his eye, suspicious. He realizes the good guys haven't been defeated yet, and he manages to locate Shiki. She is badly injured, but her friends have arrived to help her, and Shinji holds her in his arms, asking if she is okay. The white-haired girl doesn't let the injury shake her, and asks about the Kanagi unit. Leonis notices that more enemies have arrived for him, and he says he is getting really tired of swatting these little flies around him. Special Agent Ichika Hinoki holds her sword and already prepares to draw it from its sheath. All the enemies watch attentively at what she is preparing. An energy starts to come from the girl's body. She apologizes and says that her captain happens to be a sleepyhead and begins to approach. So until it's time for him to wake up, they will gladly be their opponents. The purple-eyed blonde man makes a disgusted face at the girl's statement. Leonis Vault is looking down on all the movement of the determined good guys, finding it very strange. He can understand why Makoto Suo's younger brother and Special Agent Ichika Hinoki are fighting him. His eyes scan over all his opponents, analyzing them one by one. He stares at Kaname and Eisuke and wonders why they are willing to fight him. There's nothing recorded about them in Midori's memories, so he believes they aren't a threat. So he questions why they would be risking their lives to this extent to save someone who is so far from their level. Kaname meets his gaze and gives a very suspicious little smile. This causes a peculiar unease in Leonis. He then begins to notice the boy's aura, shining strongly. The blonde man gets in front of all his fighting partners, and stretching his hand toward the two, he uses his turbulence ability, and in the blink of an eye, they disappear. Shiki, who is injured on the ground, yells to everyone about what just happened, but the teammates also disappeared along with the disciples. She wonders if this is some kind of teleportation ability, and who was responsible for it. Kaname is overjoyed and strikes a pose, asking how he is. But suddenly Eisuke reappears and says he sent them somewhere else. He is holding a first aid kit and says he did this teleportation with his ability. Shiki is surprised by the young man's technique and asks how he managed to do that. Eisuke and Kaname start arguing because he says he helped too. It was a combo of abilities. Shiki just wants them to explain. Basically, it was a combination of the My Sweet Home and extended self abilities. Kaname's ability increases the range of the ability of someone he is touching. Normally, Eisuke's ability only applies to himself, but with Kaname's help, it was possible to teleport everyone who was near him at that moment. The purple-haired boy may not have the same range as Shiki, but he can teleport any object he chooses. Hajime was teleported near Ichika. He already prepares for the confrontation. Eisuke managed to teleport everyone so that the fights would be fair. The only ones left were the three of them, but the rest of the team prepares for the next fights. The white-haired girl is surprised by this strategy. Eisuke adds that he made a point of sending number 0 to a special place just for him. We see the blonde man floating in a mysterious place, surrounded by what looks like a red liquid. He is extremely confused and can't tell where he is, or even which way is up or down. But something special catches his attention. A group of sea monsters appears in his field of vision. Shape-shifting sharks, octopuses, and even sinister fish are there. They begin to approach number 0 rapidly, forming an aquatic ambush. A man in a uniform holds his sword and looks at a kind of lake. He believes Leonis must be in the limestone cavern inside the CPU facilities now, specifically in the 17th rift known as Shimo Ejito. The rift is a passage to another dimension that grows approximately 4 inches every year, and there is no way to stop this growth. Not even Midori figured out a way to stop this prophecy, so they'll see how number 0 fares while he's trapped there. Meanwhile, on Mount Nagano on Mitak, Hajime and Ichika are face to face. The white-haired swordsman looks up and wonders what this place is, questioning if someone teleported him there. Ichika can't hold back her laughter and starts to chuckle. As she approaches the young man, she says that apparently the divide and conquer operation worked. Hajime asks what they did to his boss, and she explains that they sent him to a place he will never be able to leave. While holding the sheath of his sword, the young man says that if that's the case, they should have sent everyone else to that place too. Ichika waves her hand and tells him not to be a fool, as one of them could have an escape artifact and ruin the whole plan. They needed to be sure there was no chance of him returning, since nothing can happen to the commissioner lady. The boss might even have an artifact, but anyway, she preferred the idea of dealing with as many of his minions as possible. Hajime starts to concentrate energy in his body, and asks if the girl thinks she is a match for him. Smiling, the woman says it will be like taking candy from a baby, because only their boss is a real threat. The rest would be nothing if they didn't have the artifacts. That remark from Ichika makes the young man extremely irritated. He furrows his brow, and with agility, he uses his Kulika strike attack, cutting the space between them with several beams of light. Some beams seem to have hit Ichika's body, but her eyes glow red, cherry blossoms appear in her gaze, and she uses the Dawn's Solitude ability. The woman's eyes shine with a neon light. Dawn's Solitude is one of Ichika's natural techniques, which she was born knowing. On the surface, this ability seems quite simple, and was considered useless for many years. But there is much more to it than meets the eye. The ability can block all internal and external influences, allowing Ichika to maximize her mind and body potential. She continues her movements, her eyes still glowing like a pink beacon. In short, the ability gives her 100% concentration in any circumstance, no matter where she is or who she is fighting. The girl can summon her full strength to deliver a lethal blow. She approaches her opponent and everything goes dark. Only the pink glow coming from Ichika's eyes can be seen. A single cut is made on Hajime, toward his chest, but this single cut is enough to throw him back forcefully, unbalancing and destabilizing the young man. She finishes her attack. Transcendents specialized in martial arts spend countless hours honing their physical skills, so they understand better than anyone the value of a perfectly trained body like hers. With a serious and superior look, the girl says he doesn't even compare to Makoto. Meanwhile, Meanwhile, back at the CPU's large-scale practice area, a pair of good guys and a pair of villains face each other. With a mocking look, the girl in the red hat, Sete, says it won't make any difference to change to a 2-on-2 battle. The pair of CPU warriors doesn't look frightened or anything like it. Seti turns to Ashara and asks what their plan is now. It starts to rain at the location, getting all the warriors there wet. With his eyes closed and a sad expression, the man says he can fight them if she holds them, but a fist is already approaching his face. The punch hits him hard, and Ashara flies far away from the force of the blow. Midori asks if he thinks they will just wait while they get trampled. Set watches the white-haired warrior advance on her teammate. While she is distracted, her opponent's long hair grabs her. He starts to have memories of when he was a child, his little red-haired friend touching his locks. And with hatred in his eyes, he asks if she is one of the bastards who killed Makoto. Already almost completely wrapped up by the boy's hair, she says she understands now. And with a smile on her face, she asks if he is still mad about that. Red lightning begins to appear in the sky, turning it dark red. The two good warriors have to dodge the lightning bolts that seem to be trying to hit them. With a maniacal look and surrounded by playing cards, Seti starts to laugh while her eyes widen. She uses her Queen of Hearts ability, and her cards start to grow legs and arms. The long-haired man notices that this ability seems to be some kind of telekinesis. She orders her loyal minions to disperse. A gigantic army of cards begins to appear, and she asks them to find Minato Kanagi for her. But her opponent is not willing to let her go after Minato. He starts to charge energy, and again, a scarlet thunderbolt tries to hit him, but he manages to dodge quickly. The pair of CPU combatants is reunited side by side again. Ashara appears through the mist and smoke and says that his ability allows him to physically manifest emotions. He puts his hand in front of his face and uses the Mask of Thousand Faces ability. With a sinister voice and a frightening aura, he tells them to prepare to die. Now his eyes are black, his face is unrecognizable. That is the Face of Anger ability. Dozens of lightning bolts begin to fall on the battlefield, causing a deafening noise all around. Meanwhile, in Tokorozawa, Saitama Prefecture, loud noises can be heard. Kisaragi is using her Even Menace ability in a challenging battle. Her partner is fleeing from the unrestrained blows of the man with the bandaged head. With one of his arms much larger than the other, he throws several punches toward the blonde man, who tries to defend himself. The villain's punches end up hitting the rocks and mountains around, causing a loud noise and a lot of destruction. And the big-armed man doesn't give up, persistently going after his enemy. But a familiar voice interrupts that distressing chase scene. It's Shinji, who appears using the Soaring Tengu ability. A smokescreen forms, and the enemy starts to try to clear a path through it with his giant hand, and he quickly succeeds, getting rid of that sand whirlwind. There are 3 CPU warriors down below, and they observe the enemy. Kurosagi looks worried. She imagined this battle would be difficult, but the enemy manages to be even stronger than she imagined. He stares at them with empty, dreadful eyes. That bandaged man is named Dry, one of the 12 disciples of the Apocalypse. He deduces that since they survived his attack, they must be very strong warriors. But to him, the 3 of them are just a minor annoyance at best, so he prefers to save energy and finish this quickly. The blonde man gives a small smile and says he seems pretty confident for someone who's about to lose his life. Shinji starts to prepare an attack and says he will teach this idiot a lesson he will never forget. Kurosagi notices that Shinji is starting to lose his patience and fears he will act without thinking. Of course, she can understand why. She starts to remember the day of his brother's funeral, and that it was the 12 disciples who were responsible for Captain Makoto's death. Dry observes more carefully and says he noticed the red-haired boy might be related to the weakling Makoto Suo. With a provocative voice, he asks if he is that boy's younger brother. Shinji just widens his eyes, feeling a chill run through his entire body. While showing his disgusting tongue, he asks what it feels like to have a pathetic brother who couldn't defeat a loser like Doze. That infuriates the redhead, who really starts to lose his composure. Without thinking and consumed by mortal hatred, he charges toward the enemy, holding his sword. Dry's gigantic hand begins to transform into a strange, flesh-like cannon. He is preparing his La Traviata ability, and from the tip of his anomalous arm, a purple energy ball begins to charge. The 3 good guys are caught by surprise by that move. They all look surprised in the direction of the ability. Meanwhile, at the CPU headquarters, a tense situation is happening. The women are still trying to heal Mrs. Ayo with everything they have. They start to be able to feel a pulse. Rin takes the lady's hands and can feel her heart beating. She is relieved. Unable to contain her emotions, a tear of relief and happiness starts to run down her face. The other woman yells for the Ushima unit to give an update on their situation. The girls reply that they have almost finished healing the captain's wounds, so 4 other powerful warriors are ready to join the Kanagi unit. But the young man with the cap and sunglasses asks them to wait a bit. They will need to deal with one little thing first, and several cards appear in the location, looking for Minato. Tengen orders everyone to take their positions and says they need to keep Minato safe until he wakes up. So while one team fights to heal Mrs. Io, the other part of the warriors prepares to deal with the cards. But the man with the goatee notices an extremely large energy that has managed to hit an entire area. Eisuke and Kaname can also feel a tremor that closely resembles an earthquake. But Eisuke knows this isn't just a mere earth tremor. A gigantic purple vortex appears in one location, messing with the energy of the entire environment. The man in the uniform who was watching Number Zero's prison realizes he has escaped and says that guy is a real monster. Kaname panics and starts yelling, saying that he was trapped in a rift forever. Eisuke knows they don't have much time and asks the boy to help him send that bastard somewhere even farther away. Kaname seems a little reluctant, but the purple-haired boy insists because they need to save the captain. But before he can try to convince points his friend to help him further. Something catches his attention, and he looks up. His eyes are wide, and he can't believe what he is seeing. A beam of blue light is coming from inside the CPU building, and now, helping the girls heal Mrs. Io, Kanagi Minato is there, passing energy to her. With tears in her eyes, still overcome with emotion, Rin watches the boy who just woke up. He is focused, his eyes fixed on Mrs. Io, determined to heal her. While helping with Mrs. Io's recovery, Minato asks how long he was out, and Rin replies that it was for a few hours. She fixes her gaze on the boy, curious to know how he managed to wake up so quickly. While they are with Io, Number 0 is escaping from his prison, and she asks if he is capable of defeating him. The protagonist looks at the girl and says, yes, he will defeat him for her. But first, there is one thing he needs to do, and his hair starts to change color. Now with white hair, he continues to pass energy to Mrs. Ivio. He asks her for forgiveness, and says he didn't want to leave her waiting for so long. Believing that Minato must be strong enough to do it now, with the woman's help, he uses his sacred medical tome ability. An energy so strong, it almost liquefies, begins to flow from his body toward the lady. Sacred medical tome is an ability of Warrantine, the sovereign apothecary. It allows the user to instantly activate the supreme healing ability. Inside the imaginary medical tome in Warrantine's mind, the wound that was previously very severe on the woman's chest now begins to close, little by little, and finally, it closes completely, leaving her intact. The women who were trying to heal Mrs. Io earlier are impressed with the demonstration of the technique. The girl with glasses is dumbfounded because she realizes the wound didn't just close completely, but it also healed entirely. Even the woman's organs are intact. She really wants to know what the mechanism of that ability is, and it doesn't take long for the woman to slowly begin to regain consciousness. Rin's eyes fill with tears again. She starts to call the lady by her name. Mrs. Io moves her eyes toward the protagonist, showing she is well and conscious. Her vision is a bit blurry, but she can identify that it is Minato who is there, smiling at her. She smiles back, saying that he finally came. With the little strength she has, the lady raises her arm toward him, and suddenly, she no longer sees Minato, but rather Warren, the woman who healed her. The protagonist holds the lady's hand with both of his hands, very gently. Smiling calmly, the boy says she should be more careful. Io says she tried her best but wasn't much help and apologizes, but he says that on the contrary, she was spectacular. Warren asks her to rest now that her wounds are healed, and as soon as she wakes up later, they can all have a meal together like in the old days. Then the memories of the two of them when they were very young surface, having fun and eating together. That memory makes Io emotional, and her eyes well up. She agrees with her old friend's plan. Warren observes the situation from a screen and addresses the other souls who are there, so everyone is ready to continue the protagonist's actions. Meanwhile, a shower of cards with legs and arms begins inside the CPU building. One of the young men there grabs his sword and uses the metal reinforcement and thousandth blow abilities. With this, he uses his body's momentum to use the sword like a baseball bat, knocking the cards away as well as cutting them. Some little cards are chopped into several pieces, being defeated. The blonde woman uses her martial arts skills and the lethal chain blast ability. The two join forces to defeat those minions. The girl is giving it her all but only managed to knock out one card. This is very similar to when they fought Ava. Each of these minions is as strong as En Shikami. In fact, they are much more powerful than that. She fixes her eyes in a direction behind her, trying to protect herself. A 3 of clubs card lands a direct kick to the girl's face, sending her flying from the force of the blow. But with perseverance, she manages to regain her balance and hold on. Determined, she thinks that she refuses to give up without a fight. A flood of cards approaches her, but the woman does not intend to be defeated. She remembers Captain Makabe with a smile on his face, saying he is counting on her to save the world. Since he is counting on her, that is why she will battle until the end of her days. Then, while she is trying to attack the cards with her martial arts ability, she feels she is not alone. It's Captain Makabe who is helping her, using his stone punch ability and decimating some little cards over there. Not believing what her eyes are seeing, the girl starts to shout the captain's name to make sure it's really him there. He looks at her with a smile on his face and apologizes for coming back, since a true warrior should die in battle. Suddenly, someone using the golden bat ability manages to defeat a bunch of cards all at once. The boy in the cap looks at this, somewhat confused. It's Captain Yorozuya, who is holding his pose and all pompous, defeating several cards while moving with his bat. With a serious expression, he asks everyone to listen to him. He needs to finish off all these cursed little cards, and asks them to help him finish every last one. The two young people are much more energized, and their morale is much higher with the presence of their captains there. But before starting to move, Captain Makabe asks them to wait a bit. He can see Minato up high, near the armored batter. The protagonist is holding his sword in the middle of several cards, and Makabe thinks he is about to do something. Then the boy changes his stance, and holds the sword as the cards notice his presence and begin to approach. Concentrated, he charges the energy in his body, letting it flow to his arms like a drop of water falling into a river. It is the Hinoki style, the sword technique. And finally, he unleashes the Shadow Vortex ability with all his strength, quickly cutting down all the cards there, one by one. Spinning his sword, he forms a true vortex with his blade, which covers the sky and leaves the boys down below impressed. A shower of paper begins to fall. All the little pieces of the cards he chopped up are now inanimate as they should be. Meanwhile, on the other battlefield, several red lightning bolts are still falling all over the place. Seti suddenly gets startled by something, her eyes widening. Ashara asks his partner what is happening there. She can't believe her eyes, because there were over 500 cards in total, and yet they were eliminated in the blink of an eye. With pure hatred in his eyes, the white-haired man asks if this is the work of Minato Kanagi, enemy, their main target, and now he promises he will kill him. Then his gaze turns to the opponents on that battlefield. The two are dodging the lightning bolts, and he says he has better things to do than fight with these little worms. He yells at them to stop resisting and just die already. Midori lets out a long sigh and prepares to act. Changing his stance, the man begins to charge his next attack. He holds one arm with the other and points at the two enemies right in front of him, and as his arm begins to emanate energy, he says they are the only ones there who are about to die. The veins on Ashura's face begin to pop, such is his rage. While staring at him, he asks what Midori thinks he is doing, but before he can do anything, a mark on his arm appears and begins to glow. It is the powerful ability of the man in sunglasses, the holy seal of exorcism.